Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Scion Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What if Deku had Immortal Replica Quirk? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku has told himself over and over that he is content with where he is at. That he needs to be content with where he is, or else all his hard work would have been for nothing. And for the most part, he is. He grew up quirkless, was quirkless for his whole life. He spent 16 years with that knowledge. But spending 1 year out of those 16 years living his dream, having the one thing he dreamt of having for so long, and it being pried out of him when he was just getting started? That hurt? And of course he's not completely miserable, but he's not completely at peace either. And of course, no one expects him to. It's only been 2 months since the war officially ended and a month since school his second year started, so obviously no one expects him to be happy with this change just yet. But despite that, Izuku still puts on a smile and focuses on others despite how painful it may be. He may still be enrolled in the hero course, but because of the physical and mental challenges that came from the war, they make Izuku sit aside during physical training. And Izuku's not dumb, and he knows no one else is either. He knows that the real reason they keep sitting him out? Because he's quirkless. Izuku has seen time and time again how arrogantly quirkist some of these heroes really are. And they don't mean to, of course. Izuku is very fond of Nezu and knows that he's smart, and he has an infinite amount of trust in Aizawa, so he knows that they are mature in their decisions. But that's just it. They're so oblivious to the fact that they're being quirkist and genuinely hurting Izuku by leaving him out. Because now that he's quirkless again, they suddenly think that he'll fall behind, get hurt more often, maybe even fail a couple things. And while that may be semi-accurate, all Izuku wants is to have things go back to the way they were, quirk or no quirk. But he's practicing on keeping his mouth shut and covering his actual thoughts with pained smiles and awkward gestures. Because he knows that if he tries to say anything, he'll end up just arguing with them, and if he can't go back to training, then he needs something to stay the same. So he tries his best to go back to his old self. The happy, brave, and smiley Izuku. Though when he wakes up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat and sometimes his own PSS, shamefully walking to the showers and crying his frustrations out, hiding his embarrassment and anger and sadness and fear underneath the trickle of the water, he finds it harder and harder to pretend things can go back to the way they were. Who doesn't let his insecurities affect him? Izuku wakes up in the training room late at night, the air still humid and hot from the training he'd done earlier, dry tears resting on his cheeks as he slowly gets up, groaning from the new aches and bruises he'd given himself while training. He doesn't want to give up, but everything is so much harder without a quirk. He gets up, almost falling from the sway of his vision, but catching himself on the wall, and he glances up at the clocking reading the time. 2:34 a.m., he reads out, his voice far away from his hearing, as if he were underwater, or trapped in a haze. He glances over at the training dummies touring the room. Some were knocked over, dented from being hit so many times. Some were still standing, barely touched. Izuku clenched his bruised, worked-out fists red and sore from use and he closed his eyes. That gives me a couple more hours until everybody wakes up, Izuku mutters under his breath, his voice still far from his mind, that gives me more time to get stronger. Izuku charges towards the dummies, swinging and pushing at them. While his movements are slipping and angry, his eyes stay fixed and his voice remains silent. As the hours pass and, finally, all of the dummies have fallen to the ground, Izuku trudges back to his dorm room too exhausted to care about the mess he made in the building and passes out on his bed, his body wet from sweat and his heart heavy with desire. Last night, Aizawa starts, his tone obviously indicating his exhaustion, probably from his lack of sleep. There was an alert that a student from your class was out past curfew. Murmurs spread throughout the class, and immediately Izuku can feel eyes on him. He tries to ignore it, shamefully fishing out his analysis notebook as if he just got a new idea on something to write about. Now, I was out on patrol last night, so I was not there to receive it. Yamada was working on papers in his UA office, so he did not receive it either. All Might was asleep, and so was every other teacher. But our principal was awake, and decided to let whoever continue what they were doing, he grunts, eyeing everyone in the class, but for some reason avoiding Izuku's direction. Now in my personal opinion, I strongly disagree with his decision, as every student of mine needs full rest to reset their physical state, and as well as their emotional state as well, he adds, the tone in his voice getting sharper as he finishes his sentence. Izuku pretends to not hear him already feeling like a deer caught in headlights. See, he presented himself fairly well, he took a shower after his hour-long slumber, and although he may look a little tired, he was very much used to little sleep, which made him less likely to fit the stereotypical, sleep-deprived student look. But he wasn't dumb, because unfortunately for him. But this isn't the first time this has happened. Aizawa snaps, finally looking at Izuku. Izuku freezes, the moment he was dreading finally facing him once more, and he timidly looks up, not bothering trying to deny, as although Aizawa hasn't officially called him out, he's the only one who's done this more than once. Everyone is looking at him now, and even Katsuki turns around, glancing at him. Midoriya, he growls, more annoyance in his voice than anger, this is the 4th time this month alone you've stayed past curfew to train. The other 3 times? There were times I was able to confront you face to face, which is why you were only able to train for only under an hour. His voice gets sharper and sharper, and momentarily his quirk lights up before turning off again. The class is dead silent, because ever since the war ended, Aizawa has been much stricter, which is why his rants are so much more intimidating. You're not the only person benched. Bakugo, Uraraka, Todoroki, Kirishima, Tokoyami, Jairu, Ida, the whole class at this point, they all have to take it easy too. They've all listened to their warnings, they've all listened to me when I told them they couldn't do something. Midoriya, you're the only outwardly stubborn one here. Izuku doesn't even change his facial expression, he is so terrified right now. I've given you chance after chance, and I finally get the go to start patrol again, and I go because I finally had trust in all of my students to not do anything stupid while I worked. But you proved me wrong, once again. Not only did you train unsupervised, past curfew, but you trained for 7 hours. Some of his classmates' expressions morph into one of shock and concern, and you left the training room an absolute mess. Aizawa slams his hand into his podium, shocking some of the class, and making Izuku flinch a little. You are to clean up the building, by yourself, during everyone else's training hours. You are not to receive any help from anyone, and if you do, I will know, and I will have your punishment upgraded. He swallows, indicating to Izuku that he's not quite finished yet, and I will also be expecting a 3-page essay on what you are going to do to assure that this never happens again, and how sorry you are. The class is dead silent. Of course, other times Izuku was caught, he was always given a punishment, whether it was extra chores around the dorm house or a one-day house arrest, but never has it been this much. And especially has never gotten Aizawa this heated. Izuku shifts his gaze, looking back at his desk. I'm so sorry, sir. And 3 days of house arrest. These days you are not to have any chores to do. You are to reflect on your mistakes, and more importantly, rest. Watching the security camera footage from last night, Aizawa trails off, glancing at every student in the room. He clears his throat, and Izuku feels his pulse picking up. Midoriya, come out to the hallway please. He says, walking towards the door. With everyone's gazes still resting on Izuku, he stays still for a couple of seconds, trying to process everything Aizawa said. So far, all of his punishments are pretty fair, but Izuku can only wonder if this means Aizawa has even more punishments for him. Gulping, he stands up, using the desk for support as he is still pretty sore. He shamefully hides his face from his friends, pretty confident that Ochako's and Ida's gazes linger on him longer than others, and follows Aizawa out the door. Sorry, I understand that this is probably very humiliating for you right now, but I need you to understand the weight of your actions. Aizawa finally says once the door fully closes and they walk further towards the big glass window across from the class. Yes sir, I completely understand. Izuku mutters, trying to sound professional, but he knows DMN well that the quiver of his voice shows more fear than maturity. That said, the last thing I want to do is make you feel more embarrassed, especially around your peers. Aizawa puts a hand on Izuku's bruised shoulder, and Izuku flinches slightly, earning a defeated sigh from Aizawa. You're pushing yourself past your limit. Like I said, I watched the security footage. Although I am annoyed that you left the place a mess, I am more concerned than anything. You were in there for almost 7 hours, and passed out in between that time. Despite your still healing injuries, you kept pushing your body past its limits and kept hurting yourself. There are bruises everywhere your clothing doesn't cover, and I know there are many others hiding under your clothes. You're walking with a slight limp, your posture looks more painful than comfortable, and you look absolutely exhausted. Asta's at Izuku in disbelief, but Izuku understands that Aizawa isn't surprised at all, he just wants Izuku to try and understand. Of all respect sir, this is far from the worst I've been. Aizawa frowns. But it's different this time. Because I'm quirkless? Izuku cuts in, his voice laced with more venom than he intended. Instead of Aizawa looking hurt, he just scoffs not out of annoyance, but impatience, and he runs a hand over his face. I want to be very clear with you, so listen to me carefully, Aizawa says, then takes a deep breath. Your lack of quirk does not make you weak. It is the physical and mental toll from the war that you continue to struggle with. Izuku stares out the window, and allows himself to zone out a little. The last thing he wants to hear is another person bringing up what he wants not to define himself. He looks at the rather gray sky, at the rather gloomy-looking clouds, how while it's supposed to be a beautiful day of spring's transition into summer, it looks like some god of depression rained upon the earth. He looks down at the ground below, not many students out, because most would rather be out on a beautiful sunny day, and not a gloomy one like this. He can hear Aizawa trying to get him to focus, but he sounds far away, like his own voice did not so long ago. Now that he thinks about it, everything seems so far away recently. His friends seem further out of reach, all of them working harder and getting stronger, while he's left behind. The world around him, everyone always being a second thought, drowned away in the depths of Izuku's subconscious. His mother, All Might, the war, villains, fighting, all for one for all, quirks. All of them, gone. Drifting away like fog he passes by. Just Izuku and the little voice in his head. The one that always either tells him that it's okay or that you're not strong enough, and Izuku sometimes hates it, but honestly it's way better than facing whatever reality hands him, what the real world has to offer. Responsibilities, school, heroes, the future. But what future does Izuku have without a quirk? Of course it is though. Izuku mutters, somewhere in between his conversation with Aizawa and the white space in his head. What? Aizawa asks, probably confused as he must have been asking Izuku something different when he wasn't paying attention. I've pushed through the physical tolls. I've pushed through the mental tolls. You've pushed me though those. But as soon as I'm quirkless, I'm no longer capable of anything. Izuku mutters again, this time with more tone, as he slowly realizes that he's not talking with his thoughts, but with his voice now. Aizawa seems caught off guard. Midoriya, you know that's not true. Izuku cuts him off again, never mind. Sorry, I mean what I meant to say was. But Izuku has nothing to say, because he already spoke his mind. He finally told Aizawa what he was thinking. There was nothing else to say, because he had finally gotten the might to speak the truth. He slowly glances up to look at Aizawa, and finds through his expression that he understands, and more interestingly, he sees no indication of Aizawa looking surprised. Midoriya, I want you to follow your dreams. I want you to become a hero. But that is up to you. You can ignore my advice, ignore my warnings, and continue to push yourself in what is your way of becoming a hero. But that path will only take you so far, and you will end up pushing yourself to the point where you will find you have no more motivation to do so anymore. But if you take my advice, give yourself time to heal and rest, I have no doubt you'll be yourself once again. Aizawa puts a hand back on his shoulder, and this time Izuku doesn't flinch. He considers that, but then remembers that he'll never be who he used to be. There's only two versions of himself to go back to, the quirkless loser Deku, or the quirked hero Deku. He can't possibly become quirkless hero Deku. Because that's not the version of Izuku that Aizawa is referring to. You can go back to class, but I am assuming you might not want to, so I am giving you a pass to go back to the dorms, or you can start on cleaning if you want. By the way, I don't actually need you to write me an essay, I already know that you are sorry. That was more a tactic to scare the class into not doing the same. Aizawa chides in, glancing, seemingly trying to switch Izuku's gears and have him focus on something else as soon as possible, because the last thing both of them want is for Izuku to completely zone out again. Izuku nods slowly, trying to force himself fully into reality, but clearly his mind is trying to project him, trying to take him away from all the stressful things and put him back into his white space. Aizawa senses Izuku's hesitation and grabs his hand and squeezes it slightly. It would hurt more if Izuku could care. Focus Midoriya, he says, and Izuku makes eye contact with him once more. It'll be good to take your mind off this situation. Go clean, I'll tell your classmates not to worry about you. But, I wouldn't doubt that they'll still be checking up on you. If you start now I have no doubt you'll be done before lunch. He squeezes hard and Izuku forces himself to make big head nods. For some reason, he's having a hard time talking right now. Go, I'll go back to class. There are cleaning supplies already at the building. He nods again, but his eyes trail off and his body feels lighter. You'll be okay? I'm not mad. I just need you to understand where I am at with you. Aizawa's voice is echoing further and further away, like it's bouncing off the hallway surfaces. Izuku thinks he nodded, but if he did he didn't feel it. It's the thought that counts, right? He thinks that's Aizawa talking, but he isn't too sure. Time passes. He ends up tidying up his mess just before noon, like Aizawa had said. He opens his phone, there are no new messages but one, and it's Todoroki texting him asking if he'll be back for lunch, as Lunch Rush is serving katsudon today. Izuku thinks he's tried to type something out, a reply maybe, but his fingers feel as if they're touching air and suddenly everything becomes overwhelmingly obvious. His feet feel weird, his socks are too closed off on his toes and his shoes are tied too tight. His pants have this weird texture and they hug too closely to the sensitive spots on his thighs. His scars start to buzz and suddenly his tie is too tight, he can't breathe. The building is too hot and his dress shirt can't seem to unbutton properly, as his fingers either feel fuzzy against the buttons or as if the buttons are lava rocks and it hurts to touch them. His eyelashes poke his eyes, his hair gets in his vision, every smell in the room becomes evident: disinfectant, bleach, soap, cleaning supplies. It's almost as if he can taste them and all of a sudden he can't taste anything at all. But now everything is too loud but too quiet at the same time, and everything he touches feels like ice and Izuku sobs and drops to the floor. Nothing feels right and he's sure he's dying. His heartbeat sounds too loud, and he's unsure if that's his heartbeat anymore, or if it's loud drums placed next to his ears, or bugs crawling into his earbuds. He clutches his ears tightly and shuts his eyes even tighter, but tears still fall out and Izuku finds himself rocking back and forth, sideways on the ground. He feels like he is going to vomit, but then all of a sudden the fear of vomiting strikes him and he sobs even harder, shutting his mouth closed as well. Nothing is right, nothing feels right. He wants to open his phone, and he wants to call for help, but everyone is always worried about him all the time. They're always keeping an eye on him, making sure that nothing is off, and he can't let anyone see him for how weak he is. But he reaches for his phone anyways, and while he cannot feel the act of touching his phone, he's pretty certain he did something with it because not long after, he feels something else touch him, and becomes pretty aware that it's another human being. To that, he only cries harder, rocking himself more violently, and thinks he mutters "help me" every once in a while. The hands hold him gently, and caress his face like it's made of glass. When Izuku finds himself slowly calming down, when the sounds become normal, his heartbeat gets quieter, his tie loosens, the room cools down, his socks feel less tight, and his scars start to feel like normal skin, he can make out the voice of the person holding him. "It's all right, my boy, just breathe." And all of a sudden, consciousness leaves him with no goodbye. Izuku wakes up in his bedroom. It's dark outside, but the memories of the events earlier washed over him immediately. Just because he doesn't talk about them, he still has them, and they're bad. The first time Izuku broke down similarly to earlier, he was still freshly in the hospital after the war. He'd been eating some rice when all of a sudden he just started hyperventilating and tried to rip out his fore. Leading up to the incident, he'd been thinking about the past week's events a lot, so there's no question that he was feeling pretty off. But there was no set thought that set him off, he just started freaking out and was almost acting delusional. Eventually the nurse sedated him, because he was hurting himself, but when he woke up, he still fully wasn't there. They had said some things regarding what happened, and tried to ask him questions, but Izuku's pretty sure he ignored them. Only when they started happening once per week, and then twice, and then often enough to become a big issue, did doctors finally tell him that these panic attacks were strongly linked to PTSD and trauma he received throughout the war, and all the after effects post-war. So yeah, Izuku isn't at all surprised that it happened, but this was one of the worst in a while. Because he remembers it all not from how he experienced it, but the memory forms itself in a way as if he were watching himself, in the third person, freaking out. It was bizarre, and it left Izuku feeling really embarrassed. But he was glad it ended up being All Might who he messaged, or at least, All Might who came. He vaguely remembers being pulled out of his trance by the man and him talking to him, asking him questions, making sure he was okay. He remembers walking over to Recovery Girl with him, and then back to the dorms, and now he's here. He no longer feels like he's underwater, or like he's far away stuck in fog. He actually, 100%, finally feels present. He picks up his phone and ignores any messages or notifications he may have received, and starts mindlessly scrolling on social media. It's late, so he knows he missed lunch and afternoon training, not like he could do anything, and he'd rather die than go face any of his friends right now. So, he scrolls away, letting his phone distract him from what the real world has for him. A couple days later, the class, minus Izuku, Ochako, Bakugo, Todoroki, Tokoyami, Kirishima, Ida, Shinso, and Jairu, who are on rest, are finally cleared on doing something unrelated to street cleanup. There's a case, and they need as many people as possible. From what Ochako has heard, and what she told Izuku, there is some sort of raid going on. One of the villains involved in some terrorist group in Europe has decided to make its move in Japan, as Japan is still trying to pick up the pieces from the war. It's a very important raid because the villain is strong, had never been caught before, and is holding innocent people hostage. And it's driving Izuku crazy. He wants so badly to find a way to help, but even if he did sneak in and try to help, and he probably would, he can't. He can't because Aizawa has put every other person in their class who also can't go, on Izuku watch. No matter where he goes, the bathroom, the kitchen, the living room, someone is following him. I'm not going to run away, right? You know that? Izuku tells Kirishima when he sits next to him in the dining area. The dining area is full of empty tables and seats. Kirishima sighs heavily and pats him on the back. Yes, sorry bro, sensei's orders. Plus, there's loads of reasons we can't put our trust in you right now. When you left because of the assassins during the war, you consistently sneaking out to train, your inability to think about your own well-being. Izuku shoves a handful of rice into Kirishima's mouth. Yeah, okay fine. I don't need you listing off the reasons like you're counting how many birthday gifts you got or something. Kirishima chuckles, and then another person sits at Izuku's right side. Ugh. Ochako groans, dramatically slamming her head into the table. It's not fair. I want to help out too. Izuku joins her, also putting his head on the table, wrapping his arms around his head. He mumbles, tell me about it. Ochako sits back up, and Izuku shifts his head to look at her. She huffs, like, I understand that they want me to take it easy, and I agree. I mean, I still get lots of dizzy spells and stuff, but, she trails off, twirling her hair with her finger. I just wish I could get better faster. We all do. Kirishima mumbles, eating more rice. Another person sits down, this time across from them. It's Ida. Exactly. But in order to get better, we have to take the time needed to rest, he chimes in, eyeing Izuku. You're so wise. Izuku says sarcastically. I think you should listen to him, Deku. Ochako says, her voice a bit more serious, and she glances down at him, his chin now resting in his arms. You're one to talk. Izuku mumbles. At least I don't succumb to my inner demons and act on my thoughts, she huffs, grinning triumphantly at him. Izuku rolls his eyes, playfully though. What are we talking about? Todoroki asks, now walking over and sitting beside Ida. We're complaining. Izuku and Ochako say at the same time. Got it. Todoroki responds, and begins eating his noodles. Izuku glances at his own food, but the sudden talk of his behavior has suddenly dimmed his appetite. Izuku let the others fall into comfortable conversation as the rest of the people unable to go join the table, Bakugo being the last one, sitting beside Tokoyami. As much as Izuku found it annoying that they followed him everywhere, he honestly found their presence very calming. With them around, he knew he was safe, and most importantly, he knew they were safe. It was nice. But he did like his alone time. And the only time they'd leave him alone? When it was time for everyone to go to sleep. See, this wasn't the first time Aizawa had arranged something like this. When the class began to help with city cleanups, the doctor strictly gave orders to Izuku to take it easy and rest. So of course, Izuku ignored him and snuck in with the class, only to pass out from exhaustion not even 10 minutes in. So as the days passed, Aizawa made everyone else who were also given orders to rest to keep watch on Izuku. The only time he was allowed to be alone? When it was lights out. Izuku knows Aizawa would make him have sleepovers if it weren't for the fact that Izuku was now dealing with normal to severe nightmares almost every night. So, he grants Izuku privacy and tries his best to trust him. Of course, it doesn't stop him from putting security robots outside his dorm door. But Izuku has noticed something ever since Aizawa started doing that. He never puts one on his balcony door. Meaning, Izuku could sneak out, and while eventually people would be notified, it wouldn't be immediate. So naturally, an idea blossoms in Izuku's mind. Izuku stares blankly at the ceiling. It was lights out 2 hours ago, the clock reads 1:37 a.m. This is the time Aizawa said they'd be heading to the area for the raid. This is the time Izuku hops out of bed, changes into a black hoodie and black sweats. Izuku sets his phone on his nightstand and steps out onto his balcony. He's going to help one way or another, and thank God he had the foresight to track his classmate's location. Because he is going to the raid, and he is going to prove to Aizawa that he's not as weak as everyone thinks he is. And with the coordinates memorized in his head, he leaves. The only thing Izuku feels is unbearable, indescribable pain. He can barely open his eyes, only able to squint due to how swollen his eyes were. The only thing he is able to make out is darkness, with peaks here and there of light. But it's not a bright light, no. Not like sunlight, or fluorescent lights, no. But fire. Izuku is trapped under rumble and surrounded by fire. Izuku can hear noise and talking in the distance, heroes, sirens, the voices of his classmates. He wants to call out for help, but a piece of metal has crushed his throat. He can't even make a noise other than pathetic miming. When he got there, chaos had already erupted. The building already had a big hole in it, and there were already shouts of heroes and their quirks being used echoing the area. From a distance, he could hear people calling for help. Following the voices, he runs over to those calling. He's swift, and because everyone else is preoccupied with damage control and taking down the villain, no one notices him. It reminds him of the Eri raid, and how no one really noticed Toga and Twice until they made themselves noticeable, because everyone was so preoccupied with everything else. Honestly, it makes Izuku feel giddy, it fills him with adrenaline and anticipation. He saves a couple people, helping them up and ordering them to follow a path or to go to the first hero they see, but every time they ask him to come with them, Izuku assures them that they'll be fine. Something is pulling him to keep going. He needs to save everyone. He reaches a corner, there's a little girl. She's trapped under a piece of rubble. She's screaming for help. Izuku rushes over and crouches over, immediately assessing her for injuries and trying to calm her. He needs to make sure it's safe to remove her from the rubble. In the distance, he hears the chaos get louder, and so he shields himself in front of her, and watches as more and more scraps and pieces of the building fly towards them. And then it all happens so fast. Izuku notices a rather big piece of concrete shooting its way towards them, and he knows if they don't move now, they're going to get crushed. He takes her hand and dashes to the side, only for her hand to slip out of his. He looks back and watches in slow motion, and the concrete makes an impact with her. The realization dawns on him. How could he forget that she was still trapped under all the rubble? All he sees is her fearful eyes and then red. And he barely had any time to react when the building starts to crack and falls over top of him. He tries to move, but it's no use. He's pretty sure he broke his back, shattered his legs, fractured his spine, and the concrete is pinning him down anyways. Izuku would feel more claustrophobic if it weren't for the fact that it was becoming harder and harder for him to form coherent thoughts. He was dying. Vaguely, he hears the voices of what sounds like Kaminari and Ishido, talking about how nice it is that the villain was caught. At least the villain was caught. That's good. Izuku tries to call out. No use, did he forget he couldn't speak? Izuku feels fat tears stream down his cheeks, he's so tired. He failed. He watched as he failed a little girl. He watched a little girl die because of his stupidity. Aizawa was right. Everyone was right. He's too weak. He deserves to die. He kind of wishes he could have gone out differently. What a pathetic way to die. Will anyone find him? He kind of hopes not. Because he's pretty sure the way he got crushed is something nobody should ever see. He shuts his eyes fully and lets himself drift off into his white space. He survived a war, but got taken out by a mere wall? Pathetic. He's so pathetic. His eyes open slowly. There is no pain. There is only darkness. Not the darkness of an empty void, but the darkness of what seems to be something holding him down. Izuku panics. He immediately feels claustrophobic and trapped, and he is consumed by panic. He begins using all his strength to push out from what traps him. His muscles ache, but he perseveres and gasps when he emerges from what seems to be rubble? Concrete? In the midst of confusion, he takes note of his surroundings. Destruction, more rubble. Ash. This building, wait. He shouldn't be alive. Chapter text. It's late morning when everyone returns. Katsuki glances up at the arrivals and takes a sip out of his orange juice. Oh, how he wishes it were coffee, but coffee is bad for his heart, while everyone starts to debrief and talk about the raid. Usually, Katsuki couldn't give any sheets, but he's been so set off about not being able to do any hero work or much training at all that he decides to let his curiosity peek in, and he lets himself listen. It's Dunceface and Ishido who talk first. And it was so much. Ishido squeaks, her sentence not being fully heard by Katsuki as he just started paying attention. It was honestly very scary. Yeah, Kaminari chimes in, taking off his shoes. For our first real mission since the war, it was really intense. His expression suddenly went a bit grim, making Katsuki realize that if it were to make even him be serious, then it must have been genuinely one hell of a raid. I know, and although I was outside the whole time, I saw so much chaos. Yaoyorozu adds. She walks over to the table where Katsuki's sitting and sits down horizontally from him. I'm so exhausted, just hearing what was going on down there really took a lot out of me. It was quite something. Tsuyu continues, that villain was incredibly powerful. Katsuki shifts his gaze over to her, who joins Yaoyorozu and sits across from her. Her right arm is bandaged, and she has a nasty bruise on cheek. Now that he thinks about it, Katsuki's eyes trail over the room, and he notices that almost every one of his classmates who went on the raid came back with proof of it. Kaminari had some scrapes, Ishido's lashes were messed up and she has a couple of small bruises, Sato had some bruises as well, and everyone else has some scratches or bandages. Oh my god! Someone squeals from across the room. Katsuki looks back and sees pink cheeks running over. She stops and cuffs Tsuyu's face in worry. How was the raid? Oh my gosh Tsu, your poor face. Katsuki rolls his eyes. It's 10 in the morning, he's not in the mood for this. He gets up and prepares to go back to his room when Kirishima stops him. Kats, good morning, he yawns. He walks up beside Uraraka. I just woke up, good to see everyone. How was the raid? It was very intense, someone says at the same time as Kaminari and Ishido both say, exhausting, unanimously. Kirishima nods and walks over to the kitchen. It seems that everyone is awake now, as more and more people trickle from the stairs and all of a sudden the whole room is no longer at Katsuki level volume, so he walks over to the living room and sits on the couch. Since everyone is awake now and the day seems to have started, there's no point for Katsuki to go back to his room, so he decides to try and drown out the noise with TV. He mindlessly goes through channels, not any particular thing he wants to watch, just something that's not annoying. As the minutes pass and more people move from the kitchen to the common area to join him, he can't help but feel like someone isn't here yet. Hey, is Midoriya awake yet? Ishido mumbles, her words kind of muffled as she chews her piece of toast. He's usually the first one down here. You know, now that I think about it, yeah, I haven't seen him. Kaminari adds, his words more clearer, earning attention from everyone. How was he yesterday? You know. Uraraka frowns, he seemed super off. He's always off lately, Kaminari says. Yeah, but like, Kirishima swallows the fruit he was eating, he was less anxious and more depressed. Oh yeah, do you think maybe it's because of? I think we should refrain from talking about our friend like he's some gossip. Ida chimes in, his voice more serious than lively. He has been off lately, but he's struggling, it's clear. We shouldn't talk about it like that. Sorry. Kaminari, Kirishima, and Ishido all say at the same time. Uraraka sighs, but it sounds unsure, it's just, he's taking a lot of this really hard. I'm worried about him. Others nod in agreement and Katsuki ponders that thought. Of course, he'd been devastated when he found out Izuku lost his quirk. And although Izuku tried to reassure him, he can tell the toll it's taking on him. On top of all the messed up shit and trauma from the war, he's also dealing with the fact that he'll be behind his classmates forever. That would make anyone miserable, and clearly it's making Izuku really miserable, which Katsuki didn't know could even happen. But Katsuki almost disagrees with them. This wasn't his normal closed-off, sad bit. No, he'd been more suspicious than anything. It was in his gaze, his eyes, the way he seemed to have hope or impatience feeding at him. I'm gonna go see if he's awake. Half and half says, and goes upstairs. Katsuki eyes him, almost wishing it was him going to check on the nerd, and not Todoroki. He feels unease bloom in his chest. Something's not quite right. And as quick as he went up, he's right back down. Katsuki tries to glance up but doesn't even get the chance as Todoroki rushes past everyone and hurries to his cell phone, anxiously typing in his password and seemingly messaging someone. What? Uraraka asks, speaking for everyone. Todoroki puts his phone down and looks up. It looks like he's seen a ghost. Midoriya is gone. The room is silent. There's no thoughts in Katsuki's head at that moment, only scenarios. Scenarios that he's thought of many times before, as he's feared this moment many times. He ran away again, he snuck out to help, he's dropping out, he went to his mom's, he's out goofing off somewhere, he's decided to kill himself. Is he not just in the bathroom or showers or something? Kaminari asks anxiously, but everyone knows better. I checked. He also left his phone in his room. The security robot at his door told me that he hasn't left the room since he got in last night. But he's not in his room. Todoroki takes a deep breath and continues, I just messaged Aizawa and All Might. He trails off, and he sounds like he's trapped under a bubble, because when that bubble pops, Katsuki's had enough. He gets up, startling those around him, and he goes to check for himself, pink cheeks and dunce face following after him. Oh my god, Uraraka mutters at the same time. Kaminari says, this can't be real. Katsuki ignores them and opens Izuku's door, to be met with exactly nothing. Pikachu, Katsuki says, and Kaminari looks up at him, go check the communal bathrooms and showers. Kaminari nods and runs. Meanwhile, Uraraka walks over and sits down on Izuku's bed. Do you really think he might have run away again? She asks, her voice low and soft. She continues, it would make sense, he's been really depressed lately. Katsuki hums, because he really does agree. He might have been planning this the moment he got the thought and used the lack of people as his gateway. He has a history of running, and he's clearly not normal in the head. Katsuki hums again, checking the room over, noticing his phone still on his bedstand, like Todoroki had said, and clears his throat. That, or this idiot thought it would be a good idea to go over to the raid. Ochako perks up on that, but immediately goes back to looking sad. I thought about that for a second, because it sounds a lot like him, but from what I've heard, there's no way he wouldn't have gotten caught. If he was there, Aizawa would have dragged him back himself. Katsuki ponders that, but notices the balcony door creeping open a little. He walks over, and notices that it's unlocked, and it wasn't closed properly, leaving open a small little crack. I guess we know now for sure that he snuck out. Katsuki mumbles, and Ochako gets up and walks over to where he was, immediately groaning. That idiot. The door of the room opens, and Ochako and Katsuki whip their heads, half expecting to see Izuku, but alas, Kaminari walks in. I checked everywhere. The bathrooms, the showers, Ashido even checked the girls' areas and some others checked everywhere else in the dorm building. He says, clearly at a loss. There's no point looking for any longer, Katsuki says, his voice hinting a no anger, only annoyance with slight concern. The DMN robot said he hadn't left and, he walks over to the balcony sliding door, we already have our proof that he snuck out. Kaminari and Ochako look grim as Katsuki runs a shaky hand over his face. Only now we have to figure out why he left, and where the hell he could have gone. Izuku feels like his heart got torn out of his chest, and all the rest of his organs, one by one, leaving only an empty shell. That was once Izuku. He crawls out of the rubble further, the sudden realization leaving him feeling far from his body, and he barely makes it onto the ground when he starts hyperventilating, because it can't possibly be real. He would dismiss the entire situation as a nightmare, if he weren't there in the event of the situation. Is he hallucinating? Izuku reaches up at his cheek, only to find that he is crying, and then does Izuku realize that he can't breathe. It's like when he was dying all over again. There's some rubble or metal piercing and pushing on his airway, and he's only able to get out a few low pathetic mmms before he passes away. But he couldn't have died. Because he's right here. Izuku clutches his neck as he heaves and sobs, snot and tears running down his face as he finds himself losing himself, his vision hazy and blurry, his mind elsewhere. He remembers dying so vividly. Like it had just happened. He died and then he woke up. Like it was some sick dream, but it felt so real and it's still so clear in his mind that. He hiccups and hits his head against the cold ground. He's exhausted. The simple act of squeezing his eyes shut too much or breathing in the wrong way costs him way too much energy. But he knows that he needs to figure out what happened before he loses himself further, so he slows himself down, and lets his thoughts become second to himself. He breathes in and out slowly, taking in the senses. It smells of ash and smoke right, he remembers fire, and of rubble and dust. His tongue tastes metallic, and he knows from the strong aroma in the area that it's blood. When he's calmed down enough for someone who just found out they might have died, he slowly opens his eyes and sits up. The area is a mess. It's way worse than it was before he died? Passed out? There is barely any wall surrounding him that's still standing, all of it was broken and scattered on the ground. The area is still smoky, and he notices lots of ash, hinting that a lot of the rubble and building must have burned to ash. He turns around, feeling a little dizzy and still hazy, and looks to where he once was. The rubble isn't the gray concrete it once was, but remaining black clumps of metal, dust, and small remaining pieces. The only thing that this suggests is that if Izuku was in the middle of that, he should have burned to ash too. Izuku GGS and vomits out his stomach components, wrenching as the realization completely sets in, he died. But somehow he's back? His first thought after the initial shock was that he was a ghost. But he didn't really believe in them, so he wonders if he has a ghost quirk. Although the idea disturbs him, it would make sense, as a quirk awakened from death obviously wouldn't present itself if he were alive, and it wouldn't have interfered with One for All, which is why he could carry both if that were the case. He feels his face, his neck, his chest, his legs. His second thought is that he has some sort of healing quirk. Because despite his body being completely crushed and mangled not so long ago, it's back to normal. But he dismisses that, because then why wouldn't it have presented itself earlier? Then maybe it's a healing quirk that only works during death? But he dismisses that idea too, because quirks surrounding the idea of coming back from death are completely unheard of. There are quirks that allow you to rewind age, or quirks with incredible healing abilities, but no one in the entirety of the world has ever come across an immortality quirk. His mother has telekinesis, his father fire breathing, so there's no way he could have. So ghost quirk then? He clutches his head, starting to get a headache from the stressful mess of the situation. But, no, that wouldn't make sense either. Telekinesis plus fire breathing does not equal ghost. He groans, this is too much for him. He needs to actually go somewhere where other humans are to find out if people can actually see him or not. Then, he'll know if he's a ghost or not. Hey! There's a person, someone yells from a distance. Izuku freezes. He was just in the midst of the fighting grounds. Of course there's heroes around cleaning up the mess. Although he doesn't quite recognize the voice, he knows that he needs to leave, because they'll for sure recognize him, and the last thing he needs right now is for news to spread that he snuck in fighting grounds. He gets up fully and begins running, mentally checking in his head that he is in fact real, not a ghost, and that his only current running theory is that he died, and came back to life. He starts gagging, but he doesn't throw up, because he doesn't know if he wants that theory to be true, or the idea that he's just going insane and is hallucinating all of this. He's pretty sure the hero who spotted him is calling after him, but he keeps running. His mind is racing, and he feels dread. Because what if he actually had some sort of death rewinding quirk? He reaches an alleyway that he recognizes, because he passed this one last night when he decided to sneak into the raid. The rest of the time passes as Izuku gets closer and closer to school. He's in a daze. He's not quite there, like he is when he has panic attacks, but it's as if his consciousness is in his white space and his body is moving on autopilot. Because all he can think about is, I died. Midoriya. Izuku shifts his gaze up, looking at the figure in the distance. Somehow, he ended up back in the UA grounds. He was not at the dorms, but not at the school either. He was somewhere in the middle, a long pathway leading to the dorms. Someone had spotted him. He feels dirty, sick to his stomach. He looks back down, but doesn't turn, he just stops. Oh my god Midoriya, we've been looking for you for like almost 8 hours. Where have you been? The voice says. It becomes louder as they run over. Izuku still feels trapped under the smoke, under the haze. He does not recognize the voice yet. They finally reach him and get a hold of him, grabbing his shoulders with their hands. The shape? These hands feel a lot like Todoroki's. He glances up, meeting his friend's concerned face. Are you okay? He asks, but Izuku doesn't respond, only staring back. Izuku wonders what he must look like. Tired? He feels very tired. Izuku shuts his eyes and lets his body relax, trusting that Todoroki will catch him if he falls. Wait, no, Izuku stop. He holds him tighter, moving him upright. What happened? You smell like smoke. He pulls him closer, touching his head and moving his hair around. Midoriya, is that blood? Izuku doesn't respond again, letting his muscles relax as he falls in Todoroki. He catches him, and pulls him into a hug, and lets Izuku rest his chin on top of his shoulder. He shakes him, but Izuku doesn't budge, he's too worn out. Midoriya, what happened? Are you hurt? He tries again. Midoriya? Izuku feels his lip begin to tremble, and then his body begins to shake, and tears begin to form, and all of a sudden it comes crashing down again. He begins to sob, letting the weight of his body pull him and Todoroki down as he begins pathetically crying on the ground beneath them. Todoroki pulls back immediately, alarm sounding in his head, as he tries to figure out what happened, but nothing. Izuku just cries. There's no mumbling or soft pleas, only the sound of agony as he cries out the weight of what happened to him in the early hours of the day. Midoriya, Todoroki tries once more, but he looks defeated as Izuku just keeps crying. At a loss, Todoroki pulls out his phone and sends a message to Aizawa, and then pulls Izuku into a tight hug. It's alright, he mumbles into Izuku's hair, but not even he can believe himself as he has no idea what could have happened to make his friend so sad. Aizawa and Toshinori watch as Izuku zones out, his body going limp, and his eyes drifting off into nothingness. It had only been 10 minutes since Todoroki had texted them that he found Izuku, 8 since he found the two on the ground not far from the dorms, 8 minutes since they saw Todoroki holding onto Izuku's inconsolable form as he cried out. 7 minutes since they took him to the dorms, resting him on the couch as he continued to hiccup and cry. 5 minutes since everyone else stood back as the adults began trying to calm him down. But now, at the present moment, all it took was for Izuku to cry himself to a dissociative state. Todoroki says over the silence, he just started crying. Everyone looks grim. Toshinori knows that Aizawa would have been more set off at Izuku sneaking off if he weren't looking so off. The bags under his eyes were dark and hollow, he was more pale, his hair was unkempt, greasy, covered in ash and what looked like blood, his clothing reeked of smoke and was covered in dust and dirt, and he was zoning out like he does whenever he has bad panic attacks. He was like that when you found him? Toshinori asks. Not really, he looked kind of like he wasn't fully there. Toshinori hums, and he puts the back of his hand on Izuku's cheek. Although Izuku has zoned out and is no longer sobbing anymore, he continues to silently cry, and Toshinori feels his heart break into a million pieces. Can someone make him a tea? Of course. Yaoyorozu chirps, springing on her feet and going to the kitchen. Ashido and Hagakure follow her. Is he? Uraraka starts, but her voice trailing off as if she didn't want to say. I'm not sure, my girl. Toshinori replies, keeping his focus on his kid. He continues to cry, but he looks less stressed out and more peaceful, which is all Toshinori wants his kid to feel like. Something happened to him. Bakugo says, and Toshinori shifts his gaze to look at him. He walks over and sits beside Izuku, staring at him intently. Izuku doesn't move, nor does he shift his gaze. Bakugo sighs. If it weren't for the obvious physical aspects, this isn't a normal panic attack. Something bad genuinely happened. He lifts his hand and pokes Izuku's arm, and once more, Izuku remains still as a statue. Everyone stays silent, unsure of what to say. Because it's true, they all were thinking what Katsuki decided to say out loud. Bakugo clears his throat and starts talking again. But guessing and making assumptions won't help. We'll wait until he's lucid enough to answer our questions, and then we can help him. Yaoyorozu comes back with a tea and puts it on Izuku's lap, hoping the heat of the drink will make him come back from whatever trance he's gotten himself in. Aizawa sits down on Izuku's other side and starts rubbing circles in his back. Midoriya, do you know where you are? He asks, his voice soft and low. When Izuku doesn't acknowledge him, Bakugo starts waving his hand in front of his face. Izuku blinks a little. Midoriya, do you know where you are? He tries again, massaging harder into his student's back. Izuku's gaze shifts a little, and he looks down at the mug on his lap. Dorm, he mumbles. It's quiet, and too low for others further in the room to not be able to understand, but the ones closer hear him. I'm at, here. Aizawa massages harder. Yes. Do you know what time it is? Izuku shakes his head and Aizawa flips his wrist and reads the time on his watch. It's almost 7, he swallows. We noticed you gone 8 hours ago. But we don't know how early you left last night. Izuku stirs a little, shutting his eyes before opening them again. Sorry, he mumbles, clutching his hands around the warm cup. I'm sorry. Everyone's expressions in the room shift into one of disappointment, or sadness, as Izuku begins to tear up again. Toshinori shakes his head and begins wiping the tears on Izuku's cheeks with his thumbs. No, my boy, if there is something you need to apologize for, you can do it later. Right now we are just concerned that you're okay. Are you hurt anywhere? Izuku sniffles and squeezes the mug harder, his expression shifting into one of discomfort. I don't know. I don't think so. Maybe? I don't feel hurt, but maybe there's something. His sentence was jumbled and didn't make much sense as he was also mumbling. I'm sorry, you're hurt? Or you don't know? Toshinori asks, removing the mug from his student's hands and rolling up his sleeves, checking for anything. I don't know, he says, shifting his gaze to look at his mentor. That's okay, he sits back and takes Izuku's hands in his. We just want you to be okay. So we're going to make sure you're good. Toshinori squeezes Izuku's hands and waits for any sign that Izuku understands what he means. When Izuku nods, Toshinori gets up and tells all of the students to hang out together while he and Aizawa have a chat. While he and his colleague leave the room, his eyes linger on his boy to the moment he can no longer see him. Izuku doesn't really know what to say. As soon as his teachers left, the room became silent again, and it was awkward. Awkward, because Izuku knows that they're all waiting for someone to break the silence, but nobody is because they're waiting for Izuku to. He doesn't want to talk about anything really, and he doesn't think he's going to tell anyone what he did or his theory because how will they react to that? Quirks that rewind death are completely unheard of, and the concept of it scares most people so much that it's not much of a discussion. And if he's right, and he really did die and miraculously come back to life, how would his life change? He'd come to the realization that him living almost his entire life quirkless and facing endless discrimination and abuse due to his lack of power would have been all for nothing? And what would happen if the public finds out? The gossip, the news that would spread misinformation and rumors. Would there be villains after him? Villains who want to play with him and test out his quirk? Experiment by killing Izuku over and over again? The more he thinks about it, the more it scares him. The word death, the concept of death has a whole new meaning to Izuku. Because death means to die and never come back. But to Izuku, death is now to die, and somehow come back. But how? If he really does have this quirk, how can he even regenerate? How does he heal? How does he come back to life? Does his body change, or does he get a new body? There are so many unanswered questions. For example, if he can regenerate or come back from death, is it only when he is killed by something else? What about self-inflicted deaths? Or diseases? Or old age? Natural causes? Illnesses? Where is the line drawn? Death becomes such a repeated word in Izuku's mind that it doesn't even sound like a word anymore. It scares him, but more than anything right now, it interests him. Maybe if he dies again, his questions will get answered. But as soon as the thought crosses his mind, he shoos it away, because he is not going to play around with this and test out his theories. Because if he is wrong, what if he stays dead? What then? He looks up again, noting that it is still awkwardly quiet, and the moment he makes eye contact with a few, they look away. Honestly, now that he's calm again, he's more embarrassed than anything. Do you guys want to watch TV or something? He asks, finally breaking the silence. His classmates immediately perk up, rushing over to grab the remote and start flipping from channel to channel. They ask him what he's in the mode for, but he just says whatever and lets them pick. He leans back further on the couch, glancing at Katsuki, who's still sitting beside him. Katsuki turns to face him and pokes at his chest. You good now? He asks, low so that nobody else will hear him. Yeah, for now. Izuku answers. You ever gonna tell me what happened? Katsuki hums, his tone light but obviously serious. Izuku looks down, and turns back to face the TV. It seems they put on some comedy. I don't know if I'll ever tell anybody, is all he says, before he closes his eyes and lets the sound of the TV show drift him off to sleep. Toshinori, there's something seriously wrong with him, Aizawa says, clear stress in his tone, something bad happened. They were just outside the dorm building, standing in the shade to avoid the hot sun blaze on them. Aizawa scratches the back of his head anxiously as he groans. This kid will be the death of me. At this point, I'm begging for a moment to be mad at him rather than concerned. I agree with you, Toshinori sighs, from the moment I met this kid, I swear more gray hairs have grown than usual. Honestly, I can't think of anything off the top of my head as to why young Izuku was so affected. He snuck out wearing the same thing he's wearing now. It was on the security footage and we got notified around 2ish in the morning, but I only just saw the notification. But where could he have gone? Do you think he went to the raid? Toshinori hums, that's a possibility, yes. But he has no visible injuries, and all of our students saw the same thing he would have if he went. So what could have happened to make him so off? The two men stand in silence for a bit until Aizawa breaks the silence. Bear with me, but there's not much he could have done if it did go to the raid. In all honesty? If he did go, he probably became a victim as well. He's both mentally and physically fragile, and due to the absence of one for all, he's currently more fragile. With the fact that that's public knowledge and he's currently very well known here, it makes him a good target. Aizawa runs a hand down his face, or, because of his injuries from the war and from his secret training, it would make him more oblivious and targetable to danger. But what bugs me is his lack of injuries and the fact that we definitely would have seen him if he went to the raid. So as much as this theory would make the most sense for him knowing his tendency to dismiss our orders and run away, I doubt he would become so dissociative because of the raid. It was scary, yes, but he's seen worse. All of our students have. So maybe he had an encounter with a different villain outside of the raid? Or something happened to him that wouldn't leave physical damage but emotional? Toshinori asks. Aizawa nods, yes, that was my second theory. We should call his mother, ask her if she and Izuku might have talked recently. Good call. Also, do you think maybe he just had a mental break? He's been very stressed out lately, having more bad PTSD episodes than normal. Maybe he went out for a walk and it all just crashed out on him. Aizawa shakes his head. While that could be a factor, there's physical proof that something more happened. His clothing smells of fire and is covered in dirt and ash. His hair is dusty and there are traces of his blood. Something happened. Right, yes. I forgot about that. Toshinori sighs, looking around. They're missing something, but what? He was in shock, Toshinori. Aizawa finally says. Toshinori looks over, Aizawa sighs heavily. He looked ghostly and traumatized because something so bad, something so severe, something enough to put this poor kid into shock happened. And you don't think he'll tell us? Toshinori asks. The kid's too stubborn. Maybe eventually, but, no. Aizawa sighs, trailing his eyes over to Toshinori's. For his sake as well as our own though, he better tell someone. Izuku struggles and tries to move but he doesn't budge, stuck under blazing concrete far from help. His windpipe was pierced with a metal rod, so he's only inches away from death. It's like his whole body was frozen and paralyzed, and could only do the simple acts of wiggling his fingers and blinking. He tries to make a noise again maybe. If someone hears him, he won't die, but it's no use, because he can't even breathe. The pressure of the concrete becomes heavier and hotter as the flames start engulfing it further. Izuku waits for unconsciousness to take him, but it never does, and he's left to be fully aware and present while the flames swallow him whole and the rubbles crushes him further. In his mind he's screaming. He's shouting in pain and agony, calling for help, begging for mercy, but he can't make any noise other than low mmms. The moment the flame makes contact with his skin, it's like he'd been hit with 1,000 lightning bolts. It burns, and it hurts so badly that Izuku never thought this type of pain was even imaginable. At this point, he starts begging for death, begging for the end of his life because he cannot take this anymore. He'd rather die than be able to feel what's happening to him right now. But death doesn't come, not a minute after asks, not 2 minutes, and when 3 whole minutes pass Izuku starts to wonder if he's in hell, and that this is his punishment for letting that poor little girl die. With that realization set, he waits for the fire to end his life fully and for the pain to eventually die down, and he graciously lets unconscious finally take him, leaving behind a heavy heart. Midoriya? Izuku opens his eyes and sees Ochako standing hesitantly in front of him. Confused, he sees that he's still on the couch, only, there is a blanket over top of him and the room is pretty much empty, the moonlight glistening out the windows indicating that it's night and everyone must have gone to bed. Sorry, Ochako mutters, taking a seat beside him, it's just, you were crying in your sleep, so I wasn't sure if I should wake you or not. Izuku frowns. He hates when his classmates catch him in a bad dream, because he knows that they all have them, but it puts Izuku in an awkward situation because since they all have them, everyone usually wants to talk about them. Something about support? Usually, when Izuku has a bad dream about All for One or Shigaraki, he has no problem talking about it with his friends, as they are all supportive and understanding as they also experience the two villains firsthand. But Izuku can't talk about something like this. Don't worry, I was about to wake up anyways, he says, not quite chirpy but lightly enough that it doesn't sound depressing. But I'd rather not talk about it. What time is it? Ochako nods. Don't worry, I won't poke. Oh, and, it's just past 12. Izuku raises his eyebrows, why aren't you in bed yet? Ochako's cheeks heat up. Well, and you're probably not going to like this, but Aizawa has set up a watch on you again. Izuku turns to face her fully in frustration. What? But is there another mission? Ochako sighs, Izuku, I'm pretty sure you know why. It's not that we don't want to trust you, but we can't. Aizawa wants to make sure you don't try to run away again, so it's a full-time watch until further notice. Even while I sleep? Izuku asks with more annoyance in his tone than intended, but he doesn't really care. He's set off, but he knows he did this to himself. Well, no. Aizawa and as well as all of us still respect your privacy, but you do have more surveillance surrounding your dorm now. And until further notice, your balcony door will be locked shut. If you break the glass or somehow unlock it, UA teachers will be notified. So, you're kinda not allowed free roam anymore, I guess? Her tone is lighthearted with good intentions, because as much as this is a serious conversation, she wants to stress Izuku out as little as possible. Izuku groans in response. I did do this to myself, he mumbles. Ochako tries to laugh, but it only sounds awkward, making the air thick. Izuku gets annoyed in response. It's not that he's annoyed at Ochako, but more annoyed due to the fact that this is how people treat him. All of a sudden, it's like his friends don't know how to treat him like a normal human being. Before, they could sit in silence for a long time without it being awkward, but now, every confrontation is one of uncertainty and awkwardness. Izuku glances over at her. Is something wrong? Ochako's face reddens again. What? No, nothing. Why, she answers, trying to play it off by smiling, but her smile comes out awkward instead. So, Izuku decides to make things even more awkward for her, and he glances down to pick at his fingernails. He can feel his friend's eyes on him, as if she's waiting for him to say something, and when enough passes where he doesn't, she starts talking. Well, we made dinner, just your casual rice and chicken, nothing fancy. You were still asleep and none of us wanted to wake you up, but we left some in the fridge because you must be pretty hungry. Izuku glances back up. He's fine if they talk about food, because he is pretty hungry now that he thinks about it. And he'd rather taste something other than post-vomit and dry blood. I'll have some, sure. I basically slept most of today, so I guess I'm not exactly tired right now. So I'll eat and then try to go back to bed for the night, he says, smiling a little. Ochako beams and gets up, mumbling her words as she runs out the room, and Izuku assumes she said something like don't get up. I'll make it for you. Or something. Pleased, he reaches for the remote and turns on the TV. He flips through the channels but ultimately decides on a cartoon not to watch, but mainly as background noise. Not long after, Ochako returns with a big bowl of food and a tall glass of water. Please, if you need me to get you more I will, she says, her voice so intense that it makes Izuku laugh. She giggles in return, and both of them share a pleasant moment. As time passes, and Izuku finishes his first and chows down his second dish, he lets the comforting moment of familiarity take him through the night. When he falls back asleep, he almost forgets the day's earlier events. But not completely. That night, Izuku and Ochako stay up a little later and Ochako gladly agrees to wait outside the boys' communal showers while he washes off. It feels nice, and it feels like one of those times where he hadn't showered in forever. It feels good to wash out the dirt and blood and ash, and to let himself melt under the water. In all honesty, it was what he needed probably the whole day. He slides down the shower wall and lets the water pour over him as he thinks about everything that had happened. He can't be 100% sure that he actually has the ability to come back from death, but the theory just keeps poking and prodding, so it's all he can think about. He's too scared to try and test it out, because if he's wrong and he permanently dies, or if he doesn't die altogether but ends up getting caught, that's not something he wants to face. The more he thinks about dying, the more appealing it sounds. Not in a suicidal way. Izuku has only ever had dark thoughts like that during very, very dark moments in his life. But he doesn't want to kill himself. Despite him being insecure and depressed about the loss of his quirk, his dream, he doesn't want to die. But because the words death and dying and experimenting and suicide have been reeling throughout his head non-stop all day, he considers it more. Maybe he'll start being more careless. Maybe he'll forget to look both ways when he crosses. Or maybe he'll start taking more pain meds than he should, or maybe he'll accidentally mistake bleach for the cup of juice he places next to it. Izuku runs a hand over his face, sighing. These scenarios only make the thoughts louder, giving him more and more ideas as to how he can die. It sounds suicidal, but Izuku is curious more than anything. And really, if he dies, it's not like he has much of a future. If the time comes and Izuku and all his classmates become healed enough to finally be able to participate in training and class activities, but Izuku still gets sat out. Either given a sloppy excuse or it being told straight to his face, he decides that that is when he'll give death another chance. Standing up and turning off the water, he wraps a towel around his waist and wonders what other types of death must feel like. Days pass, and although it's annoying, Izuku gets used to being watched and followed everywhere. He wishes things were different, he wishes everybody wasn't so scared of him running off again, but enough time has passed where almost all of his friends have started acting normal again. Katsuki was the only one who hadn't really changed, and Ochako was normal the night after they hung out, but it seems things have finally started to wind down. Of course, it doesn't mean his incident was thrown under the rug, he was plenty bothered about that. The day after, Aizawa called him into one of the dorm's side rooms and made him talk with him, his mother, All Might, and Nezu. They asked him a lot of questions, about why he left, what happened, if there were other people involved, if anyone knew he snuck out. He dodged a lot of the questions, putting on his facade and pretending to dissociate for most of the conversation. Really, all he told them was that he went out for a walk to clear his mind and got attacked by some random villain. It was clear none of them believed him, but they didn't pry, which was nice. But, after that conversation they told him they'll leave it alone for now, unless something else comes up. Then, they decided to go on about how he's not a burden, and that his lack of quirk doesn't change how they see him. Half of him believed it, mainly when All Might was saying it, but then they kept going on and on about why it was irresponsible and that he shouldn't be toying around with his health. When that was over with, he noticed that none of his classmates were trying to talk to him about it, so he assumed that Aizawa must have told them to not poke further. So, he lets his days pass as if nothing ever happened, and soon 3 days pass, then 5, and then it's been over a week since the incident. Unfortunately for Izuku, it feels like only yesterday. His nightmares are worse, more violent, more lengthy, and he is having more flashbacks and panic attacks than usual. This means that he's been more anxious than usual, been throwing up more after his nightmares, and most of the time completely having zero appetite. So while reality and responsibilities and school feel almost normal again, he certainly does not. He's lost a good amount of weight and is losing more sleep than he normally does. Of course, his friends have commented on it, and Izuku only tells them that he's fine, when everybody knows he's not. They know better than to push, so they leave him be, much to their annoyance. But, school days are normal, and while he's still mourning what training he could be having, he decides to throw himself into schoolwork. As soon as he finishes one assignment, he starts another, and when he's all caught up, he asks if there are any extra assignments he can do. It's a good distraction, and he's always been the type who loves to learn, so he really doesn't mind. Neither do his teachers, because All Might mentions to him one afternoon a bit around maybe 10 days after he tells Izuku that Aizawa is considering his new style of coping improvement. Improvement? Izuku laughs, sipping at his noodles. Do you know what he means? All Might smiles. I think that means that he's recognizing the fact that you're not working out and releasing your emotions through fighting and training anymore. He's considering your switch up in coping mechanisms proof that you're actually listening to him and finding a healthier way to distract yourself. Oh yeah, that does make sense. He leans back further into the couch. I didn't even think about it like that honestly. I just started doing it because I liked learning and it's made my panic attacks less frequent. But I guess my subconscious must have considered that too. Do you think this means he'll start to trust me again? All Might hums. Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Unfortunately, I do think it's still going to be a long time before he'll let you off though. He's stubborn, but he truly wants the best for you. Izuku nods in agreement, because progress is progress, and if this small change is making his freedom one step closer to being granted, he'll take it. So he learned that while the distraction helps him, it's also benefiting his teachers, and it's making him more trustworthy. Unfortunately, he can only do so much, so when he doesn't have any work to do he's usually at a loss. It doesn't take long for him to spiral, especially because his anxiety just keeps getting worse and he hasn't found any medication or therapy for his PTSD. He thinks about it using his drag metaphor. When a person starts taking a drag, they start using it more frequently, and eventually they become addicted, using it all the time. If they don't have any left, they might start withdrawing from the lack of use. That's kind of where Izuku's at, because too long without anything to distract himself with, he starts dissociating and panicking. When he doesn't have work to do, and he knows better than to train right now, he tries different things. His phone, taking notes, drawing, reading. But unfortunately none of those things have really worked for him. Since he's still being supervised by everyone, when he's downstairs he has his friends to accompany him. For the most part they do a great job at distracting him and keeping him level-headed. But all it takes is one mention of training, or missions, or hero work, or their quirks, and Izuku is basically on human do not disturb for the next hour. When 13 days have passed since the incident, Izuku is sitting on the couch with his friends when the news turns on. It's a segment covering the damage of the raid that most of them were at, now that information is being publicly released. Immediately, a lot of his classmates perk up, but Izuku only feels himself growing nauseous. The lady covering the raid starts only going over damage details and injuries. She talks about how the entire building collapsed because of the villain's quirk vacuum, the ability SCK everything towards the quirk's holder, and that the villain was able to use the pressure from skiing piece of the building so harder that they were able to shoot it right back out, and when the thrown pieces of concrete hit the building, the force would be so much that the building would crack. All in all a very powerful but destructive quirk. Izuku would find himself fascinated if he weren't so anxious. Then she starts talking about how many people were involved, and what happened to the villain, but then she starts talking about civilians involved. While I can say that the heroes and police involved in the incident walked away with minor injuries, I cannot say the same for civilians and the captured who found themselves in the midst of the chaos. The woman on the TV, causing everyone to stop their chatter and to pay more attention to the TV. Izuku's blood runs cold. Some of the innocent people involved walked off with moderate to severe injuries, ranging from concussions to fractured bones and even gashes. Unfortunately, there is evidence of 2 casualties. The class exploded into quiet murmurs. All those who were involved in the raid expressed how all of the heroes were sure no one had died. Izuku's pulse starts quickening, and he starts sweating, because he knows that there's something he blocked out from that day that he's going to remember soon enough. His brain is screaming at him to leave the room and to get away from anything that will hurt him too badly, but Izuku stays put, frozen in fear. Under a rather large quantity of broken-off concrete, ash, and rubble, was evidence of 2 fatalities. Heroes found ash of what seems to be human remains, but unfortunately it is too late to tell, as the body has been turned completely into ash. They also discovered the deceased body of 10-year-old Kanato, who they were able to identify through DNA testing, as her body was found completely demolished. When heroes, the class erupts into and they all start talking about how they had zero idea that people had died. The guilt is noticeable through everyone, and though the conversations are loud and frantic, Izuku's ears ring too loud for him to be able to pay any attention. Quietly and politely, Izuku excuses himself, earning a couple confused glances from everyone. It's not long until Izuku makes it to the bathroom to puke his guts out. He had almost zero recollection of that before, almost as if he had blocked out that memory after it happened. Tears stream violently down his face as his tears become more frantic and the memories from that night become more vivid. Through the sobs, Izuku is able to make out someone walk in and towards him, crouching over and rubbing his back. When he focuses his eyes, he sees Katsuki. "I think you forgot that you're not allowed to be alone. You're still on watch, you know that, right?" Katsuki says, his voice not showing even a hint of stress, but Izuku can tell that he's concerned. "You've been acting really weird, you know. Every time any of us mention something about the raid you have a weird reaction to it, especially tonight about that girl that got killed. We all have empathy, Izuku, but empathy doesn't make you have a panic attack and throw up in the bathroom." Izuku looks up at him hazily, but his heart pounds in panic. He wonders for a moment if Katsuki caught on. "You went to the raid. I'm right, aren't I?" Katsuki says, wiping the vomit on his mouth with toilet paper. "You must have seen her die, or been with her. That's definitely enough to traumatize someone for life." Izuku stares at him as tears form around his eyes. He's scared that someone knows, but at the same time relieved that he doesn't have to outright tell someone. Not wanting to lie, Izuku nods slowly as sobs start racking his body. Katsuki wraps his arms around him as he cries, rubbing his back slowly. Katsuki sighs. "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. You can trust me," Katsuki whispers. Izuku only cries more, tired of how much he's cried and how much it hurts for the tears to escape his eyes. He feels incredibly guilty, incredibly awful, and for a moment, he feels like he should tell Katsuki that he thinks he died too, but he doesn't. He doesn't deserve help, understanding, empathy, he deserves nothing. He lets out another wet sob as the grief and agony of the situation catch up to him. When days pass, Katsuki keeps his word and doesn't talk about it. Izuku's grateful, and it should make him feel a little better, the fact that he told someone a bit of what happened, but ever since he remembered the little girl and the whole moment, his nightmares have gotten progressively worse. It's gotten to the point where he's only getting 1 to 2 hours of sleep per night, and usually that time is uncomfortable, as it's when his bad dreams occur. He talks to Recovery Girl about his sleeping issues, and she prescribes him a prescription sleeping drug that is very strong. When she first gave it to him, she very adamantly told him over and over to not double dose, as it's so strong it could knock him out for over 15 hours. So, he takes 1 pill per night and finds himself able to sleep through his bad dreams. Of course, it would be nice if he could sleep for 15 hours, but he sticks to the 1 dose as it really has been working well for him. While he only does end up getting only 5 more hours of sleep, it's better than 1. Throughout the week, more and more people get cleared to go back to training. First it's Shinso and Jairu, then Tokoyami, Ochako and Ida, and then it's Todoroki and Kirishima. They were all ecstatic to be able to go back to training and hero work, and when they did their first training exercise since being cleared, watching them beam and exceed made Izuku's chest hurt a little. When he walks into class the morning after Kirishima and Todoroki got cleared, he overhears Ashido and Hagakure chatting about Aizawa potentially clearing whoever is left today. For 1 second, Izuku gets hopeful, as he's made remarkable progress with Aizawa lately, proving to him that he could be trusted and not train, do his physio, and take it easy. He's even gained some weight back. But then the hopefulness disappears as soon as it comes, as Izuku has a gut feeling that Aizawa will come up with another excuse anyways. Looking over at Katsuki, he sees hope in his eyes too, but also more buzzing anticipation. Class starts and Aizawa walks in, beginning his lesson. Izuku can't really focus though, wondering if he'll actually clear him and Katsuki today, and to be honest he's pretty sure no one else is really paying any attention as well. Their class is like one big giant family, and everyone wants everyone to be able to go back to training soon. 10 minutes pass, then 20, then 30, then his first class goes and he's completely lost all hope. He's lost hope for himself a while ago at this point, but he really was rooting for Katsuki. Before Aizawa leaves and lets Present Mike start his lesson, he clears his throat and orders everyone to hold on for a second. I know a lot of you overheard that I would be clearing the rest of the students for training today, he says, and the class perks up in response, giving their immediate attention to him as he takes a deep breath, shifting his gaze to look at Katsuki. Bakugo, you're healed and healthy enough to resume training and patrol. You may join the class in training this afternoon, class dismissed. The class erupts into chaos and they cheer for Katsuki, but Izuku can't really do the same, as his ears start ringing loudly. Looking at Katsuki, he meets his eyes, seeing a familiar look in his eyes. Katsuki opens his mouth, but closes it, sensing the tenderness of what just happened. Izuku shifts his gaze down to look at his hands, noticing that they are shaking softly. He wants to so badly say something, he so badly wants to argue and tell Aizawa that he can train and again, that he's proved himself and he's listened. But he knows that won't do good, because Aizawa won't let him. He has too many good excuses to tell him to cover up the real reason he won't let him train. Because he's quirkless. Mr. Aizawa, sir? Ochako hesitantly asks, sharing almost the same expression as Katsuki, but I was wondering why Aizu. The bell rings, cutting Ochako off and signaling the 3-minute break between their next class. Izuku gets up immediately, rushing through their desk and muttering to his classmates that he's going to use the washroom, and runs out the door. With his peripherals, he can tell that Aizawa has followed him out the room, but Izuku doesn't turn back. He's so upset and frustrated, and he's afraid that if he gets the chance to talk to Aizawa he'll just blow up and ruin all the progress he's made. He can't do that, he's been doing so good. And maybe Izuku is misunderstanding everything. Maybe, Aizawa meant to clear him too, but forgot. Or maybe he's going to do it later, and he just wanted to space it out a bit. Izuku wants to believe it all, truly, but he knows that even if he does get cleared, Aizawa will still prevent him from doing a lot of things. He just wishes Aizawa would stop giving him the excuse of not being healthy enough yet and finally say it straight to his face. He can't participate because he is quirkless and now weak. Because that's all it is. Midoriya. Stop running, he calls, jogging up to Izuku and grabbing the back of his collar. What is the matter? Izuku whips around to face him, but his mouth stays shut. Because of the break, there are a couple students roaming the halls currently, and they're giving the two strange looks. Aizawa, noticing Izuku's hesitance, grabs his wrist and drags him over to a more empty hallway. When they stop, Aizawa speaks again. Midoriya, I want you to know that this attitude has to stop. I understand your frustrations, but you need to understand that. Want me to understand what? Another excuse as to why I can't join you guys? It's one thing after another, after another, after another. Izuku shouts, backing into a wall and gripping his head out of stress. He looks at Aizawa. I'm over it. I just want you to stop with the excuses and tell me to my face. Aizawa scoffs. You know the reason, you're not ready yet. It's not just that. You don't want me out there because I'm quirkless. I know it's because I'm quirkless. I just want you to say it to my face. If you say it to my face, then I'll be fine with it. Izuku stresses. Midoriya. He warns. I understand that I'd fall behind, I understand that I won't be at the top of the class, I understand that things won't be the same, but I just want you to tell me why you won't even bother to let me do something as minor as sparring. Okay, you want me to say it to your face? Well, let me be loud and clear. It is because you're quirkless. Is that what you wanted to hear? Quirkless people will die in the field and get hurt because they're weaker, they're less strong than the average hero. Do you ever wonder why there's no known quirkless hero? Because they either fail or get forgotten or die. All in all, if I let a quirkless person on the field, I'm just putting them and everyone else in danger. You'll be a distraction more than anything. If I let you start training, it won't be enough for you. And I can't let you go out there and get hurt again. No amount of extra training and support gear will stop you from putting your life in danger. I won't be responsible for that, I won't. When Aizawa finished talking, they both just stare at each other for a moment. Of course, Izuku had asked Aizawa to tell him, but Izuku didn't want him to present it so coldly. Noticing the shift in Izuku's mood, Aizawa clamps a hand over his mouth and looks down in what looks like shame. I didn't mean to say it like that. Aizawa says. Izuku nods, he doesn't quite feel like he's fully there. Yeah, I know, he swallows, looking to his side, but you told me. Now I know that I was right. No need to lie to me. Anymore. Aizawa doesn't respond, and Izuku turns around and walks down the hallway and towards the bathrooms. Aizawa doesn't follow, and Izuku's ring louder and louder and he can't quite form any coherent thoughts. He gets to the bathroom, but can't get into a stall, because someone grasps his shoulders and turns him around. It's Katsuki. I followed you and Aizawa and was kinda eavesdropping, sorry. He says, his tone nonchalant but his eyes full of worry. I heard everything. Izuku's eyes start to water, and then his lip quivers, and his body starts shaking and he gets nauseous and lightheaded and all of a sudden tears start to pour out his eyes and he loses it. He falls into his friend's arms and starts audibly sobbing. Katsuki just pulls him in and holds him tightly as he lets him cry. Izuku gets tears and snot on Katsuki's shoulder, and he tries to apologize, but it gets mumbled under his cries. Katsuki starts rubbing circles into his back and mutters things like it's okay and just breathe, and Izuku tries his best to focus on him and his voice, his breath, his touch, but it feels all so far away. Katsuki doesn't push him away, doesn't abandon him, he gives Izuku his full attention and lets Izuku break down. Every time Izuku thinks he's going to start calming down, he starts thinking about another thing, and he spirals. How much can he really take? Quirkless possible immortality quirk. The weight of someone's death, the weight of his own death. Being told he can't be a hero again, being left behind his classmates. His fight with Aizawa, and Katsuki overhearing. The PTSD and panic attacks, his own insecurities and struggles. He's 16 years old, why does it have to be him? Katsuki pulls him in closer, leans closer and whispers, we're going to be heroes together, one way or another. And to that, Izuku cries harder. Because he doesn't know if he'll be around much longer. Izuku spends the rest of the day in his bed. Katsuki took him straight from the bathroom to the dorms, skipping out on class to do so. He made sure he changed into some more comfortable clothing and had some water and snacks if he needed, and with one more check-in, he left for lunch. Katsuki seemed to trust Izuku not to run off, and Izuku thanked him for that. As much as running off and jumping off a building seems tempting right now, he's too exhausted to get out of bed. He doesn't really think about anything other than what Aizawa had said to him, playing on loop. He knows that everything Aizawa had said to him made sense in a way, and he doesn't mean to make Izuku hurt, but Aizawa was frustrated, and Izuku was testing him. He knows that if Aizawa told him when they weren't both stressed out and angry, it would have come out in a way that would make a lot of sense, and he probably would have given good reasons too. Izuku knows that if Aizawa allowed him back in training, Izuku would be pushing to do patrol again soon. Izuku knows that he is more fragile now, with the quirklessness and his PTSD, and Izuku knows that all of this is coming from Aizawa's urge to protect all of his students. He practically failed Katsuki, as he did die, and he just doesn't want to make the same mistake twice. He's not trying to be quirkist, but he is. Enough time has passed that the idea of him possibly having a quirk sounds more far-fetched than anything, and a sudden gut-wrenching feeling envelopes his chest and hits him like a freight train. He has no good ending, no future where he is living his dream, no future where he will be happy. He doesn't know if he'll ever get to go back to who he was again, and it breaks his heart as if it were hit with a hammer, over and over and over and over. Izuku feels tears fall down his cheeks, and he starts to quietly sob. He doesn't care about this potential quirk anymore. What would it do for him anyways? He doubts it'll convince Aizawa, and in fact, it would probably make Aizawa expel him. He'd have to explain how he figured it out, and Aizawa would find how he broke the rules and went to the raid, endangered himself and got himself killed, and Aizawa would realize that that means 2 of his students got themselves killed under his guidance, and he wouldn't take that lightly. Izuku just wants to die. He's so tired of being babied, tired of being left behind, tired of being a basket case, tired of feeling so miserable. It wouldn't matter if he killed himself. What future is there for him anyways? And if he really does have some sort of immortality quirk? Then he'll just kill himself over and over until it sticks. Because Izuku doesn't care anymore. He doesn't want to be a teacher, or police officer, or detective, or something else. He wants to be a hero. It's the only thing he's ever wanted to be, the only thing he's ever planned for. It's the only thing he's ever dreamt of, and if he can't be a hero? Well then, he'd rather be dead. Izuku spends the rest of the day in a haze. As the hours pass, Izuku vaguely registers the feeling of getting hungry or thirsty, and needing to use the bathroom, but he doesn't get up. Getting up seems like too much of a chore, and his head hurts too much anyways. He glances at his bedside clock, reading the time 4:17 p.m. and becoming aware that his classmates should have all trickled in by now. Izuku's proven right, as someone knocks on his door and asks if they could come in. Izuku doesn't want to see anyone, so he stays quiet, hoping that whoever it is will leave him alone. They come in anyways. Izuku, they ask, and it's Todoroki. Although the room is dark, the light from the hallway peeks in and reveals Ochako and Ida standing not far behind him. Todoroki repeats himself, Izuku? Are you awake? Izuku quickly shuts his eyes and pretends to sleep. It's not far off from how he was before, as he's been laying there for hours unmoving, but it's a little different now that he has eyes watching him. They buy it, though. I think he's sleeping, Ochako says, her voice is quiet, but she adds, let's just go, he probably wouldn't want us here. Izuku feels relieved, until Todoroki cuts in. I feel like we should wake him up. I'm tired of him hiding away. We're his friends, aren't we? Todoroki says, his voice a lot more desperate than Izuku's heard recently. Ida sighs, and he hears him walk up to the other boy. I seriously doubt that waking him up will evoke any positive emotions. Our friend is clearly depressed, and he doesn't need people poking and prodding him for answers. Ida tries to explain, but Izuku can hear Todoroki walk over to Izuku's desk and sit on his chair. Everyone ignored my mother, he says, his voice low. Everyone let her be when she was shutting down, acting depressed, hiding away. And then she broke down and landed both me and her in the hospital herself for years. Imagine if that were Midoriya? I don't think I could live with that. Ida and Ochako are quiet, and Izuku starts to wonder what their opinion is surrounding his quirklessness. He's never really talked to them about it, and every time it gets mentioned, he doesn't really fully understand their expressions. Internally cursing himself, he ignores the rest of the conversation as he tunes it out, letting the thoughts in his mind consume him and drown everything else out. When he hears them get up and leave the room, closing the door behind them, only then does Izuku finally fall asleep, getting through the sleep without sleeping pills and nightmares for the first time in a long time. The next day, everyone but Izuku shows up to class. He hasn't moved once, with the exception of him using the washroom early that morning, but once he finished he returned to the exact same spot he was in. He felt utterly and entirely empty. And so All Might came to check up on him, a little after the first PRD would have started. He knocks on the door and when there is no response, he comes in with a little more urgency than he would normally. He walks over to where Izuku is slumped on the bed and when he sees him breathing normally, he sighs of relief. He starts rubbing Izuku's back as he sits down on the bed beside him. Izuku melts into the touch, and he feels very comfortable. All Might doesn't say anything, neither does Izuku, and they stay silent for a while. After a bit, the stop where All Might was massaging becomes tender and noticing the shift in his posture, All Might moves to his neck. He starts talking then. My boy, he starts, sounding unsure, making Izuku's heart clench a little. I heard what happened with Aizawa. Izuku freezes, and All Might stops massaging and moves his hand. In a small, quiet voice, Izuku asks, did Kaken tell you? No, my boy, it was Aizawa. And so, we are all worried about you. You seem very depressed. And you look very unwell. Aizawa told me the details, so I am well aware that what he said wasn't okay, and he is already going to formally apologize to you. Izuku stays quiet for a moment, then says, "It's because I am feeling sad, All Might. I am feeling tired." He trails off, clenching his bed sheets in his hands. He feels like crying. And I just want to know, do you think I could be a hero without a quirk? The question stuns the room in silence, as it is the same question All Might was faced with almost 2 years ago. A young quirkless boy, with hopes and dreams and a drive to become what he wants to be most, and an older quirkless boy, who lived out his dream for only a year with no drive, no hope, and no dreams. One standing on a rooftop and yelling out his frustrations and his reasonings, and one laying depressed in bed with nothing but a mere question to ask. Izuku can tell that the contrast of the situation hits All Might like a brick, and that this is the most critical moment right now. All Might doesn't answer, so Izuku tries again. Can I still be a hero? All Might hesitates. My boy, here's the thing. You are strong and smart and experienced and dedicated, but you are also irrational and irresponsible and self-sacrificial. As much as I think you have the ability, with you also now being quirkless again, Izuku's world freezes. I do not think it would be wise if any of us let you be a hero. I'm sorry. Izuku doesn't respond, and All Might must respect that, as he lets Izuku take the time to process what he just said. Eventually, Izuku speaks again. I didn't ask you why I can't be a hero. I asked if you think that I could be a hero. All Might doesn't respond, and that says everything to Izuku. He asks All Might to leave, once, twice, and then he gets up and leaves, and once the door closes Izuku's heart shatters. It starts off with his hands shaking, and then tears stream down his cheeks, and all of a sudden he's gasping for air. He covers his face with his pillow on the off chance that All Might is standing just outside the door and can hear him, so he muffles any noises he makes. His heart actually aches, it actually feels like he got punched right where it hurts. His head feels like it's spinning, and Izuku actually does not know how much more he can take. All Might only believed in Izuku back then because he had the ability to give him a quirk. It's not that nobody thinks Izuku can become a great hero, it all comes back to him being quirkless, and that's what hurts most. It's always been about that, but everybody just avoids it or uses excuses. Izuku loves All Might, he loves Aizawa, they are very important people to him. But Izuku doesn't think he can live in a world where nobody believes in him. Later, someone knocks at his door. Izuku's too exhausted to do anything anymore, so he doesn't really register the door opening and someone walking in until they're sitting beside him and brushing his hair out of his face. These hands, they're warm, a lot like. You have tear stains on your cheeks, you know? Katsuki says, his voice cozy and familiar. Izuku almost melts into his touch. Of course, Izuku doesn't respond, but Katsuki doesn't respond with disappointment or concern or sadness, and that's what he likes about Katsuki the most. He knows Izuku better than Izuku knows himself sometimes. He gives Izuku exactly what he needs at the moment, familiarity. Do you want to shower? Eat something? You should eat, you've already lost enough weight. Katsuki says, and he scooches closer to Izuku. Izuku doesn't really acknowledge him, and he feels like crying. But he's so tired of crying, it gives him headaches and makes him nauseous. Come on, I'll take you to the showers. Katsuki grabs Izuku's shoulders and pulls him forward easily due to his loss of weight, and he pulls him closer to his chest. Come on, Katsuki says as he hauls Izuku to his feet, draping one of Izuku's arms over his shoulder. Izuku lets him, too tired to do it on his own or fight back. Katsuki takes him out to the hallway and the bright light forces Izuku's eyes closed. He winces, and Katsuki tightens his hold. If anyone else were trying to take Izuku to the showers right now, something that should be normally easy and no problem for Izuku, he'd be embarrassed. But it's Katsuki, he knows Izuku better than anyone else right now. And he'll always push to get Izuku out of a slump, even if it's the worst it's ever been right now. Izuku doesn't feel embarrassed around him, he feels safe. They end up at the showers, and Katsuki sets him down on one of the benches before he walks over to one of the stalls and turns on the shower tap. He returns to Izuku, and he grabs a comb and starts brushing out Izuku's unkempt hair. You look really skinny, Izuku. He mutters, though his tone and facial expression don't really indicate worry. It was mostly like he was just commenting, hiding whatever concern he has for Izuku's sake. Izuku shrugs. Katsuki tells Izuku to start undressing as he leaves to go grab some towels. Izuku complies, slowly taking off his shirt and shorts. He feels a little exposed, but Katsuki would never make Izuku feel insecure. Izuku turns around and looks at himself in the mirror, noticing that in fact, he has lost quite a bit of weight. His collarbones are much more prominent than they've been before, and his jawline is much sharper. He does have some muscle left but it's much less noticeable. He has deep eye bags and his expression is empty. It matches how he feels, depressed and empty. He misses who he was before, smiley, happy, bright, healthy. He feels a thumb brush past his cheek, and he sees in the mirror that it's Katsuki. Shifting his gaze over to look him in the eyes, he notices Katsuki growing a bit. He looks tired. Stop crying, it's not good to cry this much. Take off your shorts and let's get you into the shower. There was no bite in his tone, it makes Izuku want to hug him and never let go. He takes off his shorts and covers his waist with a towel and Katsuki guides him over to the showers. Katsuki tries to keep him standing, but the hot water sends Izuku straight to the floor. Whoa, Katsuki says, helping him down. Are you dizzy? Mia, Izuku mumbles, in a bit of a daze. Katsuki nods and leans him against the wall. Izuku watches him as he starts grabbing body wash, shampoo and conditioner, and Izuku's heart tugs a little. He's getting soaked, all for Izuku's sake. But Izuku doesn't have much energy to do all the things himself, so he opts to apologize. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, Katsuki says almost immediately, all I care about is making sure you're taken care of. Thank you. Izuku says, closing his eyes. The hot water feels nice, and he feels much more relaxed than he did laying in bed. After a bit, Katsuki starts massaging shampoo in Izuku's hair, and he feels like he's in heaven. He melts deeper into Katsuki's touch, and he starts feeling like maybe the world isn't that awful if Katsuki's here for him. It's nothing romantic, nothing like that, he just feels real, deep gratitude for Katsuki. He's always been with Izuku, no matter if they were on good terms or not. Thank you. Izuku says again, and he opens his eyes to look at Katsuki. He doesn't quite smile, but he doesn't frown either, and that earns a half smile back from Katsuki. Lazily Izuku lifts his arm to poke Katsuki. Katsuki stops washing his hair for a moment and waits for Izuku to talk. Quietly, and while shifting his gaze to the shower floors, Izuku asks, do you think I can still be a hero? And with no hesitation, Katsuki says, I never thought you stopped. And so Izuku smiles. When Izuku and Katsuki are done, Katsuki helps Izuku dress and dry off. Izuku feels a lot better, showers really do help. It's like they don't just wash off dirt and grime, but also stress and sadness. It's almost short-lived though, as the moment Izuku steps back into the hallway he feels all his worries come back to him. Katsuki keeps Izuku distracted though, squeezing his elbows as he guides him towards the elevators. We aren't going back to my room? Izuku asks. Nope. Uraraka is doing your laundry, bed sheets, blankets, so while we wait for it to finish you're coming downstairs and eating a proper meal. Katsuki says. Izuku wants to argue, but he knows he doesn't have much of a choice anyways. He is a little hungry, but it makes him nauseous with the fact that he'll most likely vomit later after a bad dream or stress. He feels more alive, so he's able to walk on his own with the slight support from Katsuki. When they enter the elevator and the doors close, Izuku asks Katsuki a question. What time is it? He turns to Katsuki. It's just past 4. Me and Uraraka practically ran over here after heroics. He says. Izuku's eyebrows shoot up. What is it? Katsuki asks. It's just, Izuku starts, turning back to face the elevator doors, I zoned out for like, the whole day. Makes sense, you've been really off. Katsuki replies. He grabs Izuku's wrist and looks at his hand. Everybody was really worried by the way, you had your friends thinking you were going to off yourself or something. That catches Izuku off, but Izuku shoves that away and immediately denies that. Oh well, I feel bad that I made them feel like I was going to, he trails off. Katsuki just scoffs, with no malice though. Don't tell me that, tell them. The elevator door opens and they're met with Ochako's and Ida's worried expressions. Ochako immediately rushes over to Izuku and pulls him into a hug. Izuku, how are you? She says, her tone full of relief and worry. Izuku suddenly feels a bit nauseous, but he tries to shrug it off. I'm okay, he says. Ochako pulls back and gives him a conflicted look. From beside her, Ida walks up and puts a hand on Izuku's shoulder, grabbing him and pulling him out of the elevator. Katsuki follows. We've already made you some food, if you don't like it, we are more than okay with making you something else. As long as you're fed and happy. Ida says, flashing Izuku a bright grin. Izuku nods hesitantly, and follows them towards the kitchen. He's not sure if he can handle anything heavy right now, but he doesn't know how much more he can bother his friends. So whatever it is, he'll just SCK it up. When they reach the kitchen, they make him sit down at one of the tables. Katsuki sits across from him, and he eyes Izuku. If this is too much, let me know. He says. Izuku hums and looks down, picking skin from his thumb. These people are his friends, he knows that, but he can't help but feel nervous that they're going to start thinking of him as the quirkless boy. Ida walks over and hands Izuku a bowl of what looks like rice, chicken, some greens, and some sesame. It's simple, a small portion, and looks delicious. This looks really good, thank you so much. He says as he digs in. It really does taste good, and Izuku has no problem eating this. It does make his stomach churn a little, as he's not had food like this in a bit, but he tries not to show his discomfort. Everybody else goes to the kitchen to grab their food and comes back to sit with him. More people trickle in, and while Izuku can tell that they're not trying to stare at him, they're doing a poor job. Izuku doesn't comment on it though. So, how are you feeling? Kirishima says as he walks up and sits beside Katsuki. Izuku opens his mouth to respond, but gets cut off by Katsuki. How do you think he feels? Getting dragged on by his teachers, watching us from the sides. He must feel really shitty. He says, stabbing his food with his chopsticks. Izuku can tell he's irritated. I asked Izuku, not you. Geez, anyways, how are you doing? Kirishima responds, turning to face him. With everyone's eyes on him, he suddenly feels a lot of pressure to answer. Well, shitty is a pretty good way to describe it, I guess. I mean, why keep me in the hero course if they're not even gonna let me train with you guys, much less even become a hero again? He says, his voice getting quieter as he goes on. Ochako pouts. Well, you don't know that. Maybe they just want to wait a bit longer to see if... Katsuki cuts her off. Hey pink cheeks, you don't know what happened. They said I couldn't, he says, cutting them both off, so, I honestly don't know what I'm still doing here. Don't say that. Kirishima says, looking a little desperate. Izuku just shrugs and looks back at his food, his appetite gone. Whatever, it's fine. Let's just drop it. He says, picking at his food. Everyone leaves it and starts their own conversations, leaving Izuku to drown them out and pretend he doesn't exist. Although Katsuki doesn't let him. He waves his chopsticks in his face to get his attention. Are you not hungry anymore? He asks. Not really. Well, you should still try to finish it. That's like barely 500 calories. You're not getting enough nutrients. He stresses, pushing Izuku's bowl closer to him. Izuku just looks back down and cringes at what's left in the bowl. He really can't bring himself to finish. Hey, Katsuki says, stop that, you need to eat. I'm not hungry anymore. I'll throw up. Izuku mumbles. What? Do you need a bucket? Do you need to lay down? Katsuki asks, suddenly getting others' attention. Wait, what's going on? Midoriya, are you good? Todoroki asks, sitting on the far side of the table. What's going on? Ochako asks. Izuku? Izuku starts sweating. He doesn't want everybody to keep worrying about him. He's fine. He just wants to go back to his room. Katsuki and Ochako notice his shift, and they both immediately reassure everyone in the room that he's fine and to go back to their conversations. Then, they turn back to look at him. What do you need, Izuku? Ochako asks, scooting a little closer to him. Izuku squeezes his arms. I just want to go back to my room. He answers, quickly and quietly. He wants to be alone right now, or at least away from everyone else. Katsuki and Ochako are the only ones who can really make him calm at this point. Your laundry isn't ready yet though, Ochako says, are you okay with that? Yes, he says, quickly. He's getting uncomfortable, yes, let's just go please. Katsuki and Ochako comply, standing up and helping Izuku to his feet. They tell the class that everything is alright, and while Ochako takes their bowls to the kitchen to rinse out, Katsuki takes Izuku over to the elevators. When Ochako gets back to them, a sudden wave of nausea hits Izuku. He clamps a hand over his mouth to cover his GG. What is it? Katsuki asks. Izuku turns to face him with eyes full of panic. Are you going to throw up? Izuku nods and Ochako and Katsuki lead him to the bathrooms on the same floor. Their classmates look worried, but the two just focus on getting Izuku to a stall as fast as possible. The moment they get in the bathroom and haul Izuku to a toilet, he empties out all of the food he ate immediately. Katsuki rubs his back and Ochako moves shy hair out of his face, whispering words like it's okay and just breathe, and Izuku can't focus on that because it all hurts too much. I can't, he manages to get out before he throws up again. Katsuki and Ochako both hum. You can't what? Katsuki asks. Izuku just shakes his head before throwing up. I can't, he trails off. You can't breathe? What is it? Ochako asks. And no. I can't, but Izuku throws up again. They stay quiet for a bit and let Izuku get out all his continence before asking again. Is there something you need? What do you mean by I can't? Ochako asks, with a little more urgency in her tone. Izuku looks up at her, his wonderful, kind, beautiful friend. He wants to tell her so bad. He looks over at Katsuki, who's always there for him, and he wants to tell him too. I can't tell you. You can't what? They both say unanimously. I can't do this anymore. And he passes out on the toilet. When Izuku wakes up, he assumes that it was Katsuki and Ochako who carried him to his bedroom and placed him on the mattress without sheets or blankets. He's pretty sure it was Katsuki who threw a zip-up on Izuku's body and called it a blanket, because when he wakes up that's what he finds. He's all alone in his room, except when he looks around he can tell that the room was stripped of many things. Sitting up, he notes that he no longer has a pencil case, scissors, any class figures or things were taken, and his balcony is also completely barricaded shut. How did he sleep through this? He doesn't know. He just sits silently in his room, nothing in his mind really. He feels really bad, like he feels like the walls are closing in and that his body is being vacuumed. The anxiety and the sadness in his body are twisting together and forming as one, like a hurricane or a very destructive tornado. It makes him want to vomit again, but he doesn't move. In fact, he stays still. He wants to cry but his eyes feel dry and he wants to scream but his throat feels tight and he wants to shake and hit himself and break things but his body stays paralyzed. Sometimes, he prefers this. A knock at the door startles Izuku, and he lifts his head to see who entered unanswered. Izuku? Oh, you're up. Ochako says. Katsuki and Aizawa follow behind her as she enters the room. They close the door and turn on Izuku's desk lamp and Ochako sits on the bed beside him while Katsuki and Aizawa lean against the wall. Izuku glances at his teacher and finds him staring at him intently. Not out of disappointment, not of guilt, but sadness. What? Izuku says quietly, looking straight back at Aizawa. Aizawa looks at Katsuki who nods and then looks at Ochako and Ochako sighs. She grabs Izuku's hand in hers and turns his body to face her. We heard what you said. She says. Izuku doesn't know what she means exactly, but considering their grim faces and the lack of dangerous objects in his room, it was probably depressing. I don't know what you're talking about. He decides to say. Better to break the barrier now and get it over with. Aizawa sighs and drags his palm over his face. When you passed out air when you shut off, your classmates heard you muttering some concerning things. We just want you to know that we're here for you and we just want to make sure you're okay. Aizawa says, still staring directly at Izuku. The sadness in his depression morphed into one of almost urgency. So, Izuku starts, looking at his hands, was what I said actually that bad? Yes, Ochako says, her expression very grim, you were muttering things about killing yourself. Her tone didn't change, but clearly the words she uttered were laced with caution. Oh, sorry you had to hear that. But, does it really matter that much? It's death either way. Izuku says, and they look at him bewildered. What the F, do you mean by that? Katsuki says, breaking the silence. Izuku glances over to look at him dead in the eyes, and he feels absolutely nothing. Izuku quietly scoffs, and pinches the bridge of his nose. If I'm in the field, following my dreams, I'll get killed. If I'm not following my dreams, I feel like committing suicide. That's it. Katsuki's mouth slightly drops. What the actual F dash? Izuku, please don't say that. Ochako distresses. She tries to tighten her hold on Izuku's hands but he pulls away. At the movement, all three of them flinch and reach out their hands, as if Izuku was going to shoot himself right there. Wow! Izuku mumbles. I'm not actually going to, he freezes. He doesn't want this. Aizawa sighs. Midoriya, we can't trust you anymore. Your behavior and mental health is not something that your teachers are paid to handle. And as much as they want to, your friends shouldn't be working to make sure you don't do something bad. I especially don't have the education, resources, and time to be able to help you, as much as I want to. I let you stay in the heroics class because I thought being around your friends and having familiarity would soothe you, but clearly it's doing the opposite. You need a break. I have talked to your mother and you will spend some time living back with her, and depending on how she feels and what she decides, you may be admitted to a hospital. Izuku doesn't argue with him, because he knows he's right. He knows that he's been past his breaking point for a while and he already told them straight, so why should he argue with something so valid? He swallows, okay, he mumbles, and he glances at Ochako. I'm sorry. Ochako frowns and pulls him into a hug. We just want you to be okay. She squeezes him and then pulls away. Don't worry, only the teachers, me, Bakugo, and Todoroki know why you'll be gone. We won't tell anyone else unless you let us. Todoroki knows? He came into the bathroom not long after you blacked out. He helped clean up the mess. Would have been shitty if I left him in the dark. Katsuki says. Okay, when am I leaving? Izuku asks. Tonight. It's a bit after 8 right now, but your mother would like you with her as soon as possible. Aizawa says. Izuku nods and looks around hesitantly. I should pack, right? Izuku mumbles, looking around his room, noticing how his mess was cleaned up and leaving a lot bare. He feels a little uncomfortable, knowing that they went through his stuff. He doesn't have anything to hide, but he feels violated. He wants to yell at them, but he has no energy to do so. You have time, we will leave you alone for now, okay? Please don't do anything stupid. Ochako says, and she gets up and walks towards the door, the two others following behind her. Katsuki glances back at Izuku for a second, as if he has something to say, but turns around and closes the door behind him. Izuku feels nothing. He gets up and grabs a backpack, and grabs random clothes from his closet, stuffing them in. Then, he walks to his bathroom, grabbing any utilities that weren't stripped. When he leans over to pick up a towel on his floor, his foot kicks something that was hiding behind his door. Looking over, he sees his bottle of sleeping pills that he assumes were knocked over and why they weren't taken. Oh, he mumbles, picking it up. The label reads, do not take more than 2 within 24 hours of consumption, can lead to prolonged amounts of sleep and other side effects, but he stops reading the label there, as an idea forms in his mind. So as he pops the bottle at the bottom of his bag, covering it with his clothes, the idea gets louder and louder in his head until he closes his eyes and takes a moment. It's settled, and the decision is easy. He knows what he's going to do tonight. He meets Aizawa and the other two at the front doors. Everyone else must have been shooed off to their rooms, because the first floor is empty. They walk him to their chauffeur, and Ochako gives him several big hugs and well wishes while Katsuki just tells him to take it easy and to stay safe. Aizawa gets into the car with him and they sit side by side in silence as the car pulls forward and starts driving off. As the car advances and they pass Ochako and Katsuki, Izuku feels his heart tug and his eyes start to water. Midoriya, what's the matter? Aizawa asks, noticing his silent tears. Frantically wiping his eyes, Izuku tries to play it off. I'm just feeling sad to leave, is all. He says. Aizawa raises an eyebrow and tells him that it's for the best, and Izuku pretends to agree with him, though his heart only hurts more. Because in reality, that was goodbye. They arrive at Izuku's apartment, and Aizawa walks him towards the stairs. He stops himself and Izuku for a moment, and he places his hand on Izuku's shoulders. I want you to know that I have been thinking about what I said to you, Aizawa says, and Izuku finds himself growing more nervous, and I regret the way it came out. So let me be clear, you are one of the bravest, strongest, and heroic students that I ever have had. But, you have gone through hell and back at such a young age. You have developed some nasty habits, grown a bit rebellious, and now are dealing with physical and mental wounds. Because of this, I won't let you on the field. Izuku makes eye contact with him and he frowns. You said it was because I was quirkless. I said that because I was frustrated, and so were you, and I also knew you weren't going to give up until I admitted that it was due to you being quirkless. Does your quirklessness affect your ability to be a hero? Absolutely. Do I think if you actually try to get your sheet together, go to therapy, rest, eat properly, all of that, and go through the proper training to be able to fight while quirkless, you'll absolutely be able to become a hero? Izuku's ears ring. I don't understand, you literally said I couldn't? Aizawa sighs. Ever heard of heat of the moment? Kid, there's a reason you're still in this class, other than the fact that we wanted you to be with your friends. Absolutely does you being quirkless affect your ability to become a hero, and absolutely will everybody get better and stronger than you. But who knows, maybe in a year, 2 years, hell, you could be in your 20s. As long as you start taking care of yourself and loving who you are, I believe that you can one day live your dream again. You can't be who you were before, but there's a chance if you put in the work. Izuku's eyes blur, he didn't expect this. He turns to the side and looks in the distance, desperately trying to stop the tears but having no luck. He tries to muffle it, but he fails as he starts sobbing openly there in front of his teacher. The chauffeur rolls down the window from in the car a bit away and tries to ask if they need assistance, but Aizawa tells him that everything is fine. He grabs Izuku and pulls him into a side hug, allowing him to cry into his shoulder. Through his cries, Izuku says, "You could have told me that the first time." Aizawa wipes tears from his own eyes as he says, "I know, kid." Izuku only cries harder, because despite what he was just told, he's already made his decision. Mom? Inko jumps from out of the kitchen and runs to envelop Izuku into a tight hug. Izuku stumbles back a bit but lets his mom hold him. Aizawa stands a bit behind him and watches silently. Inko pulls back, her eyes teary, and she takes Izuku's face in her hands and holds him gently. She traces a thumb across his cheek and her expression turns sad. "Oh my baby, you're so thin, you look so tired. Come on, let's get you inside," she says, grabbing Izuku's hand and pulling him inside. "Is your teacher here?" "Right over here, ma'am," Aizawa says, walking through the door. "I hope you don't mind if we all chat for a couple minutes." Inko tries to smile, but it comes out pained and grim. "Of course not. Izuku, take him to the couch, I'll make some tea." They go sit and they wait for a bit until Inko comes back with 3 cups of tea. Aizawa takes his but Izuku just lets his mother put it on the coffee table in front of him. His mother pulls out a chair and sits across from the two, her expression now laced with seriousness. The two start talking, but Izuku lets his mind go off somewhere else. He starts daydreaming and zoning out, tuning out the world around him. He hasn't really had a moment like this in a long time, but the feeling of zoning out and floating makes him feel safe. He can't bother to even pay an ounce of attention to whatever the two adults are talking about, because he's so tired of hearing what everyone else has to say about him. He's the only one who really knows himself, so why does everybody act like they know how to deal with what he's going through? And it's not even the fact that he might have died recently that theory became dead meat long ago, it's everything. His teachers are looking down at him, he can pursue his dream, he's having chronic depressive episodes, his PTSD is getting worse, he's losing control, his friends are worrying about him, it's too much. Izuku physically and mentally cannot take this anymore, he really can't. And getting better is only easier said than done, he doesn't have the energy to put in the effort to get better. At one point, Aizawa puts a hand on his shoulder and shakes him a little. Izuku tunes back in and hums in recognition. We've talked and you'll be staying here until the weekend is over, and if your mother doesn't notice any improvement, we'll have to consider taking you to a hospital. Aizawa says. Izuku nods, because it doesn't really matter anyways. Izuku, his mother says, I love you, but this is a big favor. I need to be able to work and do my own things without having to worry about you doing anything scary. She sniffles, and wipes her eyes with her sleeve. You need to try, okay honey? You have to. Everybody is so worried about you, and we don't want you to be getting even sicker. Izuku scoffs, I'm not sick, I'm just struggling. It's the same thing. Aizawa says. Izuku rolls hairnets and looks down, picking at the sick from his fingers. Some of the cuticles on his fingernails are scabbed and bleeding and the skin of his fingertips are red and dry. He picks anyways, he's getting overwhelmed. Inko sniffles, and gets up to walk over to Izuku. She kneels in front of him and takes his hands in hers. Stop picking, baby. I just want you to stop feeling so sad all the time, okay? So you're gonna spend some time with me for a bit and we're gonna make sure you get enough sleep and eat enough, alright? I can even take you out. We can go shopping or even go to a cafe or something. She smiles brightly, but it's incredibly painful and her mouth trembles and tears roll down her cheeks. Izuku can't take it anymore, and he leans forward to hug her. She gladly accepts it and hugs him back, and Izuku starts shaking. I'm so tired, Mom. And I'm never happy anymore. Everything feels like too much and I never feel good anymore. He says, taking through his sobs. From beside them, Aizawa starts rubbing circles in his back. His mother's cries become more apparent. Oh, Izuku. It's okay, we're gonna make sure you stop feeling like that. His mother kisses his cheek and pulls him closer. Izuku starts hyperventilating and tugging harder on his mother's shirt. He feels sick, and not the way they called him sick, but like a vile, awful person. Because he can't believe that he's going to. Midoriya, breathe. Aizawa says. Izuku shakes his head and Inko pulls back. His mother starts wiping the tears from his face and squeezing his hand. She tells him to follow her breaths, but they're uneven and a bit chaotic too, so Izuku only gets even more overwhelmed. Aizawa starts talking to him and his mother through a breathing exercise, and while his mother calms down a bit, it doesn't work for him. He leans forward and clutches his head, pulling out a couple hairs. The two adults try to stop him but it doesn't work, because their touches only make him feel even more uncomfortable. Please I need, but his sentence doesn't finish, because he starts sobbing again. He feels like he's back to the raid, the fire burning him into agony. Was it real or did he make it all up? He feels his skin prickle and soon a flame bursts, igniting on his skin. Soon, his whole body is bursting into flames and he's sure he is going to die. He croaks, hot help, and Inko runs to the kitchen, grabbing an ice pack from the fridge, and comes back, placing the cold on Izuku's hands. Slowly, Izuku's cries become a bit less painful and his breaths become more relaxed, and then he's able to lay further into the couch, and close his eyes. When Izuku woke up, Aizawa had already left and his mother filled him in. When he was asleep, they talked about his depression and PTSD and potential supports, and then how the next couple days are going to go. But Izuku didn't really listen, as the next couple days won't matter to him. Although it was late, he and his mother stayed up cuddled on the couch watching movies. At one point, he got up and asked his mother if she'd like some tea and went over to the kitchen to make some. As the kettle was heating up, Izuku walked over to his backpack that was on the counter and reached inside to grab his bottle of sleeping pills. Quietly, he opens it and pulls out two. He walks back over and pours the water into the cup and places the tea bag inside, crushing the two pills and also adding them in. He walks back over, handing his mother the drink. Not long after, she's out cold, and Izuku is already out the door. As he stands on the ledge, his head is mostly empty. He's done what he needed to do. If he really does have some sort of immortality quirk, his mother will be asleep for long enough that she wouldn't notice his absence. If he really does die, she won't find out until she notices him missing hours and hours later. He wrote a letter just in case, and it remains folded under his pillow in his room. It's nothing special, just a goodbye to everyone he loves. There was no need to clarify why he's killing himself, because at this point it should just be obvious. Izuku lets out a long, fresh breath of air, and he gazes out at the stars towering him. The building is high, but it's deep enough in the city that there should be no one around. The wind tackles him, and he finds himself swaying. He took 3 sleeping pills a couple minutes ago, so he should be knocked out in no time. He looks back down and watches intently at the ground below as his vision sways. It's a far drop, and he's quite sure that it'll kill him on impact. He looks back up again, bathing in the wind and starlight for a couple more seconds before he turns around, back facing the edge and his arms lying limply at his sides. As the exhaustion hits him, he lets his eyes close as his body goes limp and plummets to the ground. Wide, terrified eyes stare down at the body that just splattered and broke on the ground. The body of a dead boy named Izuku Midoriya. Shoto is really worried about his friend. After Uraraka and Bakugo told him what was going on with Midoriya, he should have found closure, right? That he was right, his friend is experiencing everything Shoto had been thinking of, but he is going to get help now. So, that should be enough for Shoto. Yes, his friend is severely depressed and also suicidal, but he is going to get help. He is going to get help. That's the phrase that has been repeated in Shoto's for the past couple hours. But that's the problem, since when has his friend ever accepted any help? Since when has Izuku Midoriya ever been open to other people giving him a hand? Since when has his best friend ever been vulnerable enough to admit something was wrong? It scares Shoto because it makes him think that this was truly rock bottom, that his friend has completely given up and is now completely relying on others, or that Midoriya is going to do something very bad. Because all the plans and potential therapies that Midoriya might receive will make no difference if Midoriya decides to leave. Whether it be by running away again, dropping school, or committing suicide, none of those things will matter if Izuku Midoriya is no longer present. So not long after Midoriya left the campus and it was lights out, he texted his 2 friends to discuss his worries. Not long after, they all huddled in Shoto's room. Much to Bakugo's dismay. Yeah, we considered that too, Uraraka says after Shoto explains his anxieties, but that's mostly why he's going to stay with his mother first. Bakugo grunts. Yeah, that woman is incredibly protective over him. Not only did she willingly tell us her safety measures, but it's also very unlikely that Izuku will do anything drastic with his mother around. Shoto frowns, because he still isn't reassured. But why not send him to a hospital first? Or at least a psychiatrist? Shouldn't we know exactly what's going on before we deem him safe to be alone? Taking him to a hospital first would only worsen his condition, Uraraka sighs, I'm sure you understand. Shoto makes eye contact with her, and he sees a lot of guilt in her expression. And he isn't alone, he's with his mother. Well, I do understand. But you guys told me that he was actively suicidal. He is more safe surrounded by heroes or his friends than by one person in a tiny apartment. That one person is his mother. Inko doesn't bullshit when it comes to her son. And Izuku would be one selfish man if he were to try to kill himself under his mother's care. Bakugo replies, looking quite confident. If his mom says that he's gotten worse, then he'll have to go to a hospital. But a mother's love is as equally as strong as medicine. Exactly, Uraraka chirps, as she tries to smile, all I want is for Izuku to feel at least a bit better. And although I failed him, I know his mother won't. Shoto falters a bit. What does she mean by that? Does she really think she failed him? What are you talking about? You don't fail him, Uraraka. Uraraka frowns, the guilt in her expression only growing. Thanks, but I really did. No matter how much support I tried to give him, he only got worse. I could have done so much more. I could have stood up for him more. I could have talked to Nezu and Aizawa and I could have convinced them to let Izuku still be a hero. I could have made more of an effort to be there for him. I could have told him that I don't care that he's quirkless now. I could have, but she trails off, tears slowly dripping down her cheeks. She looks down and starts quietly crying. Bakugo and Shoto stare quietly at their friend in front of them, unsure what to say. Because honestly, they feel it too. They feel guilt, anxiety, and fear for their friend. They feel scared and angry and conflicted too. But truly, how much of it is justified? Uraraka, Shoto starts, a bit awkwardly, I'm not good with people. I've spent a lot of my life isolated and locked away from others. Meaning that socializing and understanding feelings are difficult for me. But, when I look at you, I feel inspired. Uraraka gazes up at Shoto, her eyes brimming with sadness. She's sniffing and her lips tremble, but there's almost a form of hope in her expression. Something that Shoto is learning to see. I don't understand. She mumbles, wiping her eyes. You carry so much with you. When you express something, it's always to the max. When you're happy, it's so clear. You're smiling brightly, jumping, floating, screaming. When you're sad you cry, pout, you frown. When you are angry you become quiet, your expression becomes determined and you get serious. You make feelings seem so easy. But, when I see you around him, it's almost infectious your kindness. Uraraka sniffles. Shoto looks at Bakugo, who is staring right back at him. Bakugo nods at him, and Shoto continues. I grew up not around much kindness. So sometimes it's hard to tell whether the kindness that I think I may be seeing or experiencing is real or not. But because you show your feelings so loudly, it's like the kindness and love beams off of you. You've been nothing but kind and supportive and helpful to Midoriya. Don't think for a second that everything you did didn't do anything. Have you ever noticed the way Midoriya acts around you? Uraraka shakes her head slightly, and Shoto frowns. He's so grateful for you, Uraraka. You do so much for him, so much. It's the way his brain works. Bakugo adds. He has PTSD, he has anxiety, he has so much trauma and sadness in him that sometimes it overlooks the little things. Friends can't cure depression, Ochako. But friends can make it more manageable. And that's what you did. We didn't have to take him away because we weren't enough. I hope you know that. He had to leave because being around his dream that he can't get is too much for him. So, do not think for a second that your actions didn't help. Because of you, he's still here. Uraraka hiccups, and then her eyes dart back and forth between the two boys, and then she breaks. She jumps and tackles the two into a hug, wailing and crying loudly. Bakugo yells at her to get off, but Shoto only pulls her closer. You've taught me what real kindness looks like, thank you so much. You are an amazing person, Ochako. Shoto says, smiling. Ochako pulls back, and she says, thank you, Shoto. Shoto didn't sleep much last night. There were 3 factors. 1. Sleeping in the same room as Ochako, who had passed out on Shoto's futon after crying herself to sleep leaving Shoto the hardwood floor. 2. Bakugo's loud snoring, after he had insisted that it was too late to go back to his room and that he might as well keep an eye on them. And 3. His anxieties about Midoriya had not gotten any better. Although it was early morning 7:32 a.m. to be exact, Shoto needs closure as soon as possible. So, he shakes the two awake. What? What time is it? Ochako mumbles, What? Why, am I in your room? Bakugo wakes as well. What the F, the time? It's so early? What's your actual problem? He says, his mind clearly not fully functioning as he speaks in questions. I want to go see Midoriya. This early, Ochako asks, rubbing her eyes. It's barely even 8. He's probably sleeping. I don't really care. We can sit outside his apartment door if we have to. What's your deal? He's fine, we told you last night. Bakugo says, annoyed. I still have a bad feeling. It got worse at night. And I have to trust my gut feeling. Shoto replies. He gets up and walks over to his closet. I'm going to change. Then, I'll get permission to leave. Then we will go. You two go back to your rooms and go change. Hey, we didn't say that we were going to do this. Ochako squeals. You can't just make plans like that. Yeah, Bakugo says, getting up. You're not the only person worried about him, and he's in good hands. Like I said, I don't care. Pretty sure checking up on our friend wouldn't hurt any of us. Get ready. Shoto replies, the last part almost a threat, as the seriousness in his tone sounds more as a command than a suggestion. The other two stay silent and stay still for a couple moments, until they head for the door in quiet protest. Shoto nods and goes back to searching for something to wear. Before the door closes, Bakugo says, I'll talk to Aizawa. I really hope your instincts aren't right. Shoto makes eye contact with the other boy. His stare is serious, it's not cold or mean, but it's laced with anxiety and determination. Go get ready. Shoto says, and Bakugo leaves the room. The 3 classmates take a bus to Izuku's apartment. Katsuki sits beside Ochako, on her left, while Todoroki sits on her right. The ride isn't terribly long, but it's not that short either, and it doesn't help that the city lights aren't in their favor today. He can tell that it's really affecting Todoroki. His leg is bouncing and he keeps his fists closed tight, his eyes staring dead ahead. And because of Todoroki's infectious stress, he managed to get Ochako and Katsuki himself feeling incredibly uncomfortable. It really didn't help that when he went to get Aizawa's permission that Aizawa easily agreed, a clear indication of concern also in his expression. It was supposed to be a good idea, taking Izuku to his mom's. But clearly the only thing that seemed to do was make everybody much more concerned than before. Was it the separation anxiety? They've been together for such a long time, the dorms, the war, school. Suddenly, when their most fragile friend is away from them, all of the suppressed feelings of stress and fear come crashing out. Katsuki especially is starting to feel it, because when has Izuku ever been that unpredictable? He's also getting himself into something stupid or dangerous, and no one would put it past Izuku to do something drastic, especially since he's so mentally ill currently. Katsuki scratches at his head. He's clearly not the same person he was when he was younger, and in his first year in high school. He feels less angry, less insecure, less closed off, and more able to freely express his true emotions. Unfortunately, that means his concern is a lot more evident. Izuku has always been a hazard, always putting himself in the center of danger and always finding new, and almost creative ways to get hurt. Because now Izuku has expressed his suicidal thoughts, Katsuki now has to deal with the fact that any dangerous situation that Izuku puts himself in next could be the last. Ochako seems to notice his building stress, as she leans over and bumps him. "What was that for?" Katsuki grumbles, crossing his arms. "I can practically hear your mind yelling at you," Ochako says. "This is really scary, but we don't know anything for sure." Katsuki nods. "Yeah, and his mom is with him. We just need to remember that he's safe." "Yeah. His mom wouldn't take an eye off him," Ochako says with lots of false hope. Todoroki stays silent, and soon the other two go back to quiet as well. As the bus ride goes on and they get closer to their destination, Katsuki's mind doesn't shut up. They stand at the door for a good 7 minutes before any of them say anything. They knock twice, but they didn't want to disturb them by knocking a lot, on the off chance that they are still sleeping. "It's only 8. It's early. We could wait," Todoroki says. Ochako groans. "Or we could leave. What happened to you being worried about him?" Todoroki asks. Katsuki groans and slides down the wall facing the door. "We didn't come all this way just to leave. Let's just wait a bit and knock every now and then," Katsuki says, and the other two hum, sitting down as well. They wait for a bit, and Katsuki does eventually fall asleep at one point. It was a fairly long nap, as when he wakes up the other two are also asleep, and almost 2 hours have passed. Katsuki gets up and knocks on the door, and then goes back to sit down. But as soon as his butt touches the ground again, the door opens. There's probably nothing more terrifying and traumatizing than seeing your own dead body mangled and disfigured right before your eyes. It's the way you truly see yourself for the first time, no camera, no mirror, but it's not how you'd imagine. Instead of your normal, living body, it's all red and broken and twitching and disturbing. There's nothing quite like it. The body is contorted and the neck is sticking out at an odd angle, nothing possible for a living person. So, the body is dead. Izuku is dead. The only thing is, he is staring right down at his own dead body. Right in front of him. It's jarring, because Izuku has proof that he is both dead and alive. He touches his cheek. Unlike the body in front of him, his cheek isn't broken and gory. He looks down at his legs, which are normal and upright, compared to the crooked ones in front of him. Blood pours from the dead body but Izuku remains dry. It takes a couple more moments, but soon Izuku shrieks in horror and his legs give out. There's no way. There's no way. There are 2 Izuku right now. One dead, one alive. He can't comprehend this, even in a quirk perspective. There's a reason immortality and death revival quirks are unheard of, they're both too complicated and too powerful. When Izuku thinks of an immortality quirk, he thinks of the body healing or just no death, not an extra body. The entire idea of this seems incredibly strange. What would the purpose of this quirk be other than to bring back to life? Why is it an extra body instead of regeneration? Not all quirks have specific purposes, he knows that, but they all mean something. And who knows? Maybe this isn't real. Maybe he's actually dead and is having some weird post-death vision, or maybe he's hallucinating, or even a nightmare. But, all the events that transpired before were so real to him that he knows for a fact that he did try to kill himself. So, he should be dead. He was expecting 2 things out of jumping off a building. The first being to die, obviously, and the second being him not dying. Now, he got both. He's got a replica of himself, maybe he's the replica in this situation, who really knows, and a dead one of that. Izuku tried to take deep breaths. While what he just saw was once scarring and mind-blowing and confusing, he needs to figure out what just happened. Because if he doesn't, he's going to stay sitting here losing his mind until someone finds both him and well him. He slowly gets up, eyeing the body carefully. The sight is incredibly nauseating, and the smell is starting to become extremely strong. He covers his mouth and nose and backs up, still looking at the body. From a further distance, Izuku feels a lot more relaxed to start having more level-headed thoughts. He's pretty dead set that this is the work of a quirk, whether it was his or not. He runs a hand over his face, sighing heavily. Although even thinking about what he saw makes him feel like vomiting, he feels a lot more tinge of annoyance that he would have expected. He looks up, noting that the building that towers over him and the body is the same as the one he jumped off of, and he makes a decision. He wants to die anyway, so if it works, happy for him. If it doesn't and it proves his theory that he has some sort of replica revival immortality quirk, then he is up for one hell of an identity crisis. He gets up, walking up the stairs once more and stepping onto the roof once more, and he walks over to the edge like last time. Looking down, the body is still there, though it's not as visible from this height. The breeze brushes past Izuku's cheeks, and he finds himself gazing up at the stars once again. This time, he doesn't have any pills, so he's well prepared to experience pain whether he dies or not. With no second thought, he hauls himself off the roof, falling fatally to the ground, feeling a sharp, almost explosive-like pain before everything goes black. Now, much to Izuku's dismay, there are two bodies he has to deal with, not including the one he's currently in. More than anything right now, he's incredibly frustrated. He's spent his whole life dealing with the discrimination and hate of being quirkless, becoming incredibly depressed and suicidal due to it, all just for him to actually have a quirk? Right when he finally has the guts to commit suicide, the universe has other plans and decides that he won't get another thing. Can't be a hero, can't kill himself. It's like the universe hates him. The bodies lay side by side. The first one is still much more gruesome, but the other one is also quite frightening to look at. He closes his eyes and leans against the alley wall, sliding down to hug his knees. This is unreal, this whole situation. He feels like his senses are heightened, everything is louder, brighter, more intense. He opens his eyes and looks at his palms. He has to remind himself that he is real and that he really must have a quirk and really must have died and come back in a different body. What scares him is that he has zero idea how he can just replicate. Part of him wants to try again but take a video and see, but he's pretty sure if he does that he'll never be normal again. And he has to figure out what to do with these two dead bodies that are him. He can't just take it to the police or tell a hero, because what then? He'll have to explain that he tried to kill himself, failed, and is now left with this. But would they even believe him? Would they send him off to a psychiatric facility? Would they think he's a villain who took the body of Izuku Midoriya? And what would happen if he told his friends? All Might and Aizawa? His mother? They'd know that they failed him. Izuku wonders what time it is, and although it's dark out and his mother will definitely be passed out for a long time, he needs to get back before someone notices and he spirals. Slowly, he gets up and turns around, walking out of the alley. He doubts that anyone is going to see the bodies, as this part of town is incredibly unpopulated, and if anybody does, it's likely going to be villains or homeless, who always mind their business. The walk back is long, but it's at least under an hour. He zones out most of it, because any time he thinks too much or gets really deep in thought, the image of his dead bodies almost jump scare him. He throws up in a bush around the halfway mark to his apartment, and he has a panic attack. There's no one there to help him, guide his breathing like Aizawa or rub circles in his back like Katsuki. There's no one there to remind him that it'll be okay, to remind him that he only needs to calm down. Just Izuku and his effed up mind. He sobs and heaves and groans on the sidewalk because nothing will ever be right again, nothing will ever make sense to him again. Because he died. Just because he came back to life doesn't change the fact that there's proof of his death. Even though Izuku is alive, he feels as dead as the bodies that were once his. He has a quirk, but that changes nothing. Izuku? Katsuki asks. Izuku stares down at him tiredly. His expression is soft, but the dark eye bags he has and the lack of shine in his eyes distracts that. His hair is messy and his lips are chapped, and all in all he looks worse. Kaken? What are you doing here, Ochako? Shoto? What's going on? Izuku asks. Due to the sudden noise, the other two startle awake. Once they see Izuku, they immediately start making a scene. Izuku! I missed you. How are you doing? Do you know what's going to happen? How was your sleep? Have you eaten? Ochako frantically asks, quick and loud. Todoroki gets up and grabs Izuku by the shoulders, startling him. Did you even sleep at all last night? I was worried. He said. Izuku looks uncomfortable from the whole ordeal, and he stutters to make a response, which doesn't come out. He eyes Katsuki desperately, and with an annoyed huff, Katsuki gets up and pulls the two away from Izuku. You guys are the absolute worst at this, he says, turning to Izuku. Todoroki had a bad feeling all night. We just came to make sure you weren't feeling too lonely or anything. Izuku nods hesitantly, and then looks behind him, in his house. He turns back around and frowns. I'm all right. Thank you, but my mom is still sleeping, so I'd rather I go back. Katsuki raises an eyebrow, because by now mostly everyone should be awake. And, he's pretty sure his mother still has work at home to do. Inko hasn't woken up yet? Yeah, we were up pretty late last night. Izuku replies, but his tone sounds off. Still, you're up. Katsuki opts to say. I rarely ever get good sleep. Katsuki doesn't reply. He looks at the two others beside him and sighs in frustration. Something is off, but it's not normal Izuku off, it's something different. Izuku stands nonchalantly at the door still, looking behind himself every now and then. Then, when it's been silent for too long and the awkwardness gets thicker, he speaks. Was there anything else that you guys needed? None of them respond, because truly, they weren't really expecting this. What they were hopefully expecting was Inko opening the door, letting them come inside, maybe offering them some tea, before she tells them to go to Izuku's room and help cheer him up. But Izuku just stares at them blankly, almost coldly, before turning around, uttering the words "thank you for coming, but I'm alright," and closing the door in their face. When Izuku turns around back inside, he is met with two frighteningly familiar faces once again. Two of Izuku's bodies, which were covered in dry blood and still broken and dismembered, their faces smushed and contorted, sit on the island counter chairs staring at him silently. They followed Izuku back home, though none of them had said a word since. Their lifeless eyes, if you count the one whose right eye popped out, stare at him so intently, following his every move. Izuku thinks he's still slightly in shock, because despite how incredibly disturbing this is, he can't bring himself to care as much as he should. Woohoo, he has a quirk. A real, genuine, annoying quirk. From what he knows so far, he has the ability to come back to life as a replica of himself right before he died, as while the bodies of his keep their injuries, Izuku doesn't. And, his dead bodies also have the ability to undead, though keeping their injuries and seemingly not having any thoughts or feelings. When Izuku first saw them, which was absolutely awful, probably the worst jump scare of his life, he had just got done washing his face in his bathroom when he saw the two standing silently behind him in the mirror reflection. They must have followed him all the way from the alleyway, and he didn't notice. When he shrieked and by habit told them to go away, they understood him, and walked out of his eyesight. While Izuku was freaked out, it certainly intrigued him, and he quietly whispered "come back," and they followed his orders, stepping back into the door frame. So most of what Izuku is aware of this quirk is that he can come back to life, so can his dead bodies, and he has control over them, while they seem to have no real consciousness other than, well, basically Izuku's own subconscious. That is because Izuku didn't even have to say out loud his worries about his mother waking up and seeing them, as she was still asleep on the couch, as they quietly and carefully picked her up and put her to bed in her own bedroom, closing the door behind them. Further proving his point, Izuku doesn't even have to say that he's getting uncomfortable with staring at them, because they get up and walk in his room, leaving him alone. Izuku sighs heavily, and drags his hand across from his face. What was supposed to be a genuine suicide attempt turned into a startling revelation that he still can't quite wrap his head around. What currently frightens him the most though, is what if someone sees them? How the hell is someone supposed to comprehend this? And what is he supposed to do with these bodies? Will they follow him forever? But when does forever end? Is he cursed with absolute immortality? Or will there be an ending? And what if they gain consciousness, and try to take over Izuku's life? All of these possibilities start to feel extremely real and possible, and it just makes Izuku feel more and more awful. He hears footsteps, and for a moment panics that his mother woke up, but he looks up to see one of his bodies holding out a paper in front of him. Izuku stares at the body and the paper hesitantly. He can tell that there is some writing on it, but the fact that the body even has the ability to write disturbs him a lot. The body gestures again to the paper, and although scared, Izuku takes it and reads the words written out in fairly messy handwriting. I think like you. I am you. For some reason, I share the exact same thoughts and feelings as you do, but you cannot think in my perspective for some reason. Also, I cannot speak or express facial emotion, also for an unknown reason. I feel pain, I feel the pain of jumping. I remember everything and I am aware of what is happening. So is the other body, they wrote to me. Technically speaking, we all share the same subconscious, as all my memories are the ones from this now dead body, the other dead body, and you as you have replicated into a living body. Like twice quirk, we all share the same thoughts, memories, feelings, except when we die we come back as another body. It's confusing, and I don't quite get it. But I cannot talk and I can't express any other emotion than what I died with. So, please, I am begging. For me and the other body, please burn us. I share a memory from the raid. We did die. But we came back as a replica, but we were burned to death again, but the body stayed dead. I believe that fire is the only way to truly kill a body. Please, I am in constant pain. And I wanted to die. So please, this is all I have theorized, so I ask for death in return. Izuku stares dumbfounded at the paper. That's really how Izuku would have written that out, and, if Izuku were really stuck like that, he's pretty sure he'd do the exact same thing. So, the bodies are still Izuku, replicated as if it were twice Quirk, but dead and suffering, unable to express what's happening eternally. The other body walks back into Izuku's focus, and for the first time, Izuku really takes a good look at it. The body is so deformed and bloody and broken that Izuku almost feels the pain in his own body. He really died, but he was basically living a rebirth and eternal pain. The body he's breathing in was really the body he was in before he died, but after he died those bodies still carry the burden of what he did. For some reason, although it's himself and he's aware that these are real, dead bodies, his heart tugs. No one should live like this, even if they aren't technically living. How? Izuku says out loud, but trailing off as he starts thinking more. If they share the same thoughts, then shouldn't he also be able to think of a way to burn the bodies? Or is he only capable when he's dead? The depressing thought clearly reached the other bodies, as they quickly scramble to write out something else. They present him with, "Shut up, thinking like that won't help. You could light us on fire in a dumpster in a very deserted part of town, like where we jumped. It would likely have to be at night. Because it was early enough that we could follow you and not be seen by anyone, but now it's daytime and heroes and people will be out." Izuku nods. He tells the bodies to hide for now and they comply, walking back into his room, shuffling and noise indicating to Izuku that they likely went into his closet. He goes to sit on his couch and before theories and anxiety and more suicidal thoughts can consume him, he lets sleep engulf him and blackness take over his vision. The day passes quickly, Inko eventually waking up, shaking Izuku awake in the process, and Izuku making up a lie that they were up way later than anticipated, which is why Inko slept for so long and why she may not remember going into her room for sleep. She explains her worries and frustrations to him, that she was disappointed in herself for not setting up safety measures earlier and that she could have caused more trouble for Izuku. Guilt eats away at him as he lies, stating that he already feels better being with her and that leaving wasn't even a consideration. His mother believes him, because she trusts him enough to leave him home alone while she goes out to grab groceries. When Izuku is left alone again, well, not quite alone, but the bodies don't bother him, the sudden feeling of regret pings in his chest. When and before he had decided to jump off the roof, he was almost certain that he would stay dead and not have to worry about anything ever again. So, his relationship with his friends and teachers meant not a lot to him. Which is why he made no effort to salvage what was with him and Aizawa, why he didn't stand up for himself with all might, and why he expressed his true pains to his friends. But now he is alive, and he's not sure he can even run away from his problems at this point. Since he was cursed with living, he now has the responsibility to fix what he effed up. Because now he's being forced into a future. While Aizawa did say that there was a possibility of him returning to hero work, the fact that Aizawa didn't tell him earlier, and only presented it when Izuku was publicly declaring his death wishes, makes Izuku believe that it was only an act of desperation. But if there is even a small, extremely tiny, extremely slim and skinny chance that Aizawa was telling the truth, Izuku doesn't want that relationship dead yet. So, without wasting a moment, where he may have second thoughts, he texts Aizawa and tells him that they need to talk and that he needs him at his apartment ASAP. Izuku's pretty sure his mental instability helps his case, as Aizawa texts back saying that he'll be there in under 10 minutes. And he's right, as the doorbell rings 7 minutes later and Izuku opens the door to his teacher, who is very out of breath. "Midoriya, is everything alright? Is your mother here? What happened?" he says urgently, shutting the door behind him and grabbing hold of Izuku's shoulders. "Your friends came by earlier today, but they said you were fine. Did something happen?" Izuku shakes his head and reassures him. "No, I'm fine. Don't worry. I guess I just wanted to talk to you about some stuff. Clear up some things." Aizawa doesn't look convinced. "Where's your mom? Are you sure you didn't do anything? I wouldn't expect you to call me over just to text. She went grocery shopping, because she trusted me to be alone. And this is a conversation that needs to happen in person, and if I didn't ask you now I probably would have had second thoughts." Izuku responds. Aizawa checks his expression for any indication of lying or masking, but seems relieved when he doesn't. "So, what did you need to talk to me about? I'm assuming it's important." Aizawa says. Izuku tugs on his pants. "Yeah, sorta. I just wanted to tell you that I am going to make the effort now." Aizawa raises his eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Well, I thought that there was no way I could live in a world where I would be treated like glass, not living my dream, and spending each day more miserable than ever. But I realized that it's me who decides what my future will look like, and if I make no effort to make it habitable, I'm not gonna want to live in it. So, I am going to start making more effort for myself, my future, and for the people around me." Aizawa's expression morphs into one of confusion and shock. Why the sudden change of mind? Surely one night at your house wouldn't cure your depression and will to live. Izuku faintly smiles, and he glances to the side. I'm not saying I'm cured. But, I miss being with everyone. I can't even think about what would happen if I get sent to a hospital next, isolated and further away from my friends. Yeah, it really hurts to see all my friends living the reality I could have had. I get really jealous and that makes me really depressed. But, I would just make things worse for myself if I fed into my depression like that. I'm not cured. I still have PTSD, I'm still depressed, and I'm still lacking so much hope. Izuku takes a deep breath and makes eye contact with his teacher. But if I choose to waste my time getting worse when I could be using that time to get better, that would be my own fault. And even if you're not sincere, if there's still a slim chance that I could one day still be a hero, I won't waste that. Silence stuns the air, and Aizawa doesn't say a word. He looks a bit dumbfounded, and Izuku knows he's at a loss for words. It would make sense, because just a day ago he was telling his teacher how he wanted to die. I hated how instead of being encouraging you continued to egg me on and give me false hope. And I hated how you assumed that my mental health greatly affected my ability to be a hero. Because while it may now, it didn't before. And that's not my fault. He sighs, and walks back to sit on one of the island chairs. And I'm sorry for continuously breaking your trust, lashing out, and fighting with you. But I don't want to go to a hospital. And I don't stay here. But I also don't want to be locked up and treated like glass at UA. I want to be treated like how I was treated before I lost my quirk and mental health. I wanted to be given fair chances and the privilege of training and working out. I lost my quirk, yeah it hurts. I have PTSD from the way, that really SCKS. But do you know how many heroes who have suffered major losses and post-traumatic stress and continue kicking it and climbing poles? I know you do, because you are one. It took me this FING long to realize that you've been projecting your insecurities and frustrations out on me. If you can do it, I can do it. Yes, I'm reckless and I never think of myself. But isn't that the essence of being a hero? The room fills with silence once more. Izuku hadn't really thought most of this beforehand, but as he kept talking, the words kept spilling out. He finds himself feeling more frustrated than guilty. Did you ever consider that maybe I would have started feeling more like myself and less miserable if you let me do the things that I love? Like working out and helping with tasks. You kept me mostly isolated and on the sidelines. Think that was the best decision for me. Did it help me physically? Absolutely. But inside my mind I was suffering. Izuku lets out a frustrated groan and grips his head. All Might also told me that there wasn't a chance. And I know it's not because he doesn't believe in me, but because he's scared. And I know it's the exact same for you. So what, your students got hurt in the war. But how can you completely blame yourself? Wasn't it the Hero Commission and Nedzu who approved us to fight? And in the end every last one of us made our own decisions. You did your very best to help, so you need to stop with your pity party, and do what you're being paid to do, teach your students how to become heroes. When Aizawa doesn't respond again, Izuku decides to finish his point. I am in a class with 19 other incredibly talented, strong, and experienced peers. They are like my family at this point. Don't you think it hurts them too, seeing me struggling on the sidelines? If you ever have second thoughts, just remember that every last one of them would do anything to assure my safety. Please, Aizawa. You're not the only person who has the watch over me. I am capable, and so are them. I just need you to start trusting me, okay? Izuku finished talking there, and he let the quiet grow as he needed Aizawa to take in every last word that he uttered. Truthfully, he wasn't expecting himself to go that direction. He needed Aizawa's trust back, and he's pretty sure the only way was to tell the truth and finally say everything that's been on his mind. If he had kept any of that in, there would be lingering uncertainty and words untold. But because Izuku said everything, with zero hesitation and 100% honesty, he's sure that Aizawa's blinds have finally been opened. Finally, Aizawa speaks. Truthfully, the only other person who's really ever spoken to me like that has been my closest friends. To have one of my students talk to me like that is, well, it's eye-opening, for sure. I have been quite ignorant, and while I don't know why you had this sudden personality change overnight, and while it's certainly something I will be bringing up later, I do greatly appreciate this. He stops for a moment, and then bows. I need to apologize. You are right, absolutely right. I have been projecting, and it was a shame that you had to be the victim. There's so much to be said on my part and so much that needs to be done and organized, but for now, I thank you for waking my sorry butt up and I will remember your words. Izuku watches as he leans back up again, and Izuku nods at him. I will wait here with you for your mother to come home, and then we will discuss matters, if that's all right with you? With a heavy sigh of relief, Izuku replies, it's more than all right with me, thank you. When Aizawa arrives back at the door several hours later, carrying an expression of exhaustion, but mainly hope. The students of Class 2A almost cry out of relief. See, earlier when Aizawa left in a rush, leaving no room for explanation for everyone, they all came to the same conclusion: something happened with Izuku. For Katsuki, it was no different. When he came from Izuku's place, he was pretty convinced that the boy was fine, and just tired and his normal miserable self. When Aizawa left though, and when the only text he sent read, "Midoriya problem," well, Katsuki's heart dropped to his stomach. For hours he, Uraraka, and Todoroki began questioning if their visit only made things worse. For the others in the class, they were aware of Izuku's departure, not of the reason, but they had a pretty good idea. So not only were the three stressing about what could have been their mistake, the rest of the class kept bombarding them with questions, and it certainly didn't help that Aizawa didn't text back at all. So for obvious reasons, Aizawa's arrival was chaotic. "Oh my god, you were so panicked when you left. Is everything okay?" Ashido exclaimed, running up to him. Running up beside her, Hagakure also shares her worries. "It definitely had something to do with Midoriya, right? Is he okay?" "These three," Shiro says, motioning to Katsuki, Ochako, and Todoroki, "have been acting stressed all day. Please ease their minds." Everyone keeps talking over each other, one thing after another, expressing their frustrations of Aizawa running off but also their anxieties that their friend might be hurt. Katsuki and the other two though, they stay silent. Eventually, Aizawa turns on his quirk, silencing everyone, and he motions the three to come over, taking them outside. "Is he okay?" Todoroki asks the moment the door closes behind them. Aizawa puts his hand out, motioning for him to calm down, and sits down on a bench. He sighs heavily. "When you visited him earlier, you said he looked the same, but otherwise fine." Katsuki raises an eyebrow. "Yeah." Aizawa pinches the bridge of his nose. "Well, when he texted me I was expecting there to be an emergency, as the tone of his text sounded urgent. Thankfully, he just needed to talk, and we have come to an agreement." Ochako groans. "Please, just tell us already, I can't take it." "What did you guys talk about?" Todoroki asks. "It's too much to say right now, but to sum it up, I was an a-hole, he called me out, explained his frustrations, and told me that he will start trying more. I'm not sure where he suddenly got this optimism about life, but nonetheless I am thankful, because he seems a bit less miserable. He will stay a couple more days with his mother, and if all is well, we will not transfer him to a hospital, and he will return here." Aizawa explains. Katsuki tries to feel optimistic with that, but he can't shake the bad feeling he still has. When he saw Izuku earlier, he looked exhausted. It wasn't really that different from how he'd been looking normally, but there was a glisten of what seemed to be agony in his eyes. He was so abrupt when he shut them out, and the Izuku that his teacher is describing sounds nothing like the one they saw earlier. And Aizawa was right, where did Izuku get this sudden hope? It's not like depression can be erased just like that, and Izuku was never one to give in so easily. Katsuki should feel happy that Izuku is going to be making more effort to be alive, but for some reason he doesn't buy it. Did he and Inko have some sort of life-changing conversation or something? Katsuki asks. Aizawa shakes his head. From what they told me, they were up late watching TV and then Inko left for groceries when I came. Midoriya told me that it was sudden, that if he didn't tell me now he wouldn't ever. Katsuki can believe that, but he doesn't buy the part that Izuku suddenly has a will to live. Last time he checked, Izuku wanted to die. But for now, Katsuki pretends to act relieved with the other two, his worries beginning to take over every thought of his. Izuku feels guilty drugging his mom to sleep again, but the guilt is less knowing that he gave her only one pill, enough to knock her out into a healthy 8-hour-long slumber. It was pitch black out, and the wind felt good as he and the two bodies behind him trailed through the city night. Finally, they made it to their destination, and he watched silently as both of the bodies hopped into the open dumpster in an empty alleyway. Izuku took off his backpack, pulling out his necessities, matches, and acetone. He had the matches at home, and he stole from his apartment's supply closet the big jug of acetone. Before pouring the liquid onto the bodies, he hesitates. "Are you guys sure?" he asks, fully aware that he's talking to himself, and that the deep voice in his subconscious already knows the answer. When they nod, Izuku wastes no time dumping the chemical onto them and ordering them to sit. When they do, Izuku lights a match, throws it in, and watches as the bin ignites into flames. Izuku wasn't expecting much, as the bodies make no noise nor struggle, and as the fire only gets hungrier and the smoke becomes thicker, Izuku pulls his hood over his head and walks out. He walks fast, because the quicker he gets away means he's less likely to feel as horrified about this whole ordeal. Unfortunately, that doesn't work, because not even 3 blocks away he begins hyperventilating, and everything catches up to him. He really has a quirk, but it has to be the absolute worst and most disturbing quirk out there. He doesn't even understand much of it, but he just burned 2 bodies of himself for a permanent death. They have their own consciousness, and while technically they share every single same thought and belief as Izuku, the fact that they have their own individual and unique thoughts that Izuku isn't aware of scares him. He just technically killed himself again, and he has to live with that burden. Because it's so mind-boggling and unbelievable, and if he told anyone they'd send him straight to a psych ward. What FS with him the most though, is the fact that the images of his mangled, disgusting, dead body are engraved in his mind forever, and the fact that those bodies were really his, and he's the replica, changes his perspective on himself. Because when he imagines himself, he doesn't imagine quirkless loser Deku, nor quirked hero Deku, not even quirkless UA student Izuku. But only dead boy Izuku Midoriya. The next few days for Izuku go by quickly. He mostly spends it laying on his couch for hours watching TV until his mother comes back from work. While he's supposed to be taking this break away from stress to relax, he more or less feels quite the opposite. Because of the discovery of his quirk, Izuku has dealt with more sleepless nights than nightmare-fueled nights. He genuinely cannot sleep. Every time he closes his eyes, setting himself up comfortably and ready for a relaxing sleep in his childhood bed, he ends up tossing and turning and unable to rest. Every night ends with him sitting in the living room playing video games or lifting weights to pass the time. His mind is just so occupied. He has so many unanswered questions and stresses about his quirk. And he's too scared to die again, mainly because seeing himself was traumatizing. He has micro naps, of course, but they're only had when Izuku is genuinely on the brink of another mental breakdown. It's not good for his health, and it's affecting him greatly. For one, his appetite grew tremendously one night, and he ended up eating half of what was in the fridge. Eggs, old rice, jam, blueberries, a whole bag of bread. He ended up sick, and his mother had to tend to him at 4 in the morning while he vomited on the kitchen floor. After that, his appetite lowered again, and eating became a chore. Every single food item he looked at made him wince, and his mother had to sit with him for 2 hours during dinner just to get him to finish his meal. Izuku knows that he's even more depressed, but it's nothing Inko and Aizawa didn't expect. He tries his best to smile to his mom before she leaves for work, and when Aizawa comes to visit after school hours, but he's tired, and he's sad, so even the slightest action takes up all his energy. But the 2 adults make it clear that they won't take him to a hospital unless things get out of hand. So he musters up the courage to take care of himself in the ways that he can. He showers when he starts to feel gross, he brushes his teeth while his mother stands by him rubbing his back and telling him that she's proud, and he stomachs at least 1 meal a day. 1 meal that his mother packs with nutrients that he needs to make him feel a little less like a zombie. Ochako and Ida call him every night. Izuku ignored their calls the first 2 nights after his conversation with Aizawa, but after reading their texts and the never-ending voice messages they sent, he reluctantly answered. Some days he'd just keep his camera off, listening to them as they rambled over random topics, others like Shoto, Kirishima, and others sometimes joining in, and he'd occasionally hum or let out a breath to let them know that he's still there. When he started warming up to their calls, Izuku would join in the conversations and sometimes they'd play games together while on call. They weren't allowed to visit Aizawa and his mother didn't want them pestering Izuku, and Izuku also would rather not have them see him like this. Aizawa extends his stay at his mother's until the weekend is over as the first week passes on Friday, because while Izuku no longer is expressing his desire to commit suicide, they're still worried that going back so soon will bring those thoughts back. As being at the school and seeing his friends succeed in front of him did cause most of the problems. Izuku just goes along, because he honestly needs the extra time to start getting his life back together. That Friday morning, Izuku did end up getting around 3 hours of sleep. He hasn't been eating better, nor has he been feeling all that good either, but he decides that he has to push himself if he wants to not get thrown into a hospital. He steps into the bathroom to pee, but he's thrown off guard by his reflection. He hasn't really looked at himself recently, has he? At least this past week he hasn't. Amazing what a couple of days of being bedridden and miserable does to a person, because Izuku almost gasps at his appearance. He's skinny. Not lean, not greatly proportioned, but genuinely thin. Almost gaunt like a skeleton. His arm muscles aren't entirely gone. His mother packed plenty of protein in the meal he'd eat, and he did spend a great amount of time lifting weights to pass time, but he's lost a good amount of weight. His face has a little baby fat left, so he doesn't look quite so bony there, but his jawline is really defined. His collarbones peek out intensely, and though Izuku wears a rather large t-shirt that once fit him snugly, he bets his stomach is flat. He reaches out to touch his belly, and is almost surprised to find himself disturbingly bloated. He reminds himself that one meal a day isn't gonna do well with him, and while throwing up all that food a week prior probably emptied his stomach, he honestly hasn't tried pooping for a while. It scares him, and he starts to feel self-conscious. For as long as Izuku has been alive, he's had an incredible metabolism. And after gaining so much muscle and learning how to eat properly, he never saw himself with a bloated belly. He lifts his shirt up and GGS he looks. I look FINGPRGNNT, he whispers to himself, oh my god. He shoves his shirt back down and his cheeks flush in embarrassment. Every single food he ate after he threw up, it's still in his stomach. And he can bet that food he ate beforehand that had already digested also still sits in there. He genuinely cannot remember the last time he pooped. It's an embarrassing thought to him, really, because he's never really been constipated before. Now that he thinks about it, it probably is related to his awful mood recently. He has literal shit inside him, and gut health affects every other aspect of health. Shaking it off but remembering to tell his mother, he brings his gaze back up to his face. He leans closer to the mirror, noticing a couple blemishes on his skin. Despite Izuku being a teenager going through PBRTY, he never really struggled with acne or anything. It always made his mother jealous, because she'd always react to his clear and natural skin with playful envy. He even remembers Ochako and Tsu talking to him about it in their first year, the two completely distraught when he told them he doesn't wear makeup and rarely uses skin care. Looking at his skin down, oily and irritated with a couple pimples poking out, he starts to grow insecure. Knowing his gut health is awful, his bed rotting instead of exercise, and him eating under 1,000 calories most days, he really ruined his skin. Well, ruined is dramatic. But now the optimistic mood that Izuku woke up with disappears. Thoughts of I'm fat and ugly now echo through his mind as he relieves himself, and he decides that maybe looking in the mirror isn't healthy for him for the time being. Walking out the bathroom and settling himself on his hardwood floor, he lays miserably thinking about all his flaws, the images of his dead body circling through his head. Shoyuta watches as the final bell rings and the class is dismissed for the weekend. He glances at his phone, a text from Midoriya-san popping up. It was 4:30, the class just got back from an exercise and they were talking about the flaws and improvements they could make going further on. Because of Midoriya's situation, Shoyuta has gotten to know Inko Midoriya rather well. Her shift ends earlier on Fridays than others, so he's assuming she made it home. Opening the message, he's correct. Inko Midoriya, when I arrived home Izuku was on the floor and he wouldn't get up. He's not injured and he was fully conscious, but I think something made him really sad. I got him up and he's in the shower right now, but Aizawa, I may need your help. I think he just needs some support that I can't provide. Help please. Read 4:34 p.m. Shoyuta frowns. He had been privately discussing with Midoriya-san the measures they'd be taking further on. Therapy, possibly medication. She also explained to him that while she agrees with Shoyuta that Midoriya would be inserting himself into danger and chances to hurt himself by training to become a hero again, it's clearly what's affecting him the most. Shoyuta had to talk with Nedzu and Tashinori about his worries, but that there's a chance he could trust Midoriya more with proper training. But, Shoyuta and Midoriya-san decided to wait and see how his mental health progressed before deciding on a training plan. Because honestly, Shoyuta really does adore Midoriya. Because Inko can only do so much for her son, Aizawa came over a couple times this past week to check on his student. And in that cozy, almost familiar environment that has absolutely nothing to do with school or hero work or any stressors, Shoyuta learned that he would do anything, for his student to be happy again. He wants the absolute best for him. And knowing that a great deal of Midoriya's depression came from Shuta's neglect to understand his feelings really weighs heavy on him. So, Shoyuta promised that he'd make it up to him. He texts back quickly, deciding that he'll visit again today. Midoriya is supposed to come back Sunday night, and that might not be possible if he gets worse. I can come over if you two would like. I noticed that Izuku seemed comfortable around me again and I think that he may enjoy my company? Read 4:38 p.m. Midoriya-san replied rather quickly. Inko Midoriya, he's still in the shower, he's not even bathing himself Aizawa-san. I think he just sat down in the bathtub. I asked through the door if he'd want your company but he said that he was too gross for anyone to see. WTF. I don't know why he's like this. I'm freaking out. 4:39 p.m. I'm so worried. My baby is so sad. 4:39 p.m. What should I do? Read 4:40 p.m. Shoyuta bites his lip. He fiddles with his fingers, unsure what to type out, when someone clears their throat ahead of him. Shoyuta looks up from his phone, over his desk, and Uraraka, Ida, Todoroki, Bakugo, Tsuyu, and Kirishima stand in front of him. Shoyuta sighs. And you've been standing here for how long? Since the rest of the class left, Uraraka mumbles, we called you a couple times but you were really lost in thought so we thought we should just eavesdrop. Kirishima nods and the others glance over to see Shuta's reaction. Pinching the bridge of his nose, Shoyuta gets up. So I assume you know the situation I have to deal with right now, right? Yup. Bakugo says, popping the P. Do you all need something else? Or did it have to do with Midoriya from the beginning? Shoyuta asks, looking into each of their eyes. Their awkward silence says it all, and Shoyuta frowns. Mr. Aizawa, if Deku is struggling, why don't we help? He seemed to perk up when me and Ida called more often. Uraraka asks. He doesn't want to see anyone, Uraraka. From what I've gathered he's embarrassed and feeling self-conscious right now. Shoyuta counters. He doesn't want to see me either. So if he's feeling self-conscious what, about his appearance or his mental state how about we take him out to dinner or something? Some cozy, but familiar restaurant, and it would give him the chance to get himself ready, might make him feel better about himself. Todoroki says. He's not going to feel better by staying cooped up in that apartment. Bakugo adds right after. Shoyuta turns his head to face him. Look, I know Izuku. More than anything, he probably is feeling disgusting. He hates being lazy and unproductive. That ought to make him hate himself, don't you think? And because he's all miserable at home, he's probably paying no attention to his body. Anyone can get insecure about their appearance, especially Izuku. Shuta's eyebrows raise. That was really thoughtful. Ida nods. Bakugo is right. Even if he feels too insecure to let anyone see him, sometimes you have to force someone into doing something that makes them uncomfortable. Or they'll never get better. Tsuyu adds. We'll take him somewhere where he's forced to dress nicely. Kirishima says. And where he's forced to look nice. Uraraka exclaims. And where he can eat a nicely cooked meal. Ida chimes. Izuku isn't going to get better by pulling himself away from us, and we sure as hell aren't gonna let him do that. Bakugo says, and Shoyuta sees determination in his gaze. Izuku can't run away from us again. Shoyuta looks back down at his phone, the messages from Inko still left on read. He thinks about his student, his problem child, his kid. Shoyuta sighs. These kids really are persistent, aren't they? Go get ready, and text me the address of this restaurant. And the 5 not Bakugo give him the type of smile that reminds Shoyuta why he kept teaching this class for the rest of their years here. Izuku sits timidly in the bathtub, curled in on himself. The shower is off and his mother sits on the bathroom floor beside, scrubbing his hair with shampoo. His arms cover his stomach. I'm not. You're going. Inko says, rather softly. And if you really don't like it, I'll pick you up. But you have to try, honey. We're gonna make sure you're feeling nice and refreshed so you don't feel down around your friends. Izuku cries quietly, but Inko pays no mind. I looked at myself. Izuku mutters. He closes his eyes when the shampoo gets to his forehead on accident. Inko hums. Baby. I've gotten really ugly, Mom. He says, quieter this time. His lip wobbles and he sobs. His nails dig deep into his arms. Inko nudges his hand and then continues to wash his hair. Inko massages the shampoo deeper onto his scalp, and it relaxes him for a moment. No, baby. You haven't been taking good care of yourself, but you're not ugly. She says, her voice full of empathy and warmth. Yes, he gasps, yes I am. My face. And I'm skinnier, he trails off, his sobs racking his body. Inko turns on the sink tap and fills a bucket up with cold water. She pours it onto Izuku's head and washes the shampoo out while her son cries. And I can't? I can't. I am bloating really badly, Mom. His voice quivers, and Inko can tell that he's feeling humiliated. We'll deal with that, okay? She smiles. You're okay, honey. He sobs harder. I'm not. I don't want them to see me. But they want to see you, honey. Regardless. You are so loved, baby. So loved. And Izuku cries to that too. Katsuki stands awkwardly in front of his mirror. They're all heading to some fancy restaurant that Todoroki was able to make a reservation for. Apparently, Izuku has gone there before with him and Ida to celebrate Ida's brother's recovery, and apparently they have great food, so it's a good place to take everyone. Although, Katsuki is not in the best mood anymore. See, earlier Ejiru was also in his dorm room, the two had decided to get ready together. Much to Katsuki's dismay. Apparently, Katsuki had been angrily muttering about stupid sheet, and Ejiru asked Katsuki a stupid question. Katsuki, dude. Are you trying to look good for Midoriya? Katsuki scoffs. What? What kind of a question is that? Ejiru smiled awkwardly and put his hands out defensively. You've been muttering about how you need to look perfect for Izuku. You've been saying stuff like, he imitates Katsuki's voice, I need to make sure Izuku doesn't hate me, I need to make a good impression, I need to not dress like shitty hair, not nice bro. I can't be looking stupid, I need to make him feel better, dude. You're not taking Midoriya on a date. To be fair, he does say the last part sarcastically, but Katsuki doesn't take that bullshit lightly. And, he might have blown Ijiru out the door with his explosions. He has zero regrets though, that was uncalled for and it made Katsuki feel flustered. Katsuki groans and drags his hand across his face. He misses the nerd, like a friend does, and he wants to make sure that Izuku has the best experience tonight. For Izuku. And so what if he wants to dress nicely? It's not because of Fing Deku. It's a fancy place and everyone else is dressing nicely too. Katsuki curses under his breath when he realizes he's out on a t-shirt that Izuku had gifted him out of pure kindness, when they were first recovering from the war. Not a store-bought shirt, but Izuku's shirt. He considers changing, because that might be a little embarrassing, but he's interrupted. Someone knocks on the door quietly and carefully and Ishido and Kaminari enter the room without Katsuki's permission. Did you seriously blow up at Kirishima? Ishido asks. Katsuki glares at them and groans. Out of my room. He points to the door they stand at. Hey, don't be so cold, Bakugo. Wait, isn't that Midoriya's shirt you're wearing? Kaminari asks curiously, causing Katsuki to freeze. Ishido's eyes widen in amusement. It is. That's so sweet, Katsuki. Out of my room. Katsuki yells, and the two scramble out. Katsuki faces the mirror again, ignoring his bright red face, and decides that he needs to cool off. He takes a deep breath and checks his outfit out. So what if it's his shirt? Katsuki mumbles in a childlike manner, it's a fucking great outfit. He kicks the floor lazily. It's a good outfit. He says, trying to convince himself. It's, OFING, never mind. Izuku sits stiffly in his bedroom. He glances down at his phone. His friends had texted in the class group chat the time and location of the place they're going to. He knows the place, he's been there before. But he's not hungry, at all, so he's worried that they're gonna pester him. It's around 5:30, so he has time, because the reservation isn't until 8. But it's 20 minutes away, and Aizawa is picking him up. His mom is going to stay home, she has some work to get done, and Aizawa is also not staying for dinner, he's just Izuku's chauffeur. He does feel a little bad, but it was either that or riding alone in a taxi. He feels a little better, now that he's clean. But he keeps thinking about his face and his stomach and how he's worried his friends are going to think he's ugly, too. And falls to his side and lays miserably on his bed. He scrolls on his phone for a couple minutes when his mom knocks on his door. Izuku? Can I come in? She asks from the hallway. Yeah. She walks in, holding a cup of tea and a pill in her hand. Here, this is a magnesium pill. Take it with water. And drink the tea too, it'll also help with your digestion. She says softly. Izuku sits up. Thanks. And if you want you can borrow some of my concealer to cover your pimples. She smiles. Izuku nods and looks down. She places the stuff on his desk and turns to walk out. And Izuku? She says, stopping at the door, still facing away. She turns to look at him. You'll have fun, okay? Izuku nods, expression stoic and unreadable, and Inko steps out, closing the door behind her. When the door clicks closed, Izuku lets out a breath. He glances over to his desk and he gets up, bringing his water bottle with him, and he sits him down on his chair. He takes the pill, it's big and frankly kind of chalky and he doesn't enjoy it and he sips the tea. Lost in thought, Izuku's eyes wander over to the edge of his desk, where a stack of papers, textbooks, and notebooks sit. Squished in between them are the suicide letters he wrote. He thinks about that night, and how he has a new weight on his shoulders. He thinks about when he wandered over to the building, all of the people who passed and said nothing. He vaguely remembers seeing someone in the distance as he fell, but none of that matters. No one said anything, no one came to check on him after he jumped, no one saw him die, no one who would say a thing. Because he has a quirk. A quirk so disturbing, yet so terrifyingly fascinating, that Izuku can't bring himself to share with anyone. Izuku needs to start listening to his mother more, because she was right. As soon as Izuku finished getting ready, he already felt a lot better. He ended up finally pooping too, so his stomach feels relieved as well. Izuku had to dig in the back of his closet to find clothes that had been washed, so he wore a simple but pretty formal outfit. He wore black jeans, they were baggy on him because of his weight loss, but also because they were a size too big, hence as to why they were at the back of his closet. He wore a plain white dress shirt and rolled the sleeves up to his elbows. He kept the top 3 buttons undone so he didn't feel suffocated, and he kept the bottom button undone as well as he was keeping the shirt untucked. He fluffed his hair up, and he did end up covering his pimples with some makeup, with his mom's help, of course. So he really does feel better. Like, a lot better. Glancing at the time on his phone, Aizawa should arrive soon. He walks out his room and meets his mom at the door. "Okay, text or call me if anything comes up, okay?" she says. "I'm so glad you're going out, have fun sweetie." She pulls him into a hug and Izuku hugs back. When he pulls away, she yelps. "I almost forgot," she says. "1 second Izuku." She runs to her room and Izuku decides to put on his shoes. When she comes back, she's holding what looks like chapstick. "I noticed your lips have been super chapped, and I know it is a nervous habit because I have it too, but biting your lip isn't good for you. So apply this, and anytime you get nervous, just keep rubbing it on until you've calmed yourself down. It works." She smiles brightly, and hands it to Izuku. Izuku smiles ever so slightly. "Thanks mom." "Okay, text me if you need anything," she says. "Okay, bye mom. Love you." "Love you too." The only word to describe the car ride with Aizawa is quiet. When Izuku got in, Aizawa greeted him like he would anyone else, and it's been silent since. They've only been driving for 7 minutes so far, and it's a 20-minute drive now, 25 due to traffic, but the awkwardness is genuinely making Izuku lose it. He's not even playing music or listening to the radio. He glances over at Aizawa, who holds a conflicted expression. Aizawa notices his gaze and returns it just for a second, before turning his eyes back on the road. Izuku does the same, but he feels like he needs to say something. "You look much better," Aizawa says, breaking the silence. "Oh thank God," Izuku really didn't want to be the first to talk. "Thanks. I feel a bit better too." Aizawa hums. "They were right." He mumbles. "Sorry, who?" Aizawa smiles faintly. "Your friends. They said you'd feel better if you got yourself ready and out the house." Izuku nods slowly. "Oh. I guess I'll have to thank them." Aizawa nods as well and turns his focus back to driving. When it grows silent again, Izuku can't take it. "So, do you think they're there already?" Aizawa shakes his head. "I reckon we'll get there a bit before them. The restaurant is closer to UA, so they all are taking the train there. I'm assuming they haven't left yet." "Oh okay. I'm kind of glad." Aizawa raises his eyebrow. "Glad? I'll be able to ground myself. I'm a little nervous, to be honest." He digs his teeth into his lips, but then stops himself when he remembers what he has in his pocket. Pulling it out, he takes the chapstick and holds it on his lips. "Well, if it makes you feel better, I made sure to talk to them beforehand. If they listened, they know not to overstep tonight." Izuku giggles. "Well, I really hope Mineta, Ashido, and Kaminari were listening then." Aizawa smiles. "They're quite the nosy type, aren't they?" "Haha, yeah." They stop at a red light and Izuku can feel Aizawa's eyes on him. He glances over and notices a twisted mixture of relief and concern in his eyes. "I'm glad you're feeling better, but if I may ask, what made you feel so bad today? I'm fully aware that there are ups and downs, but this wasn't just you feeling down, was it?" Aizawa asks with caution. Izuku swallows. There's no use lying to him, and chances are his mom will tell him if he doesn't. "I reacted badly after looking at myself. I guess I realized how badly my actions affected my appearance. I don't know why it hurt so bad." Aizawa hums in acknowledgement. "That's completely normal for someone your age going through depression." Izuku groans. "I just don't understand. I've never ever felt insecure about my appearance before. I mean, in middle school I did feel a little bit self-conscious because I was a lot smaller than most guys, but I've never thought of myself as ugly." "You think you're ugly?" Aizawa asks, clear worry in his tone. I mean Midoriya, you are not ugly. You're struggling, but that doesn't make you ugly. You need to know that." Aizawa says sternly. Izuku notices that the light has changed to green, but Aizawa's foot remains pressed on the brake. Thankfully, they're not in a busy area, so there is nobody around. I know. I don't look great." Izuku huffs. Aizawa sighs. "Midoriya, you look just fine." He takes his foot off the brake and drives. "The only person judging you is you." Izuku doesn't respond, because while he considers what his teacher is saying, he still wonders if his friends would find him looking, if not ugly, different. If Kaken would see him as different. They arrive before them, as expected, and Aizawa graciously lets Izuku wait in the car. Izuku nervously applies chapstick while he waits, his legs shaking with anxiety. Aizawa asks him if he needs anything a couple times, but Izuku just shakes his head. He's worried that when he sees his friends he's going to completely freeze up and go mute. It's also completely possible that he'll go into a panic attack and dissociate. Izuku shakes his head. No. He's going to act as normal as possible. Aizawa shifts beside him in the driver's seat and Izuku sits up, looking out the window. In the near distance, he can see his classmates walking towards them. Aizawa steps out of the car, and Izuku takes one deep breath before doing the same. His classmates rather impatiently walk towards him and Aizawa with eager grins on their faces. "Izuku!" Ochako exclaims, running up to him. She holds her arms out as if inviting him into a hug, so to avoid speaking, he hugs her back. She squeals as he does so, kind of startling him. "Don't hog him!" Kirishima yells behind the two. Ochako giggles and pulls away, gazing at him. For a second, her eyes flicker with concern but she covers it up quickly. Kirishima catches up, smiling. "Midoriya." Izuku smiles faintly, but no words come out of him. He feels frozen. The rest of the class catches up and they all greet Izuku with caution. Izuku waves, still unable to speak. He glances over to Aizawa, but the man is already on it. "Okay, you already know the rules, no staying here for longer than 3 hours, no running off, and stick with each other." "Got it." The class, minus Izuku, choruses "got it" and turns their attention to the restaurant ahead of them. "Oh man, I am so hungry," Sari exclaims. "I can't wait to eat. One more thing." Aizawa interrupts, startling the whole class's attention back to him. They all look a little worried as his eyes trail to each of them. "Have fun." They all explode into chaos and sighs of relief, while Izuku just lets out the breath he was holding. Honestly, he thought Aizawa was about to talk about him. Aizawa waves and walks back to his car, nodding to Izuku, and Izuku feels his wrist getting tugged towards the restaurant. "It's Ochako. Come on. I'm super hungry," she says. Izuku hums, feeling a little less anxious. "This is familiar, I am fine." Shoto walks up next to him and Ochako. "Midoriya, it's nice to see you." Izuku opens his mouth, but he gets stuck again. Shoto noticed though, and he smiled. "It's alright, we can talk once we're seated, right?" Izuku's chest loosens and he feels himself unwinding. Yeah. Because of Shoto's status, he was able to get them all a nice private room. There's 20 of them, and they all sit at a long table stretching to both sides of the room. Izuku finds himself in the middle of the table. Ochako sits across from him, Shoto on his left, and Ida on his right. Beside Ochako is Tsu, and Kaken sits on Ochako's left, and beside him is Kirishima. Everyone else finds themselves a seat and they all settle in nicely. The door opens. "Hello. I am going to be your waitress for the night, allow me to introduce myself, I am Kamemiya, it is a pleasure to be helping you all." Their waitress, Kamemiya says, walking up to the end of their table. "My colleague, Tamahi," she motions to the other waitress on the other end of the table, "will be helping me out." "It's a pleasure." Tamahi smiles. "Wow," Ochako whispers, "their service is great." "You mean they're just nice?" Tsu deadpans. Izuku nods. Ida does too. Izuku turns his focus to Kamemiya. She's tall, and she has a mutant-type quirk. She looks like a spider, the way her quirk mutated her. But she looks anything but scary, the way she smiles. "I mean, we are famous, aren't we?" Ida remarks. "Yeah, or they're just nice." Tsu adds. "Before I take drink orders, are we all paying on separate bills?" Kamemiya asks. Ochako raises her hand. She motions to her and Tsu, "will be sharing our bill." Shoto raises his hand too. "I will be paying for my friend here as well," he says, pointing to. "Wait, what?" Izuku quietly asks, nudging Shoto. Shoto just looks back at him and smiles. "My treat, I did ask you to come. It would be impolite if I expected you to pay." Izuku shakes his head. "But Shoto, just let him pay." A familiar grumpy voice chimes in. Izuku whips his head to look at Katsuki, who sits diagonally from him. He stares at him intently, like his eyes are tracing every part of his body. Izuku glances at him too, noticing that he's wearing. "Excuse me?" Izuku looks behind him, the waitress, Tamahi, stands with a notepad in hand. She smiles apologetically. "Sorry, what would you like to drink?" The table is quiet, apart from Kamemiya who is taking Shinsu's order across the table. Izuku feels vulnerable, and his throat closes. He doesn't understand why the simple act of choosing a beverage makes him feel so anxious. Is it because he doesn't know her and he's been so stressed, or is it because everyone is listening? Shoto, who stares at him curiously from his side, clears his throat, and everyone starts chatting again. He glances at his friend, unspoken gratitude in their gazes. "Do you know what you want? I could recommend something or I can come back to you." Tamahi asks again, her voice a little more timid. Izuku looks back at her. She looks as if she's their age, unlike Kamemiya, who looks to be about in her 20s. Izuku, unable to take this stress, mouths water to her, hoping she'll let him be. To his relief, she nods and smiles and moves on to Shoto. Izuku lets his body relax and closes his eyes, breathing in and out slowly. I can do this. Everybody's drinks come, and they all settle into easy conversation. Around Izuku, nobody makes him talk, letting him listen as they go on about random things and topics that pique their interest. However, one thing Izuku notices: nobody talks about school. They've been there for about 15 minutes so far, and Izuku genuinely expected them to fill him up in whatever he missed while he's been gone. But he supposes it's because Aizawa talked to them. He must have told them that anything relating to school or training or hero work is prohibited, because all it does is send Izuku straight into a spiral of envy and depression. Izuku notices some slip-ups, like Kirishima almost talking about something that must have happened during one of their classes, or how Ochako started rambling about one topic to Tsu but changed it immediately when she noticed Izuku glancing her way. He feels bad, because he knows it's annoying. He sees it in the way that Kaminari seems out of things to laugh about, or how Shinso seems antisocial. Talking about training and school would really help him bond with his class. But Izuku can't lie that the more he thinks about it, the more jealous he gets. Jealous, because he knows he probably won't be able to relate to them for a while. Ochako makes eye contact with him. Is she going to ask him why they haven't been able to order food yet? He's pretty sure he heard Kaminari and Shiro complaining about it a second ago. But instead, once again she looks conflicted. Izuku doesn't blame her. There's many reasons to act conflicted when looking at Midoriya Izuku. Why is he acting so strange? Why is he so skittish and jumpy? Tired? Skinny? Quiet? What should I do? Do I try to talk to him? Will he talk back? Why is he acting like I'm going to hurt him? What happened? That's what he assumes is going through his friend's head. Izuku? Ochako asks. She keeps her voice low but stares directly at him since they are facing one another. Ochako? Izuku replies. She bites her lip. Why are you? Izuku frowns. Why are you? He echoes. Ochako doesn't leave his gaze, and Izuku begins to get nervous. To his left, Shoto nudges him. Midoriya? He asks. Izuku. Ochako says again, her tone clipped less like a question and more to get his attention. He faces her again. What? He asks, his voice a bit wobbly. He doesn't understand. What's happening? Why is she acting so weird? Why are you bleeding? She says, and although her voice is quiet, those around them hear. Why am I? What? He asks, genuinely confused. He reaches to his nose, no bleeding, then his forehead. Oh my god. Kaken says loudly, earning everyone's attention. Your head. He drops his hand and stares back at the bright red blood that stains his hand. What? What's going on? Midoriya. Whoa, what happened? Is he alright? Izuku stands up quickly and races towards the private bathrooms. Inside, he stares intensely at his reflection. Behind him, a couple others follow him into the bathroom. Shoto, Katsuki, Ida, and Ochako, and she's fully aware it is a boy's bathroom. He looks at his head, his curls cover most of it, but he's not thrilled to see a puddle of blood that formed at the top of his head that now drips down his forehead. When I saw it, Ochako rambles frantically to Ida, it was small. But then it started bleeding more. Katsuki rushes up to him. He grabs a paper towel and cleans the blood before it can get in his eye. In doing so, he rubs off some of the makeup as well. Fortunately, that's not Katsuki's concern at all. Izuku starts hyperventilating, because the reflection he just stared at looks a lot like. Izuku Midoriya stares back at his own dead body. As if it were a mirror. Blood pools out from his dead head. Crimson red blood. Midoriya. Look at me. Shoto yells from his right. Breathe. Breathe. Izuku shuts his eyes closed. He's panicking. He can't distinguish anything anymore. I died. Izuku says, so quietly but so broken. Shoto and Kaken stare at him in disbelief. You're alive, dipshit, we just need to figure out why you're bleeding. Kaken says, but Izuku can't focus. Doesn't Kaken know Izuku is dead? I killed myself. I'm dead. I saw myself dead. What the F dash? What's wrong? Why is he bleeding? Ida asks, Ochako nodding behind him in panic. Shoto grabs Izuku's head. Katsuki walks away from him. What? Izuku asks again. You're not dead, you died but you came back. Something's wrong. That's not his blood. Katsuki says. What? Ochako asks wildly. He's bleeding. Not his blood. Shoto also says. There's no injury. It's puddled on the top of his hair. It came from. Izuku's body feels super weak. He shakes, and he loses his balance for a moment, falling into Shoto. Midoriya? Izuku mutters. His vision sways all of a sudden. Someone bursts in the doors. It's Jairu and Tokoyami. We have an issue. Jairu says, her voice stern. Yeah, don't you think we have a bigger FING issue here? Katsuki growls, pointing to Izuku. I think we have the answer to your issue. Tokoyami says seriously. You guys need to come out now. Exchanging concerned glances, they follow them out, Shoto slinging Izuku's arm over his shoulder. Back in the dining area, everyone is standing up near Izuku's chair. What's going on? Ida asks. Everyone stares at them. It's Ishido who answers. That's not Mito's blood. Katsuki scoffs. Yeah, we know how. Wait, how do you know? He says, caught off guard. Izuku, who's feeling incredibly disoriented at the moment, focuses his eyes to look at the scene in front of him. Just look. Mineta says, sounding terrified. They all look worriedly at Izuku's chair, confused, until they see it. Blood. A puddle of blood on his chair. And, drip. Blood falls from above onto the chair. They look up, but they see only darkness. The ceiling is too high, I can't see what's dripping blood. Kaminari says. Izuku looks back at the chair, and to his hand, and a sickening crack. A second body. His lifeless body. They look at him blankly. Bloody. So bloody. Izuku. Katsuki says. What's going on? Everyone turns their attention to the two. Izuku can't focus. He falls to the ground despite Shoto's support and sobs. Katsuki and Shoto rush to support him, but he can't make them out through his tears. People are shouting, but nobody is coming. And when was the last time they saw their servers? The reality hits him now. When he should be worried about whatever the hell is happening, all he can think about is that he actually went through it. He actually killed himself. Then it's all blank. F dash. Katsuki yells. Oh hell no. FING damn it. What's going on? Ida yells. He's FING out. Wake up Izuku. Katsuki panics, shaking Izuku. He looks the most peaceful he has all night, because he's not anxious or crying or mute. Katsuki frowns. What the F is happening? You guys make sure Izuku is safe. I can float up there to see what's going on. In the meantime, can somebody find our waitresses? Uraraka asks. Yaoyorozu and Shinso nod and walk out of the room. Uraraka presses her fingers together and propels herself up. Todoroki runs over to the table to grab Izuku's water, hoping to wash off the blood that's on him, when he notices something unusual. Hey, Bakugo, check this out. Right now? Deku Izuku needs help. Katsuki growls. Ida crouches down beside him. I've got him, he says, staring intently back at Katsuki. Katsuki's eyebrows furrow, but he lets go and walks over to Todoroki. What? I think there's something in Midoriya's water? Todoroki asks, his tone clearly laced with fear. Katsuki's eyes widen and he grabs the glass, holding it close to his face. Sure enough, there are tiny white particles floating around his water. Katsuki's mouth hangs open and he stares at Todoroki in disbelief when. Oh my god! Uraraka yells from above. Everyone snaps their heads to look, but she's covered by the darkness. Just how tall is this DMN ceiling? The door to the room gets slammed open. Shinso and Yaoyorozu run in frantically, their expressions only reading one thing: absolute undeniable fear. All of the people, Shinso trails off, his mouth hangs open. They're all unconscious but we can't move them. They're stuck. What the hell are you talking about? Katsuki asks. Webs. Yaoyorozu says, her voice shaking and terrified. A shriek fills the room, and Uraraka comes falling down violently from the ceiling. Thankfully, Ishido catches her. What strikes curiosity in Katsuki is, she's wrapped. Wrapped completely in spider web? What? Katsuki says before another thing comes crashing down from the ceiling, but this time landing with a sickening thump on the floor. Oh my god. Is that Tamahi? Todoroki mutters. She's wrapped too, but her eyes are pried out of her face and red crimson blood pours out. Immediately, Katsuki grabs Todoroki and Ejiru, who are the only two standing near the table with him, and he yanks them, all three of them falling to the side of the room. In that moment, another person falls from the ceiling, but instead of hitting the table or ground, they hang from a web connection form the ceiling to them. Kamemiya. Katsuki hisses. Kamemiya, their server who had the visible spider-like quirk, has completely morphed into the creature, her only resuming feature being the piercing red eyes she had when she looked like a human. I got hungry. She teases. And I couldn't wait until my shift was over, oopsie. Everybody backs off, their backs hitting the sides of the room. The only two closest to the monster, Ida and Izuku, who stays firmly in the ground. Kamemiya smirks. I really didn't want to cause a scene, her legs twitch, but I'm just such a fan. I couldn't possibly pass up an opportunity to see how you guys fight. She propels herself further up her web that hangs, and then she shoots herself back down. She lands on the table, breaking it through the center. Shame I had to eat tamahi, but I was just famished. Ida holds Izuku in a death grip, keeping his gaze fixed on Kamemiya. Katsuki's blood boils. What did you do? Kamemiya crawls further towards Katsuki. To who? To that girl? To the others dining here? To your friend? You a-hole. Ejiru shouts. What did you do? His water? I put little droplets of poison. I reckon he'll be dead in a matter of minutes. The room falls silent. Katsuki's palms pop explosions and he shoots himself towards the monster. She swings out her sharp limb but he dodges, shooting an explosion directly in her direction. She flies backwards, hitting the wall behind her. Ida takes that as his chance to run, and he puts Izuku on his back while Todoroki and Katsuki cover. He sprints out the room. No difference will be made. She deadpants, groaning and sitting herself back up. He'll die no matter what. There's no cure. Go to hell. Katsuki shouts, firing another explosion as Todoroki shoots his ice, pinning her to the wall as forcing her to take the painful hits. She shrieks in pain but Katsuki isn't done, and he sends even more powerful blasts and Todoroki continues shooting more ice to keep her immobile. And when backup and the police arrive, Katsuki's mind finally wanders back to Ida and Izuku. Tenya knows where the closest hospital is, so he runs as quickly as he possibly can. It's a far run, but he'll push through his limits if he has a chance of saving his friend. At one point, Izuku stirs awake, confused and disoriented and clearly in immense pain. He groans and sobs and Tenya can only reassure him and tell him that he'll be okay, even if he isn't sure at all. After all, it didn't take long for Izuku to become affected. When Tenya finally sees the hospital in his view, his heart does a victory lap, but Izuku suddenly stirs and pries himself out of Tenya's hold. Stunned, he takes longer than he should to stop, whipping around, but not seeing Izuku. Sheet, he mutters, uncaring of the use of vulgar words. Izuku! He runs and retraces his steps but doesn't see him. Did he pry himself off, or was he taken? F-. He yells. Izuku! Izuku, where are you? He runs back and tries to find anywhere where Izuku could have either ran off or been taken. But what Tenya didn't know was that Izuku had shoved him under a small car on the side of the road, holding the chapstick his mother had so kindly given him, waiting for death to embrace him, like the old friend that it is. When Izuku wakes, he's still under the car, but unlike before, he's a little more to the side. Looking to his right, his corpse lies. He's not as freaked out this time, mainly because he did it on purpose. Well, he didn't ask to die, and he's still not quite sure how. He remembers being in and out of consciousness and Ida frantically mumbling something about poison, but he did hide himself with the knowledge that he'd see his corpse again. Of course, he knows the feeling of death very well. He looks over to his left and pushes himself out from under the car ever so slightly to survey his surroundings. When he's pretty sure there is nobody near, he turns to his body. Shaking it, he says, "Come on, I need to hide you." But the body doesn't react. It reminds Izuku of when he first died. The corpses were unresponsive until he noticed them at his apartment. He starts to panic. He can't stay under this car forever, and he has no idea how long it takes for these things to gain consciousness. Or if it was only a one-time thing. Regardless, it would not be good if anyone saw the corpse of Izuku Midoriya. Using all of the strength he has, he grabs the arm of his dead body while he pushes himself out, dragging the body with him. He groans in pain. He's not used to having to put so much energy into something, but he's able to get them both out. He whips his head around, making sure nobody is near, and when he's in the clear, he drags the corpse by its arm into a nearby alleyway. He sets the body up under a lamppost, illuminating the area, and sits down next to it with a groan. F, he mutters, dragging the palm of his hand down his face. Glancing to the corpse, he looks at his lifeless eyes. He remembers it being an incredibly painful death. It felt like the insides of his body were being turned inside out while burning, as if he were placed inside a volcano. He's not sure why he died. He assumes something must have happened at dinner regarding the blood. Before he passed out, there was blood dripping from the ceiling. Well, he was in a bit of a panic when it happened, but why is it that now he's only just thinking about it? He shoots upright. He needs to help. What if something bad happened to his friends? It would be hard to help your friends when they think you're dead. Izuku whips his head around, looking at the entrance of the alleyway. There, someone stands nonchalantly, their body covered by the darkness of the night. Izuku spasms and stands up, backing up slightly. His foot hits his corpse, and he's reminded of the situation he's now put himself in. Suddenly the person who was standing at the entrance disappears and they reappear next to Izuku, under the alley lamp. Izuku yelps, and knocks himself into the wall on the other side. There stands a girl. She wears a black hoodie and black baggy sweats, and her long brown hair reaches down to her hips. She's pale, and the orange hue of the light illuminates her face, exposing her bright purple's eyes. She looks about Izuku's age, and she stands confidently in front of him. "Why, how did you?" He stutters. His eyes flicker towards the corpse she stands in front of, and she eyes the body curiously, noticing his anxiety. "My quirk," she says, "flicker. I can flicker or teleport into areas illuminated by light. When I was younger, it was only light in the distance I could see. But I've gotten better at expanding my quirk strength, and now I can flicker into places I can't see." Izuku stares dumbfounded at her. He's genuinely fed. Why isn't she saying anything about the body? The girl notices his panic, and once again she looks back at the corpse, that still hasn't moved. "Didn't you hear what I said earlier? I know you died," she says. Izuku looks up at her. She frowns. "I know who you are, Deku." Izuku stiffens. "Practically everyone does." She smirks. "You saved Japan." She looks back at the body once more, causing Izuku's heart to pound faster. "I heard it was tough for you, though." "So? Why does that matter?" Izuku counters, he doesn't know why she's mentioning that. "Is she a villain? How am I supposed to know if you're a villain or not?" She falls back and leans against the wall across Izuku. "You just have to trust me." She crosses her arms. "I can help you." "Help me with what?" "Your problem." She deadpants, motioning to his dead body. "I saw you jump off the roof last week." Izuku's whole body freezes. "No, you didn't. That wasn't me." He forgets denial can be another type of admittance. She raises her eyebrow. "How could I not recognize Deku jumping off a building? Twice, for that matter." Izuku narrows his eyes. Clearly, she hasn't said anything to anyone else, or else news would spread like wildfire. "How come I didn't see you? You were committing suicide. Don't think you would be paying attention to anything else, would you?" "I did. I made sure." Izuku stops himself. He does remember seeing someone. He takes a deep breath. I might have seen someone. For a second, when I fell." She nods. "I was the only person within at least 5 buildings of where you jumped. It was me. How come I didn't notice you after? You were too busy having a mental freak out about dying." Izuku's cheeks flush in embarrassment. She sighs. "I also used my quirk. The closest place with light was on the opposite side, but I did see you jump again." Izuku glares at her. "What? So why are you only confronting me now? And why not say anything? You would get famous." "Because I know what it's like." She snaps. Izuku's eyes widen. For someone putting on such an intimidating act, she sure sounded frustrated. "I'm not going to out you for committing suicide, seriously. I want to help you get out of the mess you've put yourself in." Izuku considers her words. He doesn't know her, and for all he knows this could be a setup. But looking into her eyes, seeing it full of honesty and true familiarity, he decides to listen. "Okay, and how would you help?" She loosens up a bit. "I'd be your alibi." "My alibi?" Izuku questions. I kind of followed you to the restaurant you were at. I loitered outside for a bit, but I saw your friend running out with you on his back, and I was going to follow you until something happened inside the restaurant." Izuku's blood goes cold. "A villain attack?" "Yes." Her eyes narrow. "I flickered inside and saw your friends fighting a giant spider." Izuku winces. "A spider quirk? Our server had a spider quirk." She nods emphatically. "I don't know what happened, to be honest. But she kept going on about how you're not going to survive. That you'll be dead in minutes." She walks up to him ever so slowly. "When they apprehended the villain, your friend who ran came back, without you. They think you're dead. They're convinced." Izuku shakes his head. "This is bad. Why? Why are they so convinced?" "I think the villain." Even as she was being hauled away into the police van, she kept rambling about how nobody survives her poison. "And because your friend lost you, everyone is pretty stressed about you being dead." Izuku's blood runs cold. Well, she was right, he did die. But how is he supposed to come back from this? "I don't want them to know about my quirk." He tells her, and it's a pretty shitty excuse. But to his surprise, she agrees. "I know. So I am going to help you lie to them. I'll say that I saw you in an alley, and I made you throw up. I tell them that you looked flushed and ill and I could recognize the symptoms and that I made sure you got it out of you." Izuku considers her words. She continues. "It's not that believable, I'm aware. But honestly, they're going to be forced to believe it anyway. The last thing they're going to jump to is you being able to revive from death." Izuku nods. It works, and having a complete stranger vouch for him will sell the act. But he's curious about one more thing. "Why were you following me anyway? Why help me? Why are you doing this?" He asks. "Why are you not absolutely terrified of this situation?" She looks at him, her face. twisted with conflict. With a heavy sigh, she walks up to him, pulling up the sleeve on her right arm. There, tens of white scars lay across her skin. They're neatly placed, saying all that needs to be said. Izuku's heart aches. "I'm sorry," he says, frowning. He knows exactly the feeling. She pulls her sleeve back down and pats his shoulder. "It's all right, okay? They're from years ago, so I'm fine now. I just wanted to show you to let you know that I know what it's like to feel like the only answer is to disappear, so when I saw you." She emphasizes, smiling softly, the savior of Japan. "The high school student Deku, when I saw you jump off that building, all I wanted to do was help you." Izuku's body relaxes, because it's hearing this from someone when he never had to explain himself. "I don't have much in life, okay? I keep getting rejected from colleges I apply to, and I don't have many friends. But this is something I can do. Let me help." Izuku eyes water, and without thinking, he pulls her into a hug. At first, he wants to pull himself away immediately because he barely knows this woman and it was impolite of him, but she hugs back. That only makes Izuku's heart ache more. He cries, and this kind stranger lets him. After some time and his cries die down, he pulls away, timidly wiping his eyes and sniffling. She looks at him warmly, the most expressive she's looked compared to when they first talked minutes prior. She opens her mouth to say something, but the both of them are startled by movement being made next to the wall across them. There, Izuku's corpse starts to move. Immediately, the girl jumps back and gasps in fear. "Why the F is your dead body moving?" she asks, looking at the corpse with wide eyes. "I thought you could just duplicate after you die. Right? Or did I miss something the day you jumped?" Izuku shakes his head, also keeping his eyes trained on the body. "Nope. After a while, my corpses can gain consciousness. I don't know much at all though." She looks at him with a ridiculed expression. "What do you mean you don't know much? You've had this quirk your whole life, right?" The corpse rises from the ground, but still looking not quite conscious yet. "No. I only found out about this power recently. When I jumped, that is." She swallows. "How many DMN quirks have you had in your life?" she asks. "Too many." "What about your other quirks?" "Ah, those are gone." The corpse suddenly groans, letting out a disturbing sound as its eyes roll to the back of its head and then forward. It sets his eyes on the two in front of him and stares blankly, and it leans on the wall. "Oh God. Is this a zombie quirk?" she asks, ignoring the fact that he just told her about the loss of his quirk. Izuku breathes out. "I don't know. I guess it's more like a immortality duplication zombie quirk. Does anyone else know about this?" "No," Izuku sighs. "Not even your mother? Or maybe a doctor? Like I told you, I really don't know anything yet. Is it going to try and kill us?" Izuku rolls his eyes. "No. I think you're forgetting that this dead body of mine is mine. We share a consciousness technically." She nods slowly. Okay, I guess that makes sense. Can it talk?" "Not that I'm aware of. It's sort of, how do I put it? Last time I communicated with one of my bodies it couldn't communicate through words. It wrote me something, but I don't really remember. Mostly, I remember it asking me to kill it. It was in a lot of pain." She hesitantly nods. "Try asking it a question?" Izuku looks at her, then his body. It's a lot less disturbing looking at this version of him, because the only indication of it looking dead is its paler skin, blue lips and glassy eyes. "Are you in pain?" The body just stares at him, but then shakes his head. Izuku sighs of relief. "Do you think you can talk?" It shakes his head, then points at the phone in Izuku's pocket. Izuku takes it out and holds it up. "What? Do you want to type something?" It nods. Izuku hands it the phone. It takes a couple of seconds, but then he hands Izuku his phone back and he reads the message. "I'm weak, so I can't speak or make big movements. I can walk and stand up and make noises, but that's about it. Next time, fuel your body. That'll probably help." Izuku stares at it. Next to him, the girl hums. "Oh, it's basic knowledge. In order to have your quirk working as best as possible, you need the energy and nutrients required." She looks at him with a smirk. "Clearly you haven't been eating properly." Izuku groans. "I know, I'm trying." Then, he looks back at his corpse. As much as he wants more answers from it, he has to go back to his friends. "So, I need to deal with you." It nods, and the girl makes a noise that gets his attention. "Oh yeah, what are you gonna do with it?" Izuku pinches the bridge of his nose and then looks up at it. "Sorry, but are you okay with getting lit on fire?" And when the girl beside him gasps, the body just nods, hopping into a dumpster that resides in the alley. The process was quick and easy, because since the body wasn't mangled and broken like the last time Izuku died, it was fully capable of lighting itself on fire, using a match that the woman kept with her. When it was confirmed that Izuku's corpse had been completely burned to ashes, the two left and started their walk silently side by side down the empty streets of Mizurufu. Izuku can hear sirens and a crowd of people, but it all sounds pretty far, indicating to Izuku that Ida had run pretty far with him, but it does give him a bit of relief knowing that there shouldn't be people around this area. His heart twists. Ida probably thinks Izuku is dead, right? He probably feels responsible too, which only makes Izuku feel more like a complete a-hole. Hey! The girl grunts, breaking him from his train of overthinking. She nudges him. I can practically hear you stressing, you'll be fine. You don't know that. He says. I've been showing them that I actually can't be fine, recently. She snorts. Your issue. Obviously. He groans, clutching his hair. But I've already been putting them through so much stress. I'm so effed. Then we just make sure we stick to the plan, Deku. Izuku looks at her, studying her features. She hasn't told him her name yet, and although he hasn't asked, he assumed she would have told him by now. Maybe it's a security thing? Hey, Izuku says, you said you've been trying to apply to college. How old are you anyways? 20, she murmurs, and trying to find a school is hell. 20? You look young. Izuku says earnestly. She smirks. Thanks kid, but I am still young you know? Well yeah, but you look like a high school student. I got great genes then, she says, and I've been meaning to ask you, if you don't mind. You're in your second year of high school, correct? Izuku smiles softly. I am. Is it better? I'm sorry, is what better? Well, she crosses her arms, for a while people had been really angry at UA. Protesting and shit. Is it any better? A lot better. To be honest, I was in the hospital for the majority of it after the war ended. But when I came back it was pretty exhausting to deal with. Despite saving the world, there's still going to be some people, you know? She nods. Totally. What's hero school like? Izuku thinks. It's hard. It's really hard. But fun. Exhausting, intriguing, and, he swallows, disappointing too. She hums, looking over at him. So, you told me earlier you lost your other quirks. To be honest, I've heard things all over the place. But I'm not gonna bother you about that unless you want to tell me. Izuku shakes his head. No offense, but I do barely know you. She laughs. No hard feelings. So to everyone else, you're technically quirkless? Izuku stays silent for a moment. He hates when it's brought up. Then, is that bad? Of course not. Good. They're silent the rest of the way, until they reach the area the restaurant is almost impossible to see with the crowd and emergency vehicles surrounding it. Izuku looks at the girl, looking into her purple eyes, and nods. She swings right at Izuku, landing a blow right in the center of his stomach. It hurts, and Izuku almost vomits right then and there. Jesus, he wheezes, where'd you learn to throw a punch like that? She smirks. The streets. You forget I was intimidating at first? Izuku groans and clutches his stomach. Do I look ill? You always did, you do look worse now. Izuku nods. Good. So I'll follow your lead, alright? Got it. She slings his arm over her shoulders and walks towards the crowd. Taking a deep breath, she yells. Excuse me. I have someone hurt. The crowd looks back at her, and they all start murmuring the moment they lay their eyes on Izuku. The middle of the crowd gets split, when someone rushes through to see. When Izuku focuses his eyes, he sees All Might. All Might? He asks weakly. When did he get here? Young Midoriya. Oh my goodness, he looks at him bewildered, at the woman carrying him, and then back at him. How are you? From behind him, a couple others run out. It's Shoto and Ida. Midoriya. Oh my Midoriya, you're alive. Izuku nods, and Ida runs up, embracing him. The girl stumbles back and watches them silently. Ida pulls back and studies Izuku's face. Izuku does the same, noticing his glassy eyes and twisted expression. Are you alright? Where did you go? Are you feeling sick? Izuku smiles faintly. He looks back at the girl and Ida follows with his gaze. I'm feeling better. I think I freaked out and had a flashback. I'm sorry, I thought you were someone else and I ran from you. She found me and saved my life. Shoto walks up to the two and the girl nods. You saved Deku? She nods. I saw him in an alley. I noticed the symptoms he had, so I stuck my fingers in his throat to make him throw up. He seems a lot better, more coherent than when I first saw him, but I think there's a chance he's still hurt. Ida lets go of Izuku and walks up to her and bows. Thank you so much. You saved his life. She shakes her head. It was nothing. I wouldn't have just ignored him. She eyes Izuku, and Izuku mentally nods. Suddenly, he groans and clutches his head. Immediately, Shoto grabs him. Midoriya, are you okay? Izuku nods slowly. I'm dizzy. Shoto frowns. Like you're going to pass out again? Izuku hums. Sort of, but not really. Emerging from the crowd, Izuku can make out his classmates running up to them. They all call his name, but it's Kaken's voice that sticks out the most. Deku! He calls out, his nickname for him slipping out in habit. When he catches up to all of them, Shoto steps out of the way so Kaken can see him. You okay? Izuku nods. I think. Don't feel like I'm dying. Katsuki stands grim. How are you even conscious, let alone talking right now? Izuku's pulse quickens. He looks back at the girl vaguely, just lie. She the girl with the brown hair found me and helped me. He says. Katsuki's expression doesn't change. What happened to glasses taking you to a hospital? Izuku cringes. I had a flashback. Katsuki's eyebrows pinch together and his expression twists into frustration. Zuku, tonight was supposed to help you. Before Izuku can respond, Kaken is shoved out of the way by Aizawa. He grabs Izuku by the shoulders and calls his name. From behind his mother runs up, her eyes wide and panicked and red. They both speak to him, so Izuku decides to put his acting to the test. He shuts his eyes and lets his body go limp, and he manages to hit his head on the pavement before anyone can catch him. Now he really does feel like he's going to pass out. Midoriya! Aizawa yells. Someone get the ambulance already. Someone Shoto yells. Squinting his eyes open, he notices the crowd of civilians being moved out the way while heroes and medical professionals run through. Here, Midoriya is it? An EMT asks while squatting down in front of him. Can you hear me? Yes. He whispers. My name is Hana, and my partner Fujiro who's going to be helping me get you up, okay? Okay. Did you hit your head? He nods. His head does hurt pretty badly, now that he thinks of it. The guy that Hana mentioned moves up to his head and touches his hair. Is this blood from hitting your head? He asks. No, Shoto replies for him, that happened at the restaurant. It isn't his blood. Fujiro nods. Good to know. Midoriya, do you think you can sit up for me? Or does your head hurt too much? Izuku ponders what his next action should be. He's been through much worse head trauma than this, so he can 100% sit up, but he is also supposed to be affected by the poison. I can try. He decides. Don't push it, Hana chimes, we have been told you tend to ignore serious injuries. I'll try. He says. While he sits up, Aizawa places a hand behind his back to steady him. Izuku fakes a conflicted expression. What happened? Everyone goes silent. Then, honey? What do you mean? You hit your head. Hana replies worriedly. He soon realizes that sounds much more serious than he meant it. No, I know I hit my head, but when I blacked out at the restaurant. And why I felt like I was dying. Aizawa hums. We'll tell you when we know that you're going to be okay. Right now we need to get you into the ambulance so they can take you to the hospital. Izuku decides to go along. They lift him up, and taking one more look back at the girl, whose name he never received, he SCKs in a breath the ones he'd have during a flashback and he pushes himself out of their hold and stumbles onto the pavement, hitting his head and knocking himself out cold. White ceiling, machines beeping, low lighting. Ah, the hospital. Hello old friend. When he sits up, there's nobody in the room with him. He looks around, noticing his phone on the table beside his bed. Picking it up, he notes that it is currently afternoon the next day. There's no new messages, other than one from his mother that she sent while he was still driving to the restaurant. He places it back down and waits for someone to come in. When a doctor finally notices him, Izuku sort of just goes through the motions. All of the words and actions that come from him bleed into the world around him and everything fades into a blur. The doctor leaves, a nurse runs some tests, they ask him questions. What time do you think you recall blacking out? Did you hit your head more than twice? Based on your mother's and teacher's concerns, we're worried you may have ran from your classmate with the intent of suicide. We need you to be honest, okay? When was the last time you ate? Are you feeling any discomfort right now? He answers every question truthfully, and eventually they leave him with some oatmeal, apple juice, and a paper cup of water. He thinks he recalls them telling him that he has a grade 2 concussion, but nothing as bad as what he suffered before. Looking down at the tray in front of him, a couple of meds lay beside his cup of water. He doesn't remember what they said they were. Eventually, he eats his entire portion of oatmeal, and when the doctor comes back he asks for more. The doctor seems pleasantly surprised, but he comes back with some soup instead. We need to still take it easy on your stomach, the doctor Dr. Ito, written on his name tag tells him, you were poisoned. You're still recovering. So I was poisoned, Izuku mutters to himself. I'm sorry sir, may I ask what happened? Dr. Ito frowns. Unfortunately all I know is that a villain used their quirk and, from what I was told, spiked the drink you consumed. Izuku bites his lips nervously. Is my mother here? Or my teacher? Your mother and teacher have been in a meeting with policemen all morning, but they are aware that you are awake. Do you know when they'll be done? He shakes his head sympathetically. I'm sorry, but I haven't been told a whole lot. I do know that some of your friends are here, so if you'd like them to come visit I can get them. Izuku hesitates. I'm not sure, how many? Dr. Ito smiles softly. 19. Oh. And I was told that the woman who helped you is also here. Izuku perks up. I want to see her, but also my classmates. Alright, I just have to do a couple more things with you and I will get them. Sounds good? Izuku nods, and one of the female doctors in the room grabs a chair and sits next to him. She holds a small clipboard and a pen. She smiles at him warmly. Hello, Midoriya. My name is Mai. I just need to talk to you about some stuff that is concerning us, okay? Izuku takes a deep breath. Her name tag doesn't indicate what type of doctor she is, but he really hopes that she's not a shrink. She laughs. Don't worry, I work in the same field as Dr. Ito. I just want to understand some stuff that's going on. Was I muttering? He asks sheepishly, and she nods. Sorry, habit. No worries. Now, we talked to your mother a bit when you arrived last night, but we just want to come up with a plan to get you healthy again. Sounds good? He nods. Deep breaths. My first concern is that compared to your last physical done 6 months ago, your body weight and muscle mass has dropped significantly. You were listed as 73 kilograms then, but now we are estimating that you weigh maybe around 60 kilograms now. We'd have to get you on a scale to find out, but it's a concerning drop. I'm not underweight though, right? He only asks because he looks underweight. He feels underweight. That's something we will be aware of once we find out how much you weigh. But as a student who trains and exercises daily, being underweight is only an extra factor if you're not eating enough. We've been told you have been only eating 1 meal per day. Izuku looks down, his cheeks burning. It's all I can stomach recently. We are aware that the post-traumatic stress that you suffer from can affect someone's ability to function in life. But we're going to give you a diet plan to ease your appetite and gain the weight that you lost. She says. Izuku looks down at the food in front of him, spinning the spoon around, his sudden appetite gone in an instant. Don't feel embarrassed, it is very possible that this was gradual. If you end up weighing less than we predicted, your weight loss could date back all the way to when the war started. She smiles. It's very easy for us to be able to find a way to get your appetite back. Izuku considers that, because the same time he remembers being able to enjoy food normally without losing his appetite, was right before the war began. During his days out fighting assassins, he would either eat 2 meals per day, or none at all. He shivers, not really great memories. Okay, that's okay. He says. Okay. We'll weigh you later, there's just a couple more things we want to go through. The next 20 minutes pass by in an instant, from questions regarding his mental state and possible therapy, to questions just regarding his health. He answers all of them semi-truthfully, lying about their questions regarding, have you ever acted or almost acted on your suicidal thoughts? Yeah, no. Okay Midoriya, I think we're done for now. Dr. Mai exclaims. We've made some great progress and you're doing very well. I'm relieved. Izuku admits. She smiles back at him, Dr. Ito doing the same. Later when your mother and teacher finish their meeting there will be a couple more things to discuss, I assume, but I think you'll be able to be discharged no later than tonight. Izuku lets out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Thank you. It's no problem. Dr. Mai replies. Now, would you like to see your friends now? All 19 of his classmates settle themselves around the room quickly, their expressions tired but hopeful. It's Shoto who is the first to talk. Midoriya, how are you feeling? He says. Calm, easy, collected. Although, the dark bags under his eyes don't match his simple attitude. I'm feeling much better, Shoto. He replies. His gaze falls to the rest of the room, and he finds himself almost on the spot. And I just want to apologize to all of you. Apologize to us? That's bullshit, Izuku. Katsuki interrupts. You did nothing wrong. But I wasn't acting right. Izuku exclaims. I know I've been concerning you all lately. Concerning is a light way of putting it. Jairu remarks from the back of the room. Yeah, no offense, but you've been driving us all crazy with you always being in the middle of danger. Ashido adds. Could you guys stop harassing Midoriya? Shiro says. Dude is in the hospital right now. Izuku almost sheepishly apologizes again, but Ida interrupts him. I'm not impressed with his decisions to act recklessly and put himself in danger, but I think you all need to understand that that's not what's happening. He says sternly. Izuku looks at him, and he finds Ida staring back at him softly. We've all been through a lot, but right now Midoriya is dealing with too much. I do think that he does owe us an explanation, but he doesn't owe any of us anything more than the thin layer of details. He walks up and stands at the edge of Izuku's bed. If you're willing to share, we are more than ready to hear. But if you want to just apologize and expect us to agree with what you say, I won't hesitate to leave. The room is stunned to silence, and as the quiet stretches on, Izuku realizes that the only way to break the awkwardness is to respond. He trails off. Looking down, he grips onto the hospital blanket. What does he even tell them? What? Oh, it's true. He's suicidal and depressed and struggling with the fact that all of his friends are able to live their dream while he has people left and right telling him that being a hero isn't plausible if he doesn't have a quirk. Deku. A familiar voice calls, and Izuku looks up to see Ochako standing next to Ida at the edge of his bed. Like the rest of them, she looks tired and worn out, but what singles her from everyone else is the bandages that cover her arms. She takes a deep breath. I'm not sure if you were told, but you weren't the only one who got hurt. The younger waitress got her eyes gouged out and a major head injury, several civilians in the restaurant were wounded, and I was also injured by the villain. She lifts her arms, showing the bandages. Ochako, Izuku mutters. I wasn't told anything. Then you don't know that after you passed out, our server turned into a giant spider villain, I got wrapped up in a venomous web, and the villain tried to murder you. Izuku swallows, so it's true that Kamemiya tried to murder him. But why him? My point is, she walks up and sits on his bed, that's only the bit of it, Izuku. But I told you enough that it stunned you. You don't need to overthink and worry about what to say to us, because even just a little is enough for us to help you. Izuku lets the room quiet for a moment. He understands that, of course he does. But what does he even tell them? He doesn't want to be vulnerable right now. He doesn't want them to know how truly weak he is, just how fragile his mental state is. But, they deserve to know what's going on with him. Before school started again, the doctor who took care of me wasn't really confident in discharging me. He starts, keeping himself collected. Are you still hurt? Kaminari asks. Physically? I was so much better. But mentally? He pauses, looking down and picking at his fingernails. Things were a lot worse. They all stay silent. Izuku continues. It's not a shock that we were all left with mental scars, and to be honest I think it's helped a lot of you guys knowing that everyone is dealing with the trauma. But my doctor knew something that I guess I haven't really told anyone, only Aizawa and my mother are aware. Izuku takes a deep breath and looks up. He hasn't really been thinking about this, has he? Is he ashamed, or did he just block it all out? And how much of what he's about to say does his mom and Aizawa even know? Because all the doctor told him is that they only know his diagnoses. This is his first time telling anyone what was really left of him after the war ended. I have severe post-traumatic stress disorder, he admits, so not quite complex, but imagine PTSD times 1,000. I literally relive stuff I went through in my nightmares, I sometimes hallucinate, forget where I am, believe stuff that isn't real. The room is still quiet. Then, none of us are really surprised, bro. You went through so much. Kirishima sympathizes. Izuku looks up and makes eye contact with him. Based on Kirishima's sudden change in expression, Izuku must look miserable. I'm not done. Izuku whispers as he looks out the window. It also includes low and high-functioning depression. I sometimes have suicidal thoughts. I can't sleep, I can't eat, I can't stop thinking, I can't stop daydreaming about what I could have done instead of killing. He SCKs in a breath and wheezes, and Ochako scooches up to him to try to reassure him. But he pays no mind. He's already loosened the lie, hasn't he? But the worst part is that I know I will never be able to go back to who I was. He shuts his eyes, but tears still escape. I feel so detached from you guys, from the world. I can't consistently concentrate on things anymore, I spend more time dissociating than anything, and it physically hurts knowing that I lost so much of myself in that war. He takes a deep breath. It hurts knowing that despite everything we went through, there's a way to get better and my stupid FING issues is stopping me from being able to. He looks up at his friends, meeting all of their gazes. It hurts because I was only able to live my dream for a year before I had to give it up. He chokes out a sob, and it's not long until he can't hold it in anymore. Ochako gently embraces him, and soon after some of his closest friends walk up, sitting on his bed or standing near him. He cries ugly, devastating tears, but not one of them judges him. I don't know how to live with knowing I tried to leave you guys, he doesn't say, but he thinks it, and his chest aches with sorrow. For minutes upon minutes after, they let him cry, taking time to let him know that they understand. Come on, that's not fair. Bakugo totally cheated. Kaminari exclaims, pointing at Katsuki accusingly. Katsuki barks out a scoff. Ha! There's no rules in Uno where it says I can't blow up any DMN cards. That's just common sense, I fear. Ashido remarks nonchalantly. Are you testing me? Katsuki warns, glaring at Ashido. Nah, just totally rage-baiting you. I think it worked. She smirks sarcastically. Katsuki growls, his gaze reads, this means war. That's enough. He stands up, grabs the pile of cards and chucks it out the open window. A couple of disappointed cries yell at him, but it's too late. The cards are already far too gone. Well, Shoto remarks, from beside Izuku, there goes Uno. Izuku lets out a sigh. I guess so. Well, I wasn't going to win anyways. Shoto leans over and peeks at Izuku's cards. He winces. With those cards? Definitely not. Izuku chuckles softly and looks over to see Kaken and Ashido arguing. Surprisingly, they're both actually keeping their voices low. Izuku lets himself relax under the conversations of his classmates. After his little meltdown, his doctors came to check on him, and they almost kicked his friends out. Thankfully, Izuku was able to calm down and reassure them that he could handle it, that he was feeling better. And it's true, a good cry does its job. Although it did irritate his concussion, so he has a bit of a headache. They played Uno for a bit, but it didn't really last long. Looking at the time on the clock, it's around 3. Hey, Shoto? Izuku asks. What is it? What? What happened after I hit my head last night? He swallows. And when I blacked out first? You were rushed to the hospital immediately, and we all helped clean up the mess Kamemiya made. And before, Kamemiya transformed into a giant spider and tried to kill us, but me and Bakugo were able to reprimand her quite quickly. Ochako was unconscious after she got wrapped in a web, but she was only in the emergency room for a couple of hours. It's true, Ochako adds, butting into their conversation. All they had to do was give me some antibiotics and an antivenom vaccine to make sure I wouldn't be affected. Izuku hums. I'm glad you're okay. Yeah, I'm glad you're okay too. Apparently Kamemiya kept going on and on about how you were certain to die from her poison, but I'm glad it didn't. It's like nothing can kill you. Pretty ironic considering Izuku's current situation. Yeah, he mutters, and then. Oh my god. I completely forgot. He exclaims, sitting upright. Everyone in the room stops what they're doing to look at him. The girl who helped me. Isn't she here? Ida nods. Oh, that's right. She's in the waiting room, she's been there since you got here last night. Izuku frowns, she's been waiting that long? Do you guys mind if she maybe visits as WEL? They all shake their heads. Of course not. Would you like me to go get her? Ida asks. Izuku nods happily. Ida leaves, and the rest of them get up from where they are. Where are you guys going? Izuku asks. I mean, I've never seen a stranger so worried about you before. Ochako says. I think we're going to give you guys a bit of privacy. Besides, I think we are a bit hungry. Oh my god, I'm starving. Shiro says. It's not like you didn't eat on the way here, Shinso remarks quietly. Izuku smiles. Thank you, and you guys should go eat. It's pretty exhausting here. Ochako smiles sheepishly. You have no idea, I guess you do. Shoto grabs her shoulder and pulls her back. We will be back later. Come on, Uraraka. Izuku watches as his classmates trail behind and wail out the door, waving goodbye. Although, Kaken stays for a moment. Izuku. He says, his back turned. Kaken? How are you okay? Izuku's eyes widen. What? Katsuki's fists squeeze at his sides. I'm glad you're acting all fine and talkative and better, but people don't just bounce back instantly from being poisoned, you know. Izuku's heart drops, and Katsuki turns around. And random extras don't just spend hours waiting to talk to someone they barely helped on the street. His eyes narrow. You're not telling me something. Izuku bites his lip. Kaken, she's not random, she helped empty out the poison from my system. Katsuki doesn't change his expression. I was in the meeting partly this morning. The difference between what happened to you and Uraraka? Kamemiya's venom only harms people. Her poison? Certain death. No cure, no way around, yet somehow you're alive. I'm not complaining, but it doesn't add up. Izuku doesn't respond. His heart is beating faster and faster. Whatever, I'm just glad you're okay. He says, and then walks out the room. Izuku is left in silence. Soon, the door opens, but only Ida steps in. Sorry to disappoint you, but it seems that she left just a couple of minutes ago. He frowns. Damn it, I don't even know her name. Izuku mutters. I didn't get to even thank her properly, for keeping my secret and being my alibi. Don't feel too down, she left you this. Ida says, and hands Izuku a sticky note. Izuku's curiosity perks up, and the note reads. 2 plus, XXX, 629 to 7955. Thank you. Kanade AI. I'm not sure why she's thanking you, but she honestly seemed like she cared about you a lot. She even gave you her number. Perhaps she likes you? Although she did look older than us. Ida continues to ramble on, but Izuku pays no mind. Something about this girl, Kanade AI, something about her only strikes pure curiosity in Izuku. Something about her just screams, I want to help you. That? Whatever that means.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.